The scene begins with a guy trembling with fear because he thinks their enemy is a monster. Meanwhile, another guy tells him to get up and fight, but he doesn't have the courage, and simultaneously, the other martial artists wonder when the sect masters are coming. One of the martial artists says he heard the masters poisoned the opponent in advance, but he says it's a bigger monster than he ever imagined. They realize that their opponent is the leader of the demonic cult for a reason. Still, they think the leader of the demonic cult is only a human, and he'll eventually get exhausted, so they try to attack him, but the leader kills everyone who tries to attack him. When two other men try to stab him, the red demon kills them with his bare hands, and they realize it was stupid to think that a plan like expecting him to get exhausted was going to work. Meanwhile, a guy standing still with fear thinks he heard it was an easy job, but says if he knew it was going to be like this, he would have never come here. Suddenly, the cult leader kills that guy, but the masters arrive, and one of them says it looks like he is not going to go down that easily. This master tells the red demonic master that his reign ends here, but he gets startled to see it is the blue demon master. As all the masters rush to attack him, and the sword of the blue demon master is about to stab him, the red demon uses the heavenly demon art of destruction. The master gets pushed away by a strong force, but their swords are stuck in the red demon's body. The black flame spear of the ghost demon, the sword of the great wisdom of the Taiji apprentice, the cold steel sword of the Namgun clan master, and the silver moon fang of the imperial special forces are the blades of the heroes that rule the world, and they are piercing the body of one man, red demonic master. Within 5 years of entering the martial society, the red demonic master's name was known to everyone in the world, and in the 7th year, his presence itself became a threat to the world. On the 8th year, he joined the demonic cult, and for the first time in the history of the cult of the heavenly demon, he became the leader of the cult as an outsider, and his name became a myth and a legend. Suddenly, the red demonic master says that is quite a lot of stabbing, but the blue demon master says he always thought that he was well aware of how powerful the red demonic master is, but says he has proved him wrong. The blue demon master says the red demonic master is too powerful, and says that's why they hope he is the last to be so. When the red demonic master asks if that is why the blue demon betrayed him, he replies that is not the case, and it's all because of the red demonic master. The blue demon says it is because the red demonic master tried to teach his martial arts to normal followers, and what he tried to do was ignore the roots of the cult of the heavenly demon. The red demon master asks Master Monk if he also thinks so, to which he replies that his acts were truly acts of non-possession, and says, as a Buddhist, how can he possibly blame a person for giving up possession? However, Monk says the world is filled with more vile people than Red Demon can possibly imagine, so he says if his martial art becomes public, those who pursue evil shall obtain power without cultivation. The monk says he couldn't ignore the chaos that would come from that, but the red demonic master says it's a petty reason. The red demon master says they are all making petty excuses so they can keep the tiny amount of authority they all have. Suddenly, the blue demon says the reason doesn't matter, and the red demon master is a person that no one is able to understand, so he causes his own death and says he should be afraid of his death. However, the red demon master laughs and says death is nothing to be afraid of, and immediately grabs blue demon's neck. The red demon master says what the blue demon should be afraid of is what comes after, but the monk warns him not to commit any crime. Suddenly, the red demon master, while choking blue demon, asks if he knows what is keeping him here and says the blue tears is a present he gave him, so he should give it back. The red demon master pulls out a sword from his body and stabs through the blue demon's chest while saying he should know what it means to betray him. The red demon master says he never forgets a grudge, and everyone is terrified to see that the blue demon is dead. Suddenly, the red demon master, while looking at the blood on his hands, gets a feeling and wonders if this is the end. Simultaneously, he remembers a drink he likes, but he cannot recall its name. He thinks he forgot about it, but says it looks like his death is making him remember those times. The red demon master thinks that if he ever has another chance, he wishes to have a simple, normal life just like others. Suddenly, everything gets dark, and the red demon master hears someone calling him, which makes him think he is hearing things before his death. Suddenly, when he opens his eyes, he sees a girl asking if he is awake. He tries to get up and ask where he is, but the nurse tells him not to get up because he is injured, and she gets worried because his wounds opened. The nurse tells him to stop moving and says she'll bring a doctor, but he understands he is in a hospital and wonders if he is back. After a few days have passed, the doctor examines the red demon master, whose name is Jinho, in this world and says it's weird, so his mother asks if something is wrong with Jinho. The doctor replies there is nothing wrong, and it is just amazing how fast the laceration healed despite Jinho only being there for a few days. The doctor says the wounds even opened up once, so it is strange. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks he should have gone easy with the Kai meditation and decides he'll be careful from now on. Suddenly, Jinho's mother asks the doctor if his son can leave the hospital. The doctor replies that Jinho seems to be in good condition, but there is no need to hurry. The doctor says the important part is healing the damage that happened inside, so Jinho's parents take a breath of relief. Jinho's mother tells him that they have to go back to work, so they'll be back tonight. She leaves some money for him and tells him to feel free to use it. When Jinho says, okay, mother, she feels mad because he is calling her mother again, but remembers the doctor told her that Jinho might have some problems with memory, so he tells Jinho to call her just mom. After that, Jinho's parents leave, and Jinho thinks he still needs to get used to his senses in this world. Jinho remembers that he had been in Jongyuan for 20 years, so he thought it made sense that he felt awkward. Jinho thinks this makes it his third life, and he is no longer the red demonic master but Guang Jinho. Before he became the red demonic master in Jongyuan, he had already lived a life like Gang Jinho in the modern world, and his first life was miserable. Jinho lost his family and his legs because of an accident, and after living for 15 years as a crippled man, he ended his own life at the age of 35. Then, out of nowhere, he started his life in Jongyuan, and his second life was by no means easy, but he was able to live a glorious life as the red demonic master. However, that life didn't last long either, and now Jinho wonders why he came back to the modern world. It seems to him as though his life is rewinded. Furthermore, it is before the accident when he was 18, and he thinks both his life didn't last longer than 40. Jinho thinks that even if he combines the two, it will be a few decades short of a full lifetime. Jinho can't say they were good lives, but now he thinks he has the memories of Gang Jinho and his experience as red demonic master from Jongyuan, so he plans to live a normal life, this time just like everyone. A while later, Jinho, standing in front of a vending machine, thinks in the early stages of Jongyuan's life, there was one thing that bothered him the most, that the flow of time made him forget his favorite drink's name. But seeing it before his eyes makes him remember immediately that it is called cola. Jinho excitedly takes out the money because it's time to use it. As he tries to insert the bill and press the button for his drink, the machine doesn't accept the bill. Jinho tries a few times, but the machine throws out the bill, which irritates him, and he wonders why it's not taking the note. Suddenly, a kid standing nearby says it should be obvious after trying a few times and asks if Jinho is an alien by any chance. After some while, they are sitting outside with Coke in their hand, and the child, while drinking the Coke, asks if Jinho has never seen Coke before because he is staring at it like that. The kid says it is fine, so he should drink it, but Jinho says he is in debt and promises to pay the kid back. While drinking it, the kid says it is just a can of soda and tells Jinho to drink it, so he opens the can and takes a sip. Jinho remembers that back in Jongyuan, he put so much effort into replicating its taste, but none of them were successful. As its fizzy taste hits the taste buds, Jinho's expressions change, but the kid starts laughing and asks if it is actually his first time drinking it. Jinho feels embarrassed and says it's been a while since he drank it, but the kid says it is hilarious. The kid asks Jinho why he is in the hospital, to which he replies that he suffered a car crash and thinks the kid seems to be a girl. The kid says Jinho doesn't look that sick and asks if he is pretending so he doesn't have to go back to school, to which Jinho replies he doesn't have any intention of doing that. When Jinho asks why the girl is in the hospital, she tells him that she has had a weak heart since she was born and says she is fine right now, but sometimes it hurts terribly. Jinho says it is too bad that she can't go to school, but the kid says she doesn't care because everyone bullies her. The girl says the doctor said that surgery won't work either because the heart is too small, and she feels sorry for her parent. When the girl says she'll probably never leave the hospital for the rest of her life. Jinho thinks she is mature for her age and thinks it must be because she went through hardships so early in life. Jinho can see some clogs in her meridians and sees the uncirculated Kai, which is overwhelming and damaging her body. However, they can be fixed, and Jinho thinks she just needs the clogged meridians to burst with a stronger force. Jinho thinks it shouldn't be difficult, but suddenly, her mother calls her name, Jae-yoon. Jae-yoon says she'll see Jinho later and is leaving, but Jinho asks what she will do if she gets better, to which she replies that she wants to live like everyone, go to school, play, and things like that. Jinho smiles, and seeing her leave with her mother, he says he'll make sure to pay her back. After that, Jinho throws the can in the bin and thinks he has to go to school now, so he tries to figure out in which grade he is if he is 18. Meanwhile, a guy wearing a hoodie passes by Jinho, and his leg is bleeding. But Jinho notices his eyes look dangerous. After some while, when the doctor treats that guy, he tells him to call an ambulance next time if he gets hurt this bad. The doctor says it was pretty dangerous, but that guy tells him that it was from a construction site nearby. The doctor tells that guy to remember that the body has its limits and says it looks like a puncture wound from a metal object. The doctor says that the guy is lucky that it didn't touch his bones and that he looks pretty young, so he asks if it is not hard to work at a construction site. The boy says he likes his work and says it would have been better if he hadn't made this mistake. The doctor, while leaving, says it is good to see he is positive and says he'll close the curtains, so he should take some time to rest there. As the doctor leaves, that guy changes his expression and looks at the scalpel on the table. Meanwhile, the doctor tells the nurse that this job is getting exhausting and says he should meet someone. The doctor jokingly asks if she knows someone, to which she replies she doesn't. Suddenly, 3 guys arrive there, and one of them, while showing his identity, says he is Detective Lee Jong-in from the Eastern Police Department. The detective says they need to ask a few questions, so the doctor asks how he can help them. The detective says they are after a fleeing suspect of a nearby case, and they are looking for the suspect in the nearby hospitals. The detective asks, based on the fact that that guy has a gunshot wound on his leg, if there are any emergency patients that come to the doctor's mind. The doctor thinks for a while and says maybe there is one, but meanwhile, that guy has left the ward. On the other hand, Lai-yoon is getting bored, and her mother is also not there, so she wishes if she had someone to play with. Suddenly, she thinks maybe she should go and visit the coke guy, but she wonders where she can find him. Meanwhile, the guy the doctor treated earlier arrives near her, and, while taking out the scalpel, says what is about to happen is no one's fault. Meanwhile, the detectives arrive running there, but that guy grabs Yoon and says he is just an unlucky man who just happened to stumble into a more unlucky kid. On the other hand, Jinho is watching television, and one thing he learned from the few days in the hospital is that television is truly remarkable. Jinho thinks compared to Jongyuan where entertainment was limited to maybe a few Beijing operas and boating, the television had numerous channels, each filled with information and entertainment. Although, he still needs some time to understand modern humor and furthermore, it was a great method for him to acquire a lot of information in a quick manner. Suddenly, Jinho hears the newscaster saying that the suspect of a recent serial murder incident has fled after stabbing a police officer. The newscaster says the suspect has been shot by the police and is on the run, but his exact whereabouts are yet to be confirmed. Jinho realizes that the modern world is more sensitive about death because, back in Jongyuan, an incident like this would have attracted no one's attention. Jinho wonders why it is so different because they should be the same humans. Jinho is getting bored with life in the hospital, but suddenly, he sees some guards running outside the hospital and wonders what's going on. Jinho comes out of his room, and seeing some people gathered, he realizes something is going on. Jinho hears people talking about a serial killer who has a kid as a hostage and thinks maybe it is the guy he saw earlier who passed by him. Jinho thinks it is none of his business, so he decides to go back to his room before he gets involved. While Jinho is leaving, he hears Jae-yoon scream, and he immediately turns back to see if it's her. Meanwhile, the detective asks the killer if he thinks he can get away from a situation like this and warns him not to make things worse and let the hostage go. The detective tells the serial killer to do that and says he'll then ask the judge to extend his sentence. The killer tells Detective Lee Jong that he thought they knew each other better than that and says he is disappointed that the detective seriously thought negotiating like that was going to work. The killer scratches Yoon's neck with the scalpel and says the detective should know what he'll do if the detective tries to buy time like this. The detective yells at the killer to stop and wonders if this psychopath is enjoying this situation. Detective Lee Jong-in thinks he should not have stimulated the killer like that and thinks if he makes the wrong call, in the worst case, the killer might kill the kid and get away. The detective needs to buy time until they set things up outside. Suddenly, the killer says the detective is being pretty obvious here and tells the detective to open the way, or he'll slit the kid's wrist. The detective gets worried, and the killer says he read it from a book before, but says apparently, people die when they lose 30% of their blood. The killer says he'll slit the artery, and she'll have somewhere between 3 minutes and an hour to live. The killer says she can't control how much she bleeds, but he'll try his best because she is a precious hostage. The killer gives them the last warning to get out of his way, and the detective unwillingly tells the officers to let him go. When an officer tells the detective that they can't let the killer go, the detective says he knows what is happening and says they need to save the kid first. The detective orders the officers to open the way. And they do it while the people are feeling bad. The detective is also furious because they have no other way. The killer is happy thinking he won again and wonders why these idiots don't know that the simple answer is to just abandon the kid. The killer thinks the laws and ethics of the society are for the weak, and in the end, the strong survive and the weak perish. The killer thinks he survived again this time and wonders how many more he got to kill. But suddenly, Yoon sees the coke guy standing in front of him. The detective, with worry, asks who he is and tells Jinho to get out of the way, but he is standing calmly. The killer thinks he is a high schooler, but suddenly, he gets startled to feel a monster-like aura from him. The killer wants to tell Jinho not to come close to him, but he cannot speak, and suddenly, he sees Jinho standing in front of him. Jinho tells the killer to leave the child, which makes the killer furious, and he tries to stab Jinho, but in an instant, Jinho breaks his arm, which shocks everyone, and the scalpel falls from the killer's hand. The killer yells in pain, but suddenly, Jinho kicks him down, making him unconscious. Meanwhile, the officers are shocked to see this, but Jinho asks Yoon if she is okay and says she must have been startled. Suddenly, Yoon gets emotional and she starts crying, but the detective immediately orders the officers to arrest the killer, and they follow the orders. After some while, the detective is sitting in front of Jinho and asks if he does taekwondo or something like that, but Jinho, without looking towards the detective, nods his head. The detective says kids these days are so reckless and says Jinho is lucky that the hostage was okay. The detective says if things went wrong, it would have become his fault, resulting in the parents blaming him, the media saying that the useless cops got people killed, and his family ignoring him for being a terrible dad. Jinho nervously apologizes to the detective, but the detective asks if he knows the kid, to which Jinho replies that he is in her debt. The detective says it is unbelievable that Jinho decided to be a hero like that, and says he did a good job, but it doesn't mean he should have done that. However, the detective says they were able to catch the killer because of Jinho and thanks him, but Jinho, with a smile, says no problem. After that, Jinho visits Yoon in her ward, and the nurse asks if it is his first time visiting her in a ward. The nurse says Yoon had a seizure right after the incident, and she was looking for Jinho before she fell asleep. The nurse says Yoon said she was very afraid, but Jinho calmed her down. When Jinho asks the nurse if Yoon is in pain, she replies that the seizures are very painful, and Yoon tries to hide it, but it really feels bad to see her try. Suddenly, the nurse gives Jinho a coke and says Yoon asked her to get this for him. The nurse says she has to go somewhere else and asks if Jinho will look after Yoon until her mother is here. Jinho agrees, and as the nurse leaves, Jinho says it looks like he owes Yoon again. Jinho thinks Yoon also wants to live a normal life like him, so he decides to pay her back and starts treating her. However, he says it looks like living a normal life is harder than he thought. The next day, Jinho and Yoon are sitting on a bench outside the hospital, drinking coke. Yoon says she was surprised when Jinho showed up like that, and he was like a knight in shining armor. Suddenly, Yoon says she heard Jinho will be discharged tomorrow and wishes it was her, but Jinho says he heard she has gotten better, too. Yoon says he is right, and it's amazing because earlier, it used to hurt 4 to 5 times a day, but it got better yesterday, and the doctor said she could leave the hospital too sometime soon. Yoon says that maybe her heart was so surprised that because of that incident, she forgot to be sick, but Jinho knows it's because her Kai flow has gone back to normal. Suddenly, Yoon thanked Jinho and wished him to stay healthy and not come back to the hospital. Yoon says she hopes they meet again somewhere outside of the hospital, and Jinho replies that they'll meet. The next day, when Jinho went back for the first time in ages, there was a home greeting him, the smell of his mother's cooking, and his sister. Suddenly, Jinho's sister asks what's wrong with him and says she was only away for a few days for the Japan tour, and not only did he get hit by a car, but she also heard he tried to be a hero at the hospital. Jinho asks if he thinks he is an actual hero or something and why he can't stay normal for a moment. However, Jinho ignores her questions. She furiously asks if he is listening to her, which makes him say he wasn't missing this part that much. Jinho remembers Gang Yoon-young as his younger sister, and she went to Japan to some agency to become a celebrity or something like that in the past. Meanwhile, his mother tells Yoon-young that he ended up saving a kid, so it is fine, but Yoon-young says her mother should be scolding Jinho for doing something like that. Their mother reported that she had already done that before Yoon-young came and, while holding a knife, warned Jinho not to do something like that again. Jinho immediately replies that he will be careful from now on, and his mother tells Yoon-young to stop bothering her brother. Their mother tells Jinho to get ready for school tomorrow, so he goes to his room. While looking at his uniform, Jinho thinks he has to go to school to live a normal life and thinks it's a peaceful era, so he is looking forward to it. The following day, when Jinho goes to school, he feels bad because his first day back is the day of the midterms. Jinho doesn't know a single question because his last time at school was 50 years ago, and he doesn't know anything. However, he thinks life has still taught him a few tricks, and he still remembers how to deal with a situation like this. After the exam, Jinho is devastated and thinks it was more painful than training for the martial arts. Suddenly, a student calls Jinho and says Jinho was making a scary face all day. The student asks if Jinho is mad that he and the other 2 students didn't visit him at the hospital. The boy says they are sorry because they didn't know which hospital he was at. Jinho remembers that the boy's name is Young In-jayu, but he doesn't remember the other 2. Jinho tells Young In-jayu that he doesn't mind, but In-jayu says he seems mad, so they should go to a PC room and say he'll pay for Jinho. Jinho is confused, but he goes with them, and on his way, he remembers the 4 of them used to play games together. Jinho wonders how long it has been since he last had a peaceful moment like this, and when he sees others joke with each other, he wonders if this is what it feels like to have a normal life. Unlike his worries, Jinho was able to adapt to the modern world really quickly, hanging out with friends, getting scolded by the teacher because of his grades, and getting close to his family members. Jinho thinks it seems like he started to have expectations because of this place that someday the red demonic master inside him will wither away, and he'll be able to live a normal life as Gang Jinho. Like that time flew by peacefully for a while, but at school, Jinho is unable to understand a thing. Jinho thinks that since he can't study with the current books, he should go back to the elementary school material because it is only a month and a half before the next exam. Jinho thinks it might be impossible to bring his knowledge level up to that of a high schooler at that time. Suddenly, In-jayu pats Jinho's back and says he saw him going into the teacher's office. He says it looks like he failed his exam, too. In-jayu tells Jinho to give up like him and says Jinho's gaming skills are terrible, too, so he should just practice that instead. Jinho thinks In-jayu is annoying and that maybe he should just knock him out. Suddenly, they hear a chair fall, and they see some students bullying another student. The bully, Choi Young-soo, furiously asks the boy, Park Yoo-min, if he thinks it is a joke and why he didn't bring what he asked for, to which Park replies he doesn't have it. Young-soo furiously asks Park when he'll learn and says he doesn't care if Park has to steal that thing because he told him to bring it. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks he never thought he would remember someone so vividly and remembers Choi Young-soo was famous in school for being a violent bully. Most of all, Jinho remembers that even the faculty couldn't touch him because he was the grandson of the chairman of the school. Jinho wonders if Young-soo is bullying Park Yu-min just for fun and self-display. Jinho pity Park, but he has no reason to help him, so he gets up, thinking he'll study some other time, and decides to stay outside for a while. As Jinho is leaving, suddenly, he hears Choi Young-soo calls Park a crippled freak, which makes Jinho remember his first life, and he stops. Meanwhile, Young-soo starts kicking Park and asks if he knows how disgusting it is to breathe the same air with him. Young-soo asks if Park is actually crippled or if he is pretending to just get attention. Simultaneously, Young-soo's friend tells him to look at the water bucket there, which is used for cleaning mops, and Young-soo says it is interesting. Young-soo tells Park to take the bucket, go to the office, and dump it on their teacher, but Park gets scared. Young-soo says that he'll leave Park alone from now on and tells him to hurry, but Park, with teary eyes, wants someone to help him. However, everyone is scared to help Park, and Young-soo kicks the bucket towards Park, saying he is just a crippled loser. Park starts crying while wondering what did he do to deserve all this and wonders if this is happening because he is crippled or because his seat is next to Young-soo. Suddenly, Park sees someone standing in front of him, and Young-soo asks Jinho who he is, but Jinho tells him to stop it. Jinho says Young-soo is making an ugly sight, but Young-soo again asks who the hell he is. Simultaneously, Jinho tells Park to go back to his seat, but Park replies that he is fine and that Jinho doesn't have to do this. Jinho tells Park not to make him repeat, but suddenly, Young-soo slaps Jinho and asks why the hell he is helping the freak. Young-soo asks Jinho if he envies that he doesn't get any attention and tries to slap him again, but Jinho grabs his hand and says everything that happens from now on is on Young-soo. Young-soo sees a lot of students watching them, so he tries to free his arm, but he cannot move it. Young-soo tells Jinho to let go of him and tries to kick him, but Jinho shakes his leg away, grabs his neck, and kicks him in the stomach. Young-soo feels immense pain, and still, Jinho grabs his neck and throws him down. Young-soo's friends are shocked, but they immediately run to pick him up and ask what's wrong with Jinho. While they are taking Young-soo away, Jinho says he didn't say they can leave and tells them to clean up the mess they made. They get intimidated by Jinho and agree to do that, so Jinho goes back to his seat. Injayu asks Jinho where the hell he learned to kick like that, but suddenly, he says that it is not important and asks why he did that. Injayu asks if Jinho doesn't know that Young-soo is the grandson of the chairman, but Jinho replies that he knows that. Injayu asks if he knew why he did that and asks what was wrong with Jinho because even teachers could not touch that boy. However, Jinho says it is fine and he'll just get scolded, but Injayu asks if he is serious. Suddenly, Park comes near them and thanks Jinho, but he also apologizes because he got Jinho involved with his problem. Jinho says he didn't do it for Park, so he should not thank him. He says he just didn't like what was happening. Jinho says he doesn't think Park is any better and tells him to go, so Park leaves. Suddenly, Jinho punches the desk and thinks if he didn't suppress his urge, he would have killed Young-soo. Jinho thinks he was able to hold back this time, but there is no promise that he'll do it again next time. Jinho thinks it looks like he has not shaken off his senses from his past life. After some while, Jinho is called to the office, and a teacher asks how dare he beat up a student in school. The teacher asks if Jinho knows that he sent Young-soo to the hospital and asks why the hell he beat up an innocent kid. Jinho immediately replies that Young-soo is not an innocent kid and that he was bullying Park Yu-min. Suddenly, when the teacher asks who said this, Jinho replies that everyone was watching in the class, but the teacher says everyone says Jinho beat up Young-soo, who was doing nothing. Jinho says that cannot be true and that he is pretty sure the teacher knew about it. When Jinho asks if the teacher's conscience doesn't say anything, the teacher furiously tells him to sit down. Jinho says if Choi Young-soo gets punished for bullying Park Yu-min, he'll gladly take his punishment for beating Choi Young-soo, but says he won't admit that he touched someone innocent. The teacher furiously asks how dare he try to lecture him and says it is obvious who the bully is here. The teacher says he is going to teach Jinho a freaking lesson today, but suddenly the chairman arrives there with his assistant. The chairman asks if this is the boy who hurt his grandson, to which the teacher replies that Jinho is the boy and says he was scolding him because he keeps lying that Young-soo was bullying a classmate. Suddenly, the chairman says that if that is true, then Young-soo might have deserved what he got. The chairman says if Jinho's words are true, then Young-soo is at fault and says as a grandson of the school's chairman, Young-soo should know better than bullying a classmate. Still, the teacher says Young-soo didn't do that and says even if that is true, Jinho still assaulted, but the chairman asks if they call his parents. The teacher replies that they called Jinho's parents, so the chairman says they'll talk about it when his parents arrive because it's not fair to interrogate a student like this. Suddenly, the chairman pats Jinho's shoulder and, with a wink, says he is here as a parent, so they should talk without thinking about the titles. After some while, when Jinho's father arrives, the teacher tells his father that Jinho assaulted Young-soo, and he is currently hospitalized. The teacher says that despite the situation, Gang Jinho refused to apologize, and that is why they were left with no choice but to call him. However, Jinho's father says that he would first like to know the whole context. Jinho's father says he believes it is not right to simply force his child to apologize without knowing the context and asks Jinho if it is true that he assaulted Young-soo. Jinho confidently replies that he did that, but it happened while he was stopping Choi Young-soo from bullying a classmate. He says Young-soo was the one who hit first. Simultaneously, the teacher yells at Jinho and calls him a liar because everyone in the class says Jinho started it. Suddenly, the chairman says it is enough, and there is nothing to make a fuss about. The chairman says it is just a matter between him and Jinho's gibber, and if Jinho is saying true, then he is the one who needs to apologize. Jinho's father says his son is also not justified to act with such violence either, to which the chairman replies that is right. However, the chairman says they need to verify the facts, and that if it is true, he'll apologize, so he tells the teacher to call Park Yu-min. A while later, when Park arrives, the chairman says they brought Park here because they want to know the truth. The chairman says Park doesn't need to think about anything, and tells him to tell them what happened. The chairman winks at Park while asking if it is true that Young-soo bullied him, and that is why Jinho attacked him. Park hesitates, but suddenly, he replies that it is not true, which shocks Jinho. However, the chairman smiles like a devil. On the other hand, Choi Young-soo is chilling in the hospital, and he is happy to remember how his grandfather freaked out when he came to visit him. The chairman said how dare a low-life vermin think he could get away with this, and told Young-soo that as an heir of the Dongmyeong Foundation, he'd rule above the others one day. The chairman said he'll take that opportunity to show Young-soo that how to deal with low lives and told Young-soo to watch and learn. That is why Young-soo is happy and thinks it's been a while since he saw his grandpa that furious. On the other hand, when Park says he wasn't beaten by anybody and Young-soo didn't bully him, the chairman has their testimony now. Jinho's father gets worried, and the chairman asks him how they should take care of this matter now. Meanwhile, Jinho wonders if the chairman planned this beforehand, and the chairman asks his father what he thinks about this matter now. Jinho gets worried to see his father embarrassed, and his father says it looks like his child has made a mistake. Gang apologizes to the chairman, but the chairman says there is nothing to apologize for because they'll simply have to follow the rules. The chairman asks the dean how they take care of this in such a case, to which he replies that in cases of violence between the students, depending upon the intensity, the rules say that the student shall be punished with suspension for 7 days or expelled from school. As the chairman shows that he is thinking about expulsion, Jinho's father immediately bows, says his son is usually never like this, and he made a huge mistake. Gang requests the chairman to apologize to Jinho and says he'll take anything but expulsion. The chairman pressurizes Gang by saying he agrees that a student shouldn't be expelled, but the rules are the rules. Jinho's father begs the chairman, which shocks Jinho, and he gets furious. Jinho remembers over the past several decades, he has lived in a world where the strong oppress the weak, so he thinks this much humiliation shouldn't matter to him, but he cannot help but feel mad. Jinho wonders why does he feel the urge to pull out the chairman's head from his body. Suddenly, the chairman tells Gang to go back now and says he'll try his best to spare Jinho from getting expelled, so Gang thanks him. After some while Gang is driving Jinho home, Jinho tries to say something, but Gang says he knows Jinho would never lie about something like that and says they were simply in a bad position. Gang says Jinho did well, and there is no reason for him to bow down when he didn't do anything wrong. The gang tells Jinho that if there is ever a situation where he has to lower himself for something that is not his fault, he'll do it for Jinho instead. Gang says he is happy enough if his son can live proudly, so he tells Jinho to not worry about him, but Jinho feels bad and apologizes to his father. After that, Jinho was given a week of suspension as his final punishment, and Young-soo was diagnosed with 6 weeks of hospitalization. Because of that, Jinho had to meet the authorities for assault, and when he came back home, he had a hard time controlling his rage. Jinho had to stab his own pressure points to fall asleep, but he thinks thanks to his family, he was able to suppress himself from choosing the extreme measure of taking revenge. However, the chairman did not let him off the hook just yet, and it started with the unfair dismissal of Jinho's father from his job. Gang got a call that he was fired from his job, and he was shocked because he was doing fine. They said Gang ran on the red light, and they were getting a lot of complaints that involved him. But Gang asked what they meant by that because he never did anything like that. Still, they said it was decided that he be fired, but Gang said this could not be legal and told them not to think he was going to accept this. After that day, Jinho's mother got fired, and the next day, his sister, who went to a middle school that is under the same foundation as his school, came back home crying, saying that the teacher had bullied her. The day after that, the landlord came by and suddenly announced that she'd raised the rent. Because Jinho was at home because of suspension, he had to witness all of this feeling of heavy guilt. One night, Jinho was going outside, but his father, having a drink in the yard, asked him where he was going, to which he replied he was going for a walk. Gang apologizes to Jinho and says none of this is his fault, but all of this is because of his own incompetence. Gang apologizes that he can't openly compliment the good Jinho did, but Jinho requests him not to say that. Jinho, while leaving, says he'll be back soon and thinks he wanted to live a normal life like everyone else, but wonders what went wrong. Jinho wonders if he would be living peacefully right now if he didn't touch Choi Young-soo back then and wonders if he was too naive about the matter. Jinho wonders why he is not doing anything about this situation, and while punching a tree he wonders what the hell is a normal life. Jinho never knew it was so miserable to watch his family suffer like this, and he realizes that Choi Young-soo himself couldn't do everything that was happening then. Jinho knows all of this is a message from the chairman Choi Myung-gil, who is trying to ruin his family with all the power he has. Jinho thinks this place is no different from Jongyuan, where the strong decide everything, and violence has simply been replaced with wealth. Jinho wonders why he didn't know this earlier, and he screams loudly in the air. Suddenly, Jinho realizes that it is right that he cannot live a normal life by just living quietly and thinks from now on, if he wants something, he'll get it himself. Meanwhile, someone puts a hand on Jinho's shoulder from behind, and it looks like the hand of Red Demonic Master. On the other hand, Young-soo is hanging out with his friends when he asks his friend what happened to Gang Jinho, to which he replies that he heard Jinho was suspended. Young-soo tells his friend to wait and see what happens because this is not the end of it, and Jinho has to pay for what he did to him. Young-soo says Jinho will crawl under him, begging for forgiveness within a month, and his friend says Jinho only touched Young-soo because he had let his guard down. When that boy says Jinho is no match for Young-soo, Young-soo replies that he is not. After some while, that boy takes Young-soo to a place and says he knows a guy who runs a PC room, who said he'll let them in from the back door. Suddenly, that boy asks Young-soo where Hyun-seung went, to which Young-soo replies that he is right behind them and he might go to the restroom. Young-soo tells his friend to give Hyun-seung a call, but he replies that Hyun-seung's phone is off. Young gets irritated and asks if Hyun-seung missed them when they came into the alley, but the other boy says he is pretty sure Hyun was there with them. The boy tells Young-soo to wait while he goes to take a look over there, and Young-soo says he'll kick Hyun when he comes back. As his friend leaves, Young-soo decides to call the girls, but while it's ringing, he starts getting worried because it's dark there. Young-soo gets furious because no one is answering, so he furiously kicks the wall. Meanwhile, Young-soo yells that if they think they are his real friends, he just lets them be around him and says he'll beat them up. Suddenly, someone arrives there and calls Young-soo's name, so he thinks the boys have arrived, but he gets nervous to see it's Gang Jinho. Young asks how Jinho found him and warns Jinho that he knows what will happen if he touches him again. Young-soo asks if Jinho is asking for more, but Jinho asks if he has any intention of undoing the things he did to his family. Young-soo asks if he has come to beg him, but wonders if Jinho's atmosphere is this heavy. Simultaneously, Young-soo asks if Jinho regrets the things he did to him and says he, a filthy lowlife, should have known his place. Young-soo tells Jinho to crawl on the ground and bark like a dog so that he'll consider it, but Jinho understands his intention. Suddenly, Young-soo punches Jinho in the face, thinking he is a piece of cake for him, but yells in pain because his hand hurts. Young feels like there is a steel plate on Jinho's face, and Jinho thanks Young-soo for being the person he imagined him to be. Jinho says it's his turn now and tells Young-soo to apologize if he can't stand it so he'll stop. Young-soo asks what the hell he is talking about, but suddenly, Jinho kicks his leg, making him fall in pain. Jinho asks what he says and if he feels like apologizing yet. Jinho says he tried to hold back things that he could hold back. Young-soo starts trembling with fear, but Jinho grabs his arm and says even when Young-soo messed with him, he tried to ignore it because this is not the world he lived in, but Young-soo and his grandfather crossed the line. Jinho breaks Young-soo's arm while he yells in pain and says his grandfather made his father bow down. Jinho says he barely remembers his father, and he feels so distant that he has to make an effort to connect with him. However, when they bow down because of him, he feels his blood boil and says Young-soo probably doesn't know this feeling. Meanwhile, Young-soo begs Jinho to let him live, but Jinho says they should take their time because they still have all night and tells Young-soo not to worry because he'll not kill him. Jinho says Young-soo just needs to learn what it means to mess with him, and after beating him badly, he tells Young-soo to undo everything. While leaving, Jinho tells Young-soo not to do anything stupid because he'll keep an eye on him. Jinho tells Young-soo to remember this is not the end and leaves. After some while, when the boys arrive, they try to wake Young-soo up, but he is struck with terror and yells at them not to touch him. Hyun-seung asks Young-soo what he is doing on the ground like this and says he scared them, but he asks them where Gang Jinho is. Hyun-seung asked what he was talking about and said Young-soo was the only one there when they arrived. Young-soo says it's not possible and asks what time it is. Hyun-seung replies that it's 3 AM in the morning, and when he asks where Young-soo was a moment ago, Young asks what they are talking about and says he is right next to them. Young is confused about what the hell just happened because he feels like his legs are broken, but they are fine. Young-soo gets furious at Gang Jinho, and the next day, they are sitting in a police station. The chairman tells the officer that Jinho assaulted his grandson again and furiously asks how he can do something like that. The chairman tells the officer to arrest Jinho, but the officer says that the student has an alibi. The officer says they have the security footage of Jinho being at a convenience store during the time Young-soo claims he was assaulted. On top of that, the officer says that the convenience store is miles away from the place where Young-soo was. Still, Choi Myung-gil insists his grandson was assaulted, but the officer asks how the chairman dropped the charges too since he is there, but Myung-gil furiously asks what he is talking about. The officer says, based on Young-soo's words, he is claiming that he was heavily assaulted, almost to the point of torture, but he looks alright. The officer says he thought Young-soo was diagnosed with 6 weeks of hospitalization, so he asks why Young-soo is outside the hospital wandering around like this. The officer says if they don't drop the charges, they'll face counterclaims based on fabricated diagnoses and false accusations. Choi Myung-gil asks if the officer knows who he is and tells him to call the chief of the police station, but Gang yells that it is enough. Gang warns Myung-gil not to think that they'll ignore this anymore, and simultaneously, when Jinho looks toward Young-soo, he feels terrified. After they go home, Young-soo asks Myung-gil what happens if Jinho shows up again, but Gil tells him not to worry because he'll be home and tells Young-soo to take a break from school and rest for a while. Meanwhile, when Myung-gil asks if Young-soo is sure it is Jinho, he furiously asks if his grandfather is questioning him, too. Myung-gil says he is not questioning him but tells him to rest well, and that they'll talk about this tomorrow morning. Suddenly, Young-soo tells Myung-gil that Jinho is behind him, but he says Jinho is not here. Suddenly, Jinho hits Myung-gil in the neck, which faints him, and Young-soo gets worried, but Jinho says he just knocked him out for a while. Jinho warns Young-soo not to tell him that he thinks last night was a dream, and says he doesn't think Young-soo is going to do something stupid within a day of his warnings. Suddenly, Jinho emits flames from his fingertips and says they should get over with it, but Young-soo, shivering with fear, starts apologizing and says he'll undo everything. However, Jinho says he had already given him a chance, which he ignored, so if he wanted to apologize, he'd have to pay for it first. Jinho grabs Young-soo's face and says from now on, the Kai he injected in him will disable the nerves that stabilize his mind. Jinho says no matter how hard Young-soo tries, he'll not be able to shake off the negative thoughts. And he'll suffer internally from the illusions born from your fears. Jinho says Myung-gil will also suffer as he has to witness Young-soo becoming miserable. Jinho says this is the punishment he gives them and hopes Choi Young-soo lives on without breaking. Jinho starts screaming in pain and cries at what the hell is happening to him, but Jinho leaves after warning him, and he still hears Young-soo's screams from outside. The next morning, Gang calls his family to come out because he bought new bicycles, but when they come out, they have just woken up, so they ask if this is why Gang was calling them. When Gang's wife asks why there are only 2 bikes, he replies that one is his and the other is for Jinho. Gang says Jinho has to go back to school tomorrow, and since his school is too far to walk and it's a waste to drive him there, he thought it was a good alternative. However, Jinho's mother asks what Gang is talking about because Jinho just had an accident a few weeks ago and says it's too dangerous. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks it looks like his father is really worried about him, so he thanks him for the bike. The following day, a couple is traveling in a car, and suddenly, the girl tells her man to speed, but he says 80 kilometers per hour is enough speed. The girl agrees, but she says it is just because a bike is right next to them, and suddenly, they get shocked when Jinho crosses them on a bike. In a while, Jinho reaches the school and Injayu gets happy to see him back and says Jinho doesn't know how boring this place was without him. On his first day back to school, while there were people like Young Injayu who treated him normally, but there were also those who were awkward about facing him, probably because they didn't stand like him on that day. They also welcomed Jinho and said they bet it was tough to be at home because of suspension. However, Jinho didn't mind at all because he thought a person only feels betrayed when he expects from someone in first place. On the other hand, Choi Young-soo was seen nowhere in school and his thugs went outside as though they were avoiding Jinho. Jinho thinks thanks to that, the classroom's atmosphere is much better than before, but he also knows this is not the case for everyone and sees Park is avoiding eye contact with him. After the class, when Jinho is outside the class, suddenly he hears someone calling him and saying she heard he was suspended. Jinho turns back, thinking he knew this was coming and sees Han Se-yeon. Han Se-yeon says she couldn't find him at school and asks if he really sent Choi Young-soo to the hospital. Jinho knows she is not in the same class as him, but she comes by to talk to him, probably because of how social she is. Jinho feels awkward facing her because he has had a crush on Han Se-yeon in his past life. However, Jinho tells Han Se-yeon that Young-soo is probably faking his injuries, and Han Se-yeon says she didn't imagine Jinho to be the type of person with a temper. When Han Se-yeon says she doesn't like guys who use violence, so she loses points on that, Jinho thinks it is exhausting. Suddenly, Se-yeon asks if Jinho gets taller and says he looks wider, too. When Se-yeon says he feels larger than before, and his face got more handsome than before, Jinho feels awkward and thinks she has a keen eye. Jinho remembers when he decided to create a Kai core. He tried to conduct a body transformation, but because he thought suddenly changing his whole appearance would be a problem, he decided to change his body little by little instead of conducting a whole body reformation. Jinho thinks it's only been 3 days, and yet this girl realized it, which means she has some remarkable sense. On the contrary, Jinho tells her she is just imagining things. Meanwhile, as the class is starting, Se-yeon leaves while telling him to not forget that he promised to go to karaoke with her, but Jinho wonders if he made such a promise. After the school, Jinho feels refreshing while riding his bike back home and thinks he should ride a bit more before he go back home. Suddenly, Jinho sees Park walking in front of him and he immediately stops his way, which startles Park and he gets nervous to see Jinho. Jinho asks Park if he is walking back home and asks where he lives, but Park asks why Jinho is asking this. Jinho says it's not what Park is thinking and tells him not to worry. Park tells him that his house is up the hill. Jinho says Park doesn't need to lie because he can't possibly walk all the way up there, but Park replies he is serious. Jinho tells Park to get on the bike so he'll give him a ride, but Park says it's okay. Jinho insists, so Park gets on the bike. Park apologizes to Jinho while Jinho is riding him home. Park says he has done terrible things to Jinho and that it's all his fault, but Jinho asks why Park did it and why he lied back then. Park replies that he lived at an orphanage on top of the hill, but it's been a while since funding was cut off for the orphanage, so things are bad. Park says he tried to deliver newspapers to earn some money, but it was not enough. When Jinho asks if Park delivers newspaper with a leg like his, Park replies he does that because no one wants to do that job near his place as it is full of steep inclines. Furthermore, Park tells Jinho that while his orphanage was already short of money, the landlord suddenly asked them to get out. Park says if they shut down their orphanage, the kids will have to split up and go to different orphanages, but everyone in their orphanage is handicapped, so they'll probably be bullied like him if they go somewhere. Park tells Jinho that the other day, the principal and the chairman offered him a deal and said the Dongmyung Foundation would support the orphanage if he said what they wanted him to say. As a result, Park couldn't refuse the offer, and Jinho thought it was true that they had talked to Park beforehand. However, Jinho asks if it is all good now since Park can continue living in the orphanage. Park replies it is not necessarily true because the chairman never contacted him since that day. Park says that deep down, he knew the chairman was not a person who would actually help and regrets that, in the end, all he did was help Choi Young-soo. Park sincerely apologizes to Jinho because he helped him, and all he did was betray him. Jinho thinks Park has his own burden on his shoulders and suddenly, he stops on the road which leads to the hill and asks if Park said it was up this hill. Park replies that is right and Jinho can drop him here, but Jinho tells Park to hold on with a blazing speed. He starts riding the bike. After some while when Jinho stops the bike, Park is shocked and feels his lifespan just got shorter. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks they have come too far. Suddenly, Park apologizes to Jinho again because he was suspended because of him and says he'll explain everything at school by tomorrow. Park says he'll do everything he can to get the suspension off Jinho's records, even if he has to report it to the Office of Education. However, Jinho tells Park it is a trivial matter and says he is not sure what choice he would have made himself if it was his own family that was on the hook. Jinho says he'll accept Park's apology, so he should buy him a can of Coke next time. Park gets amazed. He tells Jinho that he is such a strong person, and with teary eyes and a smile he says he'll make it 2 cans. After dropping Park, Jinho returns home and his mother says he is late, to which he replies that he just visited his friend's house. Jinho's mother says that's new, but then he tells him to come in and have dinner. Suddenly, Jinho asks if his father is not back yet, to which his mother replies that his father is going to be a bit late because his new workplace ends a bit late or something like that. Jinho's mother says they still need to pay for things for Yoon-young, and Jinho is going to college soon, so they need to continue working. Jinho's mother tells him that she is also going to work again next week, which makes Jinho worried, but she tells him not to worry about it because they are fine as long as their children are good and well. After that, Jinho goes to take a shower, and he thinks it's been a month since he came back to the modern world. Jinho thinks his conversation with his parents and Park Yoo-min made him learn one thing, that he needs money. Jinho thinks that if he had enough money, Choi Young-soo would not have looked down on him, and neither would his family have suffered. Jinho realizes that to do something with this reality, he needs money, not trinkets, but a fortune. Jinho knows he could do manual labor, but it's obvious that my parents would go against it. Jinho does know a few future events, but he doesn't have seed money to buy stocks. Jinho thinks his first goal is to make money, but he wonders how he'll do it and starts searching online. Suddenly, he realizes there is something that only he, who has the experience and power from Jongyun, can do. Jinho thinks it is somewhat extreme, but he plans to not pick his methods anymore. Jinho finds a surefire way to earn money, and he goes to visit Chairman H. Wang-young who is on a ventilator. Jinho says he'll give H. Wang-young half a day, so until then, he should have decided half the price of his life. The Yi Kyung conglomerate is one of the top companies in South Korea, and it shows strength in electronics. The giant who became a figure in modern Korean history by making the Yi Kyung conglomerate one of the best companies in Korea, starting from scratch, is the chairman, H. Wang-young Jinho researched there may be companies better than Yi Kyung, but there is no businessman known to be better than H. Wang-young This sums up how high the industry thinks of H. Wang-young and everyone admired and envied his life. However, when he became old and collapsed because of illness, the Yi Kyung conglomerate started to fracture. The 3 sons of Chairman H. Wang started fighting over the rights of the company, and it's been a year since H. Wang-young became ill. One day Baek Yong-gi visits Chairman H. Wang and asks Sir how he is doing, but H. Wang is sleeping. Simultaneously, when Baek Yong asks the nurse how Chairman is, she replies he is getting better. Baek Yong thanks her and asks if he can have some time with the chairman. The nurse leaves and Baek Yong-gi sits beside the chairman with his head lowered. Baek tells the chairman that it's been a year since he retired and says it looks like reporting the company matters to the chairman every week has become the only joy in his life. However, Baek Yong-gi says this will be his final report because the next chairman has been decided, and he was fired today, so he cannot visit this ward anymore. Baek Yong-gi asks the chairman to forgive him because he can't stay by him until the end. He tells him that the court has split his property and shares it with his 3 sons. Baek Yong tells the chairman that his sons couldn't come to an agreement and has decided to split the Yi Kuch conglomerate into 3. Baek Yong-gi says it looks like there will be more court cases in the details of the splitting, which he opposed to the end of but couldn't stop. Baek Yong says the Yi Kyung conglomerate, which the chairman built his whole life, will be divided into 3 days and will have different names. Baek Yong asks H. Wang if this is what they put their effort into this whole time, because all that is left is a robbed company and empty glory. Baek Yong, while crying, says just one more time if he could see the strong and powerful Yong who made his dream, he would die with peace. Suddenly, someone enters the room and calls director Baek Yong-gi to say that it's time and that he should come out. Baek Yong says goodbye to the chairman and apologizes that their farewell has to be like this. Baek Yong hopes the chairman lives well and says he'll serve him again in the afterlife. At night when the chairman is awake, Jinho arrives and says he gave the chairman half a day, so his body should be healthy now, but asks why he didn't get up. Suddenly, Jinho asks if H. Wang-young lost his will to live because of the treacherous reality, to which Young replies that is not the case. Young says that, over the past year, while lying down helplessly, all he could do was pray. Young says his children came to see him and glared at him with the hopes of him dying already. Young says that when his subordinate, whom he virtually abandoned, came to report to him every week, he always prayed for another chance, even if it was futile. Hwang Yung, who says that is when Jinho came and says he doesn't care how he cured him, nor he care if Jinho is an angel or devil. Suddenly, the chairman gets up and says it's his last chance, so he didn't want to waste it by making a premature move that would possibly annoy Jinho. Hwang says he would never make a move without Jinho's consideration, and Jinho gets excited because this aura feels like he is seeing a master from Jongyuan. Jinho is glad because this is only something he can do in this world, to cure an ill billionaire with his martial arts and demand money in return. Jinho searched through the VIP rooms of all major hospitals in the country, and Hwang Yung, who was the man whose situation and his ambitions all make him a perfect fit for Jinho's business. Suddenly, Jinho tells Hwang that they should proceed with their deal because he believes he has shown enough of what he can do for him. Jinho promises to heal Yung Who once a month so he can maintain his health, and when he is about to say what he wants, Hwang wonders what Jinho will ask for. Yung Who wonders if he is a devil who wants his soul or something precious and hopes he doesn't ask for the whole company. Suddenly, when Jinho says he just wants one big check of money, Hwang, in shock, asks if Jinho is saying that the devil finds the price of his life to only be worth a single check. Jinho is confused about who Hwang is calling a devil, but he says if Yung Who has a problem with that, they can make it to 1 year. Hwang immediately agrees and says he owes him a major debt, but he is glad because he never imagined a devil to be so clumsy at negotiating and thinks this is one hell of a profit on his side. Finally, when Hwang asks where to send the money and if there is a method Jinho has thought of, Jinho gets startled and wonders why he didn't think about the important part. Jinho thinks it is difficult to hold that much money in cash, and bank transfers leave records, which makes Yung Who realize that this devil has not thought of it. Suddenly, Hwang says he'll prepare the methods on his side and asks Jinho to tell him where to bring the money. Jinho is hesitant, but Yung Who tells him to trust him and says he doesn't know why Jinho is hiding his identity, but he'll give him his word that he'll also keep it a secret. When Hwang says that they are business partners after all, Jinho takes off his hood and says he is Gang Jinho from Dongmyung High School, Class 2-3. Hwang is shocked to know that the devil is a high schooler, but when Jinho asks if there is a problem, Hwang replies it's no problem and says he'll visit him when things are ready. Jinho says he'll leave the rest to Hwang, and when he leaves, Hwang gets up on his feet and, while looking outside the window, thinks he thought he saw everything in his life, but he realizes he was wrong. Hwang thinks he should keep Gang Jinho close for the sake of Yi Kyung. The next day, at the Yi Kyung conglomerate headquarters, Secretary Cho Jae-min says the idiom that every cloud has a silver lining perfectly fits him. Cho Jae-min says he went from being on top of the secretary's office to be fired list to simply the top of the office. Jae-min is thankful to Chairman Hwang Yung Who for returning. Cho Jae-man says that although it is thanks to his seniors, who all agreed with a split of the company and got fired, he thinks sticking to the right side is also a part of his skill. Cho Jae-min thinks ever since the chairman came back from his illness, the corporation has been pretty noisy, but looking at the chairman's bold decision to fire everyone related to the fracture of the corporation within 3 days, Cho Jae-min thinks it is quite understandable why everyone calls him the giant of the financial world. Suddenly, Cho wonders why the chairman told him to do a private investigation, and when he takes the file to show the chairman, the assistant reports it to the chairman. The chairman tells the assistant to let Cho Jae-min in, and when Cho goes in, Hwang says he believes Cho Jae-min has investigated everything he asked for. Cho Jae-min gives the file, which contains Jinho's information, and says he did everything he could. Cho thinks it is hard to believe the chairman was on his deathbed last week and wonders why the chairman is so interested in him. Cho wonders if Jinho is the illegitimate child of the chairman and wonders who this high schooler is. Meanwhile, the chairman says there is nothing special in the information and asks if there is anything worth mentioning. Cho replies that there is a word that Jinho has changed since a recent car accident. When the chairman asks what has changed, Cho says Jinho used to be bright and social, but ever since the accident, he seems to have become gloomy and less talkative. Cho says this can be the after effects of the accident, but there were some odd things while investigating him. Cho says he tailed Jinho a few times, but it felt like he was the one who was being watched. Cho says that about the Dongmyung Foundation Jinho, it looks like he had some trouble with the foundation chairman and his grandson. This interests the chairman, and Cho says there was a simple quarrel between the students, but there are signs that the foundation forced unfair dismissals against Gang Jinho's parents. Suddenly, Yung Who said that Cho had done a great job and thanked the chairman. Yung Who says he can use this information to earn some points, and when he asks how the Dongmyung Foundation is, Cho replies it is stable only financially, but there are a lot of signs of corruption, and the chairman can think of it as a sand castle that would collapse easily if the chairman stirs up that part. Hwang is happy to know this, and suddenly, he asks how old Cho Jae-min is, to which he replies he is 32. Yung Who says it is good to be young and asks if Cho is interested in taking a job. On the other hand, Young-soo is hiding in his room in terror when his grandfather brings him porridge and tells him to eat because he needs to get well, but Young-soo sees his grandfather as a monster and screams. Young-soo tells him not to come close to him while his grandfather tries to tell him that it's all just an illusion. Young-soo throws away the porridge and apologizes to Gang Jinho, saying it's all his fault. Young-soo screams it's all his fault and says he'll undo everything. Young-soo begs for Jinho's help, but his grandfather is furious because it's all because of Jinho. Meanwhile, Jinho is enjoying themselves in a gaming room with his friends when Injayu asks if he is sure, but Jinho asks what he is talking about. Injayu says he is talking about bringing Park Yu-min, but Jinho says Injayu himself asked him to bring someone because they are playing against the other class. Injayu says that is right, but it's Park, and besides, he doesn't look like he is good at gaming. Jinho tells Injayu not to worry and says he'll carry everyone, but that's because he has practiced every day since he lost on the first day. Suddenly, when their friends react in shock to see Park playing, they immediately move to see his rating, and they are also surprised. Injayu can't believe Park is a challenger in the game, and they have already won. However, Jinho asks what a challenger is, to which Injayu replies it's a league ranking of the top 0.01%. Suddenly, Jinho asks what role Park plays, to which he replies that he can do anything, but he usually plays attic. Jinho tells him to teach him a thing or two and thinks Park will make a good rival. The next day, the students hear about how good Park is at gaming, so they praise him and offer him to play with them sometime. Meanwhile, Jinho is feeling sad, so Injayu asks what is wrong and asks if Jinho still thinks Park is his rival or something. Jinho immediately says he'll beat Park next time, but Injayu reminds Jinho that Roar is a team game. Injayu says he didn't know Park was so good at it, and he would have been much more popular if everyone knew about it before. Jayu says now that he thinks about it, it's weird how Park was bullied in the first place and says he is pretty sure girls would like him too because he looks cute. When Jayu says maybe he should become good friends with Park, Jinho feels a little jealous. Suddenly, an announcement is made that Park has been called to the principal's office, and everyone wonders why he has been called to the office. When Park goes to the office, he asks why Chairman Choi called him, but the chairman tells Park to relax and apologizes that it took so long to contact Park. The chairman says it took him some time to prepare the things he promised, and when he takes out a money envelope with a file, Park asks what it is. Chairman says it is the contract of support for the Sungshim orphanage and asks if Park thought he'd break his promise. Park says he gets it, but he asks what the money is for, to which the chairman replies the children at the orphanage need new clothes. The chairman says he understands it as a person who is raising his own grandson, so Park thanks him, but the chairman says he also has a small favor to ask for. The chairman says Young-soo is not doing well these days, and as his grandfather, it's painful to see him struggle on the bed day after day. The chairman says that now that he comes to think of it, he realizes what the problem is and that everything has happened ever since Jinho showed up. Park feels awkward, and suddenly, the chairman says they should get rid of Gang Jinho so Young-soo will have some peace of mind. The chairman says they need to expel Jinho, and for that, he needs Park to help him. Simultaneously, Cho Jae-min arrives at Dongmyeong High School on Young-hoo's orders. Meanwhile, Jinho is listening to the conversation between the chairman and Park from outside the office door. Park asks if the chairman wants him to lie again, but the chairman says Park is making it sound bad. However, the chairman asks why Park would have a problem doing this again, and says he just needs to give a simple answer like last time. The chairman tells Park to do that, so he'll then help the orphanage and says he is sure Park will understand that this will be the best for both of them. The chairman tells Park to think about it, but Park refuses the offer and says he doesn't want to regret his actions anymore. Park says Choi Young-soo was the one who bullied him, and Jinho simply got caught in the middle while trying to help him, so he tells the chairman not to touch Jinho again. Park says he is not going to let this happen anymore, and he doesn't need any of the money, so he tells the chairman to take them back. The chairman gets shocked and says it looks like he has made a mistake because Park is not the man he thought he was. The chairman, while getting up, says it's understandable why Young-soo bullied Park in the first place and says it's because the weak should live the way of the weak. The chairman says if Park tries to crawl up, he'll fall to his death, and that punishment suits people like Park who try to crawl up. Suddenly, Jinho gets in, saying these words are correct, and that is why Choi Young-soo ended up like that. The chairman and Park are shocked to see Jinho, and the chairman asks how the hell he is there. Jinho says it looks like the reason why Choi Young-soo was such a scum is because he was influenced by the chairman. The chairman furiously curses Jinho, but Jinho tells Park to go back because the class is about to start. While they are leaving, the chairman blackmails Jinho by saying that he heard Jinho's parents got a new jobs, so it would be terrible if they got fired again in times like now. The chairman says he also heard that Jinho's sister is training to become a singer and that he guesses Jinho's family can still afford that. Moreover, the chairman says the singing industry has quite a bad reputation because it forces trainees to do things to get debuted. As the chairman says, Jinho should take care of his sister. Jinho loses his cool, and his inner devil gets triggered. The devil tells Jinho to kill the chairman, rip off his limbs, and destroy Choi Young-soo in front of him before killing him. Jinho's inner voice says he has suppressed it long enough, so he should kill them and return to his true self. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the room changes, and Park gets worried because he cannot move his body. Meanwhile, the chairman feels suffocated and Jinho agrees with his true self that he can do this, and he'll do it after a count of 3. Jinho starts the countdown to kill the chairman, but suddenly, Secretary Cho Jae-min arrives there saving good evening to everyone. Cho asks if this is the principal's office, but feels the atmosphere in the room is awkward. Jinho thinks it's a shame because he has to stop, but Park can move again, and the chairman is still in shock. Cho asks if he has come in a bad moment and asks Jinho if he is Gang Jinho, but Jinho asks how he knows him. Cho whispers to him that he is Cho Jae-min, the secretary of Chairman H-Wang, and Jinho wonders what he is doing here. Suddenly, Cho says that, as a capable secretary, he knows what is happening here, and while dragging Jinho and Park outside, he says he'll take care of things from now on, and that they can leave. However, Jinho says he is not finished with the chairman, but Cho tells Jinho that the chairman, H-Wang, is waiting for him at the front gate because he has something to give him. Cho tells Jinho to leave immediately and leave the panic-stricken Choi to him, so Jinho leaves. Cho closes the door and wonders what the hell happened here that resulted like this and realizes there really is a reason why Chairman H-Wang is interested in that high schooler. Suddenly, Cho asks the chairman if he is okay, and if he is the chairman, Choi Myung-gil. Choi gets back to his senses and asks who he is and where Gang Jinho is. However, Cho says Choi Myung-gil just asked who he is, and with a serious expression, he replies to that question that he is Cho Jae-min. Cho says that, by the order of someone who is way on top, he has been assigned to be the deputy chairman of the school. Cho Myung-gil is shocked to hear this, and Cho says it looks like Choi Myung-gil has not been contacted yet. On the other hand, Chairman H-Wang is having a conversation with Jinho and tells him that the Dongmyeong Foundation is going through a search and seizure due to accusations of corruption. H-Wang says Dongmyeong Foundation will probably go bankrupt because of the crippling debt, and Jinho School will now be run by the educational foundation of his corporation. When Jinho asks why H-Wang is doing this and asks if he secretly investigates him, H-Wang replies that it only makes sense for a businessman to understand what kind of person he is working with. H-Wang tells Jinho not to be upset because he didn't do it with any malicious intent and says he is only helping Jinho as a business partner. H-Wang says he thought Jinho was also trouble because of that matter, and Jinho thinks that if Cho hadn't interfered at that moment, things would have gone very badly. Jinho is impressed that H-Wang destroyed Chairman Choi just like that and realizes there is always someone higher. H-Wang gives Jinho a credit card and a checkbook and says it is the money he promised. H-Wang says this account is under his name and he already talked to the local bank, so Jinho should feel free to withdraw as much as he need. As Jinho checks the amount, he gets shocked, and while sweating he says he thinks there is a problem with the amount. After some while, Chairman H-Wang is sitting at Jinho's house, and when they ask if he can elaborate on the situation, H-Wang tells them that he was recently able to find his grandson, whom he lost contact with 15 years ago, but it was too late. H-Wang says his grandson was already in the last stages of an incurable illness and died soon after. H-Wang says after that, while clearing his grandson's room, he found his diary and found how close friends his grandson was with Jinho. H-Wang says the diary was filled with his grandson's memories of Jinho staying beside him during his time in the hospital. H-Wang says with the passing of his poor Myung-gak, he can't help but think of Jinho as his grandson. H-Wang requests them to understand his thoughts, and his grandson and Jinho's parents believe what he is saying. Meanwhile, Jinho can't believe this works because he is wondering how he should explain the money to his family, but he thinks it is a good idea to leave the explanation to H-Wang. Moreover, Jinho notices that H-Wang is enjoying this situation, but suddenly, Jinho's father says he understands H-Wang's words, but they cannot take this money. Gang says he doesn't know how much of a good friend Jinho was to H-Wang's grandson, but they are happy with H-Wang's appreciation. Jinho was expecting this from his honest father, but suddenly, everyone was shocked to see H-Wang start crying with tears. H-Wang says he couldn't do anything for his grandson, so they should allow him to become a grandfather worth facing his dead grandson. H-Wang asks them to let him fulfill what he wants to do for his grandson, so Gang asks him to raise his head, but H-Wang insists that Gang take this money. Gang gets worried, but he agrees, and Jinho is impressed by how hard H-Wang is trying. After that, when Jinho goes to see off H-Wang asks him how it was to see a big-time chairman perform and says he is sure Jinho's family is convinced. Jinho says it was impressive in a lot of ways, but asks if H-Wang is sure about this because he didn't ask for that much money. On the other hand, Jinho's family is shocked to see the amount, and they scream that it's 10 billion rupees. Meanwhile, the chairman tells Jinho that it is the price of his life they are talking about, so Jinho should take it. He says he looks forward to working with Jinho again in the future. The chairman says he hopes Jinho doesn't mind if he does a favor on his side, so Jinho asks what it is. H-Wang says Jinho doesn't have any means to contact him directly, so he was thinking of having contact between them. When H-Wang asks what Jinho thinks, Jinho wonders if he wants to keep an eye on him, and H-Wang realizes Jinho still has concerns on his side. However, Jinho agrees, so H-Wang thanks him for understanding and tells him that Cho is quite a capable fellow, so Jinho should feel free to use him. The chairman says he'll see Jinho next time again, and as he leaves, Jinho, while looking at the check, wonders how he should use it. The next morning, Cho Jae-min goes to meet Jinho and says he is assigned as Jinho's secretary and as a contact to Chairman H-Wang. Cho asks if Jinho remembers him at the principal's office the other day, to which Jinho replies that he remembers, but he asks what he means by secretary. Cho says the chairman has ordered him to treat Jinho as his boss and says he has prepared a ride for him to school, but Jinho says he is fine with the bike. Jinho wonders what that old geezer is thinking, and suddenly, Cho tells Jinho to allow him to report one more thing and says it's about Choi Myung-gil. Cho says they are expecting Choi Myung-gil to be bankrupt by the end of tomorrow. When Jinho asks if it's happening so quickly, Cho replies that Chairman H-Wang told him to take care of this matter within 3 days, and as a result, their educational foundation has decided to take over Jinho's high school. Jinho realizes it's convenient to have power and, to be exact, financial power. Meanwhile, Cho thinks Jinho doesn't feel like an ordinary high schooler, and when H-Wang assigns Cho as Jinho's secretary, he asks if Jinho is his successor by any chance. H-Wang laughed and said that successor was quite an interesting word to say, but while thinking, he said there was no reason Jinho couldn't become one. H-Wang said he cannot say for sure yet, but the possibility is there. H-Wang thought it was a mission that wouldn't lose its value before his death, so he told Cho to take care of Jinho as though Cho was serving him, to which Cho replied he'd keep that in mind. Cho thinks this is great in either way because being the secretary of the successor of the Yi Kyung Corporation also means success. Cho is happy that it's finally his time to shine, and suddenly, when Jinho asks if that is all he wants to tell, Cho replies that is it and says he'll soon meet Jinho at the school. Jinho is leaving while Cho is excited that he has been assigned as the chairman of the school, but suddenly, Jinho stops and says he has a favor to ask. After school, when Jinho visits Park excitedly tells Jinho that their orphanage is finally getting a sponsor, and they show up right on the verge of the orphanage shutting down. Park thinks it's miraculous, but suddenly, he sees Jinho is surrounded by the orphanage kids, and they are not letting him go. Park tells them not to do this and serves them food, which surprises Jinho, who doesn't know that Park can cook. Park says he can't leave everything to the director, but curry is the only thing he can make. Suddenly, when a kid asks if there is curry again, Jinho wonders if he should get him a good food service, too. Simultaneously, Jinho asks Park why Han Se-yeon is there, to which she replies she is there to fill his volunteer service hours. She asks if Jinho is done with that, but he asks her what that is. Han Se-yeon asks if he is really a high schooler and explains that they go to volunteer work at places and get certificates of how many hours they worked. Han Se-yeon says they have to work at places like orphanages and fire stations, and they need to earn 60 hours at high school. Han Se-yeon tells Jinho not to tell her that he didn't do any of it at all, to which Jinho replies that it doesn't make sense to evaluate volunteer work. Han Se-yeon says it's a lame excuse, but suddenly, Park tells them not to worry about that because he'll talk to the director about that. Suddenly, Han Se-yeon asks if they are studying for the finals because they will soon be seniors, to which Park replies he is fine with his grades right now, and Jinho says he is planning to do that. Han Se-yeon says they are being too laid back and asks if they know how fierce it is to get into college in Korea. Suddenly, Park says Jinho is pretty good with his grades and says Jinho had trouble with the midterms because of the accident, but he heard his grades were within the top of the 10 schools. Hearing this, Han Se-yeon says that it is quite a surprise and asks if Jinho wants to bet. When Jinho asks about what, she says it is boring to study without a purpose anyway, so she says the loser will do whatever the winner asks for. Jinho thinks that is right, and he forgot that his grades were pretty in the past, but he is sure he'll remember things again when he starts studying. Han Se-yeon asks if he is going to chicken out, but Jinho says he accepts the challenge. On the other hand, Cho Jae-min checks that Jinho's family has yet to use any of the money the chairman has given them. Cho checks that the only money used was for the patronage of the Sungsham orphanage, which gang Jinho asked him to help with. Cho can't understand who Jinho is and thinks he doesn't seem to be a relative of the chairman because it feels like the chairman is being careful when dealing with Jinho. On top of that, Cho remembers there was that feeling he felt in the principal's room, the feeling of being overwhelmed. Cho thinks it's been a few weeks since he started working as the deputy chairman and observed Jinho, but nothing special happened ever since. Cho wonders why the chairman assigned him this job and how long he has to do it, but he wishes he could do it forever because being a deputy chairman is really easy. Suddenly, Cho sees some kids gathering in front of the notice board and wonders what is going on, but he immediately remembers that final grades come out today. Meanwhile, Jinho is wasted to see his grades, and simultaneously, In-jae tells him that he totally bombed the finals, so his parents are going to kill him. Suddenly, In-jae asks Jinho about his grades, but realizes it's a dumb question to ask because Jinho is pretty good. Jinho doesn't reply, and suddenly, Han Se-yeon comes in with excitement. Han Se-yeon asks Jinho about his grades, but he doesn't look at her, and In-jae asks what she is doing in their class. Se-yeon says she made a bet with Jinho, and she is here to see the results, but In-jae asks if she is serious. Se-yeon takes Jinho's grade report to see the result while Jinho wonders what in the world went wrong because he is pretty sure he studied. Seung is shocked to see Jinho is at 295th place out of 305. Seon says Jinho is among the top 10 worst students at the school and that he is making her feel sorry to even make a bet with him. Seon, with disappointment, asks why he accepted the bet, to which Jinho replies that he just made a mistake. Still, Seon says she is not going to let him off the hook and says she'll keep her prize wish for later, so he should look forward to becoming her slave. Meanwhile, Injayu confusedly asks how the hell Jinho went from top 10 to the top 10 worst and asks if Jinho's brain has a problem because of the accident. Simultaneously, Park tells them not to be too harsh on Jinho and says he is pretty sure Jinho is the one most shocked there. Park says Jinho might have had a condition problem, but Jinho is going through extreme embarrassment and thinks he needs to do something. Jinho visits Cho in his office and shows him his results. Cho understands the situation and asks if Jinho came to him to learn how to study, to which Jinho replies that he is right and says he needs his help. Jinho asks Cho how he can improve his grades, and Cho says if Gang Jinho asks him for help, then it is time for a top-class elite like him to shine. Cho asks if it's right that Jinho said he had problems remembering things before the accident, to which Jinho replies that it is true. Cho, after seeing the tests, says Jinho is getting a variety of questions wrong, regardless of their difficulty. Cho says that if that is the case, then it actually makes things easier, and that he'll help Jinho. Cho says he'll send a solution to Jinho's house today, and when he goes home, he will receive an elementary school math book. Jinho remembers that Cho said if he lacked fundamentals, he just needs to build them from scratch. That is why Cho sent him elementary school textbooks and said 1 week was good enough for first grade. Cho advised Jinho to finish them all in 1 week, and they'll start with the second grade next week. Jinho remembers his master in Jongyuan also emphasized the basics. Jinho thinks there is 1 year until the CSAT test, and since he is on it, he'll make his goal of becoming first place. A few months later, Jinho hangs to having a goal for the first time in a while. His time flew by quickly. After the end of the school year, his family decided to move to a new house, and it was only after he persuaded his parents, who insisted on not using the money Chairman Hwang gave them. Jinho thought it wasn't bad to see his family happy because of their new house, but after that, his parents quit their jobs and opened a new cafe. Jinho was forced to drink coffee every day because his father got into researching coffee recipes, and another thing that changed had to do with Park Yoo-min. With the orphanage being financially stable, Park Yoo-min decided to take the offer as a pro gamer, which he had to let down before. Jinho says although Park Yoo-min is still a trainee, he started showing up less and less at school, and like that, time flew by. 50 days until the CSAT. Cho says Jinho is finally done with the 11th grade material. Cho praises Jinho and says that, at this pace, it looks like Jinho will make it before CSAT. While Jinho is glad it isn't finally over, Cho thinks it is good that Jinho is finally loosening up in front of him, and suddenly, he says they still have the 12th grade stuff to cover up. Cho says they are almost just there, and only a bit more is left, but Jinho is sure this sadistic guy is enjoying this situation. Jinho thinks he has been doing Kai meditation when he can, and it is still this much of a burden, so he thinks it seems Kai meditation can't help with his mental health. Suddenly, Jinho picks up his bag to leave and says it's enough for today, but Cho asks if he has something to do today, to which Jinho replies that he has something to celebrate. After some while, Jinho is at the celebration of Park Yoo-min's debut as a pro gamer, and when Injayu congratulates Park, he thanks everyone, but he gets emotional because he has never been congratulated like this before. Jinho tells Park to stop crying like a baby, but Seon asks if he is his dad or something. After that, they have dinner, which Park says is on him, and after leaving, Injayu says it is amazing and asks who is in for karaoke. Seon immediately replies that she is in, and suddenly, she says it must be nice to be a pro gamer. When Seon says Park doesn't even have to take the CSAT, he replies that there is always the risk of becoming jobless if he doesn't keep up practicing. When Seon says he did pretty well in this tournament, Park replies that it is all thanks to his team. Suddenly, Seon says she heard Jinho's grades got pretty good and that he can aim for Hanguk University, but Jinho says that place is too far and that he is going to Yi Kyung University because it's closer. Seon says he makes it sound like it's a cakewalk and says his grades are nowhere near their average scores, to which Jinho replies it is not a problem. Seon tells him to remember the last time when he was so confident, but suddenly, Jinho stops in front of an alley while others walk ahead. Seon keeps talking without looking behind and says he should study really hard. She thinks she can make it to Yi Kyung University with her grade, too, because their scholarships are nice, and it is also a prestigious university. Suddenly, Seon aggressively says she is not going to forgive him if he doesn't make it, but she is shocked to see Jinho is not there. Meanwhile, Jinho goes inside the alley where a man has beaten some people, and seeing Jinho coming there, that guy asks who he is. Jinho with a smile says they exist at this time, too, the people who use martial arts. The guy gets startled and asks who the hell he is, to which Jinho replies that he is someone who knows a thing about martial arts like him and asks the guy who trained him. The guy replies that he cannot tell him that, but Jinho smiles and thinks it always bothers him why do Kai-based martial arts, which was so prevalent in the past, not exist in this era? However, now Jinho knows the answer is that it is because they were simply hiding in the shadows. Jinho is sure martial arts do exist in this era, and the Kai he can sense in this guy shows that he must have been trained systematically. Jinho is sure someone taught this guy, and he wants to see how far martial arts has gotten in this era, so he challenges that guy to attack first. Jinho tells that guy to show him what he got and says he is sure he was bored facing normal people all this time. The guy gets furious and tries to attack Jinho, but Jinho jumps over that guy and says his moves are large and crude. The guy gets shocked, but he tries to hit Jinho, who is behind him, with his elbow. But Jinho blocks it, saying that he probably doesn't want to show how surprised he is like that, and tells the guy that he is not going to help him. Jinho lands on the floor, and that guy instantly tries to kick Jinho, so Jinho says his combinations are not half bad, but they don't mean much with that kind of speed. Simultaneously, Jinho calmly watches the kick reach him and thinks he knows this guy is a small fry, but it is underwhelming, and he feels that martial arts are degraded in this world. The guy, with his full force, lands the kick on Jinho's shoulder, but he is stunned to see that it doesn't harm Jinho. Jinho says he understands his capability, but his skills are no match for him, and he pushes that guy away. Jinho says he was just curious and never intended to hurt him, so he tells that guy to think of it as a quick spar. After that, when Jinho tells that guy to leave, he wonders where a monster like this comes from and thinks he needs to let his people know about this. While leaving, the guy says they'll meet again, and Jinho replies that he'll look forward to it. Simultaneously, Jinho's friends arrive there searching for him, and Seon furiously yells his name. Jinho immediately realizes he forgot about them and tries to be cool when he says yo, but Seon smacks his head and calls him an idiot. When Jinho asks why she is smacking him, Seon furiously tells him to shut up. Suddenly, Park notices the unconscious guys lying there who were beaten by the guy who left and asks Jinho if he did that. Everyone gets shocked, and they ask if Jinho disappeared to get into a fight, and Jinho replies that he didn't do that. Seiyan reminds Jinho that they are graduating soon, and tells him that violence is bad. When they all look at him suspiciously, Jinho tells them seriously that he didn't do that. The next morning, Cho visits H-Wang, and H-Wang says Cho looks much better than before. Cho replies that he hopes the chairman is doing well, too. H-Wang tells Cho not to worry about him because he is doing great and asks if Cho is there for his periodic report. Cho says that is right, and he is there with his observations of Gang Jinho. First of all, Cho says Jinho is focusing on his studies, and he is showing major improvements in his grades. H-Wang is happy that Jinho looks like a smart boy, and Cho says that is right, and to an abnormal degree, that is. Furthermore, Cho says Jinho testified that he lost most of his memories in the accident from a year ago, but says it looks like he has lost his academic knowledge in that incident. However, Cho says Jinho caught up with 12 years worth of school material within a single year, but he didn't seem to be exclusively focused on studying. Cho says that, at this rate, he is curious about the grades Jinho will receive on the CSAT. Suddenly, when H-Wang asks which university Jinho is aiming for, Cho replies that it is Yi Kaiying University. H-Wang says Jinho may not talk about it, but it looks like he is interested in their corporation. But Cho says that Jinho says it's because their university is nearby. After that, when H-Wang asks if there is anything else to report besides Jinho's grades, Cho feels nervous, but says it's totally based on his opinions, and he would like to report it because it might be an answer to what the chairman is looking for. Cho says Jinho is incomprehensible, but H-Wang asks what it means and how Jinho can be incomprehensible when Cho observes him for over a year. Cho says that is why it is more difficult to understand, and that there is no doubt that Jinho is a good person, but it feels like he is hiding something inside him. Cho says that sometimes he gets chills while observing Jinho, but H-Wang asks if Cho can be so sure about simple feelings like that. Cho asks if H-Wang remembers the chairman Choi Myung-gil, to which H-Wang replies that he remembers. Cho says Choi's grandson Young-soo, who was the cause of the problem, has become mentally crippled. H-Wang gets shocked, and Cho says he heard Young-soo showed initial signs of mental derangement, but it only got worse recently, and his shape was nowhere that of a high schooler. Cho says that he believes that Gang Jinho made Young-soo like that, but H-Wang, in shock, asks why he said so, to which Cho replies that he heard the conversation between Gang Jinho and Choi Young-soo. Cho says that about a month ago, he went to see Young-soo and Jinho. Cho says he knew Jinho was kind to his allies and cold to those who weren't, but what he did to Young-soo that day was completely incomprehensible. Cho says the Gang Jinho he saw that day seemed too dangerous, so the chairman asked Cho to tell him more about that day. A few days ago, Jinho asked Cho to find Choi Young-soo, and Cho thought it was out of nowhere. Jinho told Cho that Choi Young-soo is the grandson of the chairman of the Dongmyung Foundation and told him not to ask for the reason. A few days later, Cho finds the whereabouts of Young-soo, and when he is driving Jinho there, Jinho asks where Young-soo is. Cho replies that it's not far, and that it looks like they couldn't easily leave the place where they lived their whole lives. After some while, they reach the location, and Cho says they have to walk up the stairs to reach their home. Cho wonders why Jinho would want to see Young-soo because it's been a year since the incident between them happened. After they walk up the stairs, Cho gets tired and says it's the house where Young-soo and his grandfather moved after bankruptcy. Suddenly, when Jinho barges into the house, Cho gets worried and says he cannot just walk in like that. Meanwhile, Choi Myung-gil sees someone enter the house and asks who it is, and when Jinho walks toward him, Choi recognizes him. Choi is shocked to see Jinho, and when Jinho says he is there to see Young-soo, Choi picks up a stick and furiously tells Jinho to leave him alone. Choi says it's been a whole year, so what Jinho wants from Young-soo is to furiously tell Jinho to get the hell out of there and leave them alone. Cho asks Jinho what they should do now, but Jinho goes inside to see Young-soo. Choi tells Jinho to stop because Young-soo's seizures just stopped, and he fell asleep a moment ago. Choi says it's all his fault and Jinho should leave Young-soo alone, but suddenly, Young-soo wakes up and asks what's going on. Young-soo gets scared to see Jinho, and Cho is shocked to see Young-soo's terrible condition. Choi Myung-gil tells Jinho to get out, but Jinho walks towards Young-soo, and Cho holds back Choi from hitting Jinho. Young-soo starts shivering with terror, and Cho wonders what Jinho is here for in the world. Cho wonders if Jinho is here to laugh at the two who became miserable and thinks it's too cruel, but Jinho tells Young-soo to look at him and ask who he is. Young-soo replies that he is Gang Jinho, and Jinho says that is right. He is not a hallucination, and he is Gang Jinho. Jinho places his hand on Young-soo's chest, heals him instantly, and asks what Young-soo has been seeing this whole time. Young-soo replies that it was hell, and Jinho says that he has also gone through hell, just like Young-soo did. At that time, Jinho says he withstood that hellhole and earned a second chance. Jinho says it's been a year since that day, and it made him think about who could possibly give Young-soo a second chance. Jinho says it would be unfair if Young-soo never got a second chance and says that Young-soo doesn't have the power and wealth he used to have, but all he has is a weak body. Suddenly, Young-soo furiously says he'll kill Gang Jinho, so Jinho, with a smile, replies that's good and, after throwing some money at Young-soo, tells him to try getting back up with this. While leaving, Jinho tells Young-soo that he paid his price and that he'll give him another chance. Jinho tells Young-soo to come and find him when he is ready because he'll give Young a chance to slit his throat. Jinho says it is all up to Young-soo. He can take the money and hide somewhere so he won't find him. Suddenly, Young-soo screams he'll kill Jinho one day, but Jinho tells Cho that they should leave. Back to the present, Cho tells H-Wang everything and says that day. He could not help but shiver at the sight he saw. When H-Wang calmly says this is what happened, Cho says people wouldn't understand it without seeing it themselves, and H-Wang says he assumes so because he thought the same. Cho asks what the chairman means and asks if he already knows about it. When Cho asks why the chairman didn't tell him, H-Wang asks if Cho would have believed him if he had told him. H-Wang says there are people who are precise with their payments, and that if they assume Gang Jinho was such a person, Jinho might not have wanted to torment Young-soo more than he deserved. Cho says that even if so, Jinho is dangerous and advises H-Wang to stay away from him, but H-Wang says that is not an option and that he can't stay away from Jinho. Cho is confused, but H-Wang says Jinho's existence is deeply related to his life, and he also wants Jinho to stay as close as possible. H-Wang says Jinho is still a mysterious man, and maybe it's only obvious because they fear him somewhat, but all they can hope is for Jinho not to cause something that would go out of their hands. H-Wang says they should keep an eye on Jinho and see where he goes and how much help he would be to the Yi Kaiying Corporation. On the other hand, Jinho is exhausted and tells Park Yoo-min that he is finally done with the 12th grade material. Park Yoo-min says they are only 2 days away from the CSAT, but he made it on time. Jinho says he is aiming for first place, but Park Yoo-min says he doesn't think people usually aim for that on the CSAT. Park says it looks like they are graduating soon, and suddenly he thanks Jinho, but Jinho says that was random. Park says he means Jinho helped him with the orphanage and a lot of other things. Most of all, Park thanks Jinho for being friends with him because he had never made friends before Jinho, and thanks in advance for the future. However, Jinho suddenly gets up, saying they should go, and offers to give a ride to Park. Park tells Jinho to wait, but Jinho thinks he doesn't know how this boy can be so shameless sometimes. While leaving, Park asks if he has to ride on the back seat of that bike again. Jinho tells him not to worry because he'll ride slowly. Meanwhile, the guy who Jinho beat in the alley is present on a rooftop near his school and shows Jinho to his sir. The senior says this kid is quite something at such a young age, and he makes him nervous just by looking at him. That man with a sneaky smile says that is surely impossible for a normal person and says, "Welcome to the modern world, new returner." The day of the CSAT arrives, Jinho's mother packs him lunch, which would be easy for his stomach. Jinho's mother tells him to eat well for lunch, and he thanks her mother while his sister tells him to make sure he doesn't make any stupid mistakes on the test. Their mother tells her not to jinx his brother, and his dad asks if Jinho is sure he doesn't need a ride, to which Jinho replies it is right next to his school, so he is fine. After some while, Jinho reaches the test center and sees a lot of kids there. He wonders if he is feeling nervous. In the examination hall, the examiner says they'll force the students to leave if their phone rings, and they should raise their hands in case of emergency. The test starts, and Jinho thinks it is silly that he's getting nervous over such a thing and decides to focus on the test. Jinho says he'll show his best and closes his eyes. Jinho remembers the art of Kai of Asura, which utilizes the Kai of the user and maximizes their physical capability. It is the art that made it possible for Jinho to become the Red Demonic Master back in Jongyuan. Also, with the augmentation of the Kai of Asura, the user's brain achieves an enhanced performance, making it able to concentrate far better than normal, to the point that the user has a faster perception of time. Jinho uses the Kai of Asura and says he'll finish the test in 5 minutes, but after the test ends, Jinho thinks it is an experience he doesn't want to go through again. Seeing other kids cry and worry about their tests, Jinho is relieved that he doesn't have to do this for another year. Jinho, while going back home, wonders how his friends did and thinks since it is all over, he should call Park Yu-min and hang out together. While riding his bike, Jinho suddenly notices someone in an alley across the road, but in an instant, that person disappears. After that, Jinho goes to a park where that guy is sitting on a bench, and after going near him, Jinho asks what he wants. Jinho says that, as he is done with his schoolwork, he'll deal with him now, but that guy asks what he is talking about. Jinho says that guy is going to pretend now, so when he tries to kick him, that guy avoiding the attack moves behind Jinho in an instant, and his cap flies in the air. The guy asks if Jinho kicks people the first time he sees them and calls him an arrogant brat. Jinho catches his hat and, with a smile, says it's not the first time they are meeting because he knows that guy has been tailing him for the past few days. The guy says it looks like Jinho is more capable than he expected, but Jinho asks why he is following him. The guy says Jinho already knows his apprentice, and Jinho remembers he is talking about the guy from back then. Jinho throws the hat towards the guy and says he doesn't remember hurting the apprentice. Jinho asks if that guy is here to retaliate, to which that guy replies it is the opposite and says he followed Jinho to learn about him. The guy, while wearing his hat, says that despite having abilities like them, Jinho seems to pretend to live a normal life. Suddenly, the guy offers Jinho to join them, but Jinho asks who they are. The guy replies that they are an organization that controls the world from the shadows and that there are people with remarkable abilities who are hiding from the world. The guy says humans have ostracized those people, calling them witches and prophets, depending on the era. The guy asks if Jinho doesn't think it's wrong and says they want to build a world with the right order, a world where the capable stand on top. Furthermore, the guy asks if Jinho doesn't think this world is wrong, but Jinho sighs and calls it some lame rubbish. Jinho asks if all they want to do is take over the world by force. It is an anachronistic idea. Jinho says it is not such a neat idea as they think it is because the only things waiting at the end of that are bloody hands and lonely death. After saying this, Jinho walks away and tells that guy to go. Jinho says he won't bother them if they don't bother him. The guy says that if Jinho refuses, then it means he might become an enemy that could collide with them in the future, so he draws his sword. Suddenly, the whole atmosphere changes and Jinho furiously asks if he can just draw his sword. The guy gets terrified because he can't move and wonders if he is overwhelmed by fear. Jinho furiously looks towards that guy while saying he doesn't like saying things twice and tells him to leave. Jinho warns that guy to tell his people not to wander near him again because if they show up again, he'll make them experience a living hell. Simultaneously, that guy falls, and trembling with fear, he says he never knew there was someone this powerful. The guy leaves the sword, and while saying Jinho is very strong, that guy suddenly disappears into the air. Suddenly, someone asks how many times Jinho experienced it to become this powerful and asks if he lived a dozen or 100 lives. When that voice calls Jinho a returner, Jinho gets startled, and that voice tells Jinho not to tell him that he thought he was the only one who came back through time. A few days later, the test results came out, and the teacher said he knew they were eager to know, so he started announcing the results. First, the teacher announces that Injayu failed, so Jinho tells Injayu not to worry because it's just one more year and makes fun that Injayu didn't practice well, but Injayu sighs and tells him to shut up. Meanwhile, the teacher tells Jinho that he is in no position to laugh and asks if he has a condition problem on the CSAT day. The teacher asks why Jinho got 3 questions wrong and tells him to do better next time, but Jinho is glad he is not doing it again. Simultaneously, everyone is shocked to know Jinho got only 3 wrong, and they think it's incredible because he wasn't that good last time. When Jinho arrogantly says he might have a problem with his condition because 3 mistakes are too many, everyone gets furious, and they start teasing him, saying they'll bury him alive. Meanwhile, Sayan says she can't believe she did worse than a guy like him, but Park says he knows she is happy that they are going to the same university as her. It's been a week since the CSAT and the day the mysterious man showed up, and there were no more signs of people observing Gang Jinho. A group of returners, people who earned a second chance just like Gang Jinho, exist out there, and this was something Gang Jinho didn't predict. This shocking fact made him wonder if they might be the people who could best understand him, but contacting them means the destruction of his current life, so he tells himself not to falter. At the dinner table, Jinho's father says that since Jinho also did great with the CSAT grades, they should go on a family trip together over the weekend. Jinho's mother and sister get excited because it's been a while since they went on a family trip together, but suddenly, Jinho yells they cannot go on that day. The weekend arrives, Gang requests Jinho to let him go to work, and his sister tells him to get out of the way because she needs to meet her friends, but Jinho is sitting in front of the door. Jinho says the cafe can stay closed today, and his sister can meet her friend another day because they should spend time together as a family at home. Suddenly, Jinho's sister furiously attacks him, asking what's wrong because he canceled the trip, and now he is doing this, but Jinho covers her face with her hood and says she can go wherever she wants to start tomorrow. Jinho requests them to bear with him, but she furiously asks what he is doing. Jinho is worried and thinks he cannot let anyone out today because it's the 1st of December. Today was the turning point of his previous life, and it was the day his family had a car accident during a family trip. Jinho remembers it's the day he lost his legs and his whole family. Jinho knows they are living in a completely different environment now, but after hearing the words family trip from his father, he cannot let his guard down. While his family wonders if something is wrong with him, Jinho apologizes to them but says he just needs all of them to listen to him for today. The day passes, and at night, when everyone is having sound sleep, the clock hits 12 at night, and Jinho feels relieved that it's over. Jinho is thankful that nothing happened and he didn't lose his family. Jinho thinks he'll have a different destiny and a life he doesn't know, but he is happy that it'll be interesting. The next day, Jinho visits Cho, and Cho says Jinho's CSAT grades are good and all, but he doesn't understand why Jinho looks so worried. Jinho replies that he has a problem and thinks starting fresh is good, but he never thought about what he wants to do in the future. Jinho says Park Yoo-min wanted to become a pro gamer, and his sister had a dream of becoming an idol, but he had no idea what he wanted to do with his life. Meanwhile, Cho thinks that moments like these make Jinho look like an ordinary high schooler and asks if he is worried about what he wants to do in the future. Cho says Jinho still has his whole life ahead of him, and it wouldn't hurt to take some time to think about it, but Jinho says he cannot have a life without a plan. Cho immediately thinks that moments like this make him believe Jinho is not an ordinary person. Cho says Jinho has been focusing and stressing a lot on the CSAT recently, so he needs some time off because it's tense times like these that make people easily anxious and worried. Cho suggests that Jinho should go on a trip, but Jinho asks what he means. Cho says experiencing a lot of things in different places often makes a person realize that his worries are nothing major, and since Jinho doesn't have any problems academically and financially at the moment, he should travel somewhere outside the country. Jinho thinks it's true that he has never had his own time since he came back to this world, and there is also a place he would like to visit. Jinho agrees that traveling is a nice idea, so Cho excitedly suggests he visit Thailand because he visited it last time, but Jinho says there is a place he likes to visit. Cho tells Jinho to choose a place and says they'll help him with ticketing and guiding, so Jinho replies he wants to go to China. After some while, Jinho visits Park's orphanage and deals with the kids who are picky with their food. Jinho says winning like they did to Park is not going to work on him, so he tells them to stand straight and listen to the grown-ups until they can stand on their own feet. The kids get scared and immediately reply with okay, which impresses Park, and he says it's amazing how kids listen to Jinho, but Seon asks how the hell it looks like they are listening to Jinho. Jinho tells the kids to go to the bathroom, but suddenly, Seon smacks his head and asks if he is a drill sergeant. Seon politely tells the kids to come with her. She'll help them wash their face, so the kids happily go with her. Seeing this, Jinho says it seems like she is particularly harsh against him, and when he wonders why it is like this, Park replies she does this because it's Jinho, and he should figure out that part himself. Suddenly, Jinho realizes they are getting late because In-jae and the other guys are waiting for them, so he says they should clean up and go. After some time, they all go outside to have drinks because they are adults now, and Seon says she always wanted to go drink the moment she became an adult. They decided to have fun hole for today as they are all going their separate ways, and they cannot believe they are graduating. However, when Jinho says In-jae is going through another tough year, In-jae yells at him to shut it down. The others say they can see Jinho is flexing because he is going to Yi Kyung University and ask if he and Seon are becoming college sweethearts or something. Seon blushes, but she immediately says it's nonsense. When she sees Jinho is not reacting, she gets sad and wonders if she is the only one who is so conscious. Suddenly, Park pokes her and tells her that they always know how dense Jinho is, so she should cheer up. Meanwhile, when Jinho is thinking modern alcohol is weak, Seon suddenly calls Jinho, and everyone becomes attentive. Seon says it is her birthday next week, and there is a restaurant she has always wanted to go to, so she asks if he is free next week to go with her there. As Jinho replies that he is not going to be in Korea next week and apologizes, everyone is shocked. Jinho says he forgot to tell them that he is planning a pretty lengthy trip to China, and he probably won't see them for a while. Seon feels embarrassed and disappointed, so he says it would have been great if he told her in advance. Simultaneously, Jinho notices she doesn't seem happy and asks if he did something wrong, so he wishes her a happy birthday, but Seon yells that is not it and calls him a dense idiot. The next day, Jinho visits Chairman Hwang to heal him, and he says the healing process went well. Hwang is glad to hear it and says he heard Jinho is going to China, to which Jinho replies that there is something he needs to find. Hwang says he assumes Jinho is not going to tell the reason even if he asks. Hwang says he knows he can't stop Jinho, but getting in trouble in China is dangerous because anything happening there is going to be outside of their reach. Jinho replies that he is well aware, but Hwang offers him the idea that if he officially joins Yi Kyung, he could ask the cooperating companies to support him as a member of their corporation. However, Jinho apologizes and refuses the offer, which makes Hwang sad, and he calls Jinho a cold boy. Suddenly, when Hwang asks if Jinho can speak Chinese, Jinho replies that he probably doesn't have to worry about that. Jinho realizes it's probably not going to be the same as the one he used in Jongyun, but he thinks he could get good enough if he studies a bit before he leaves. Still, Hwang notices Jinho doesn't seem confident, so he says he can get Jinho a translator, but Jinho says he doesn't feel comfortable traveling with someone unfamiliar. Hwang tells Jinho not to worry about that because it's someone Jinho already knows. A few days later, Jinho is ready to leave, and his mother says she is glad that Hwang has a guide ready for him, but she also advises him to get in trouble. Jinho's mother tells him to be careful and call her when he gets there, but Jinho tells him not to worry. As Jinho goes out, Cho is there to pick him up and ask if he is ready for the trip. Cho jokingly tells Jinho not to say he could not sleep last night because it was his first time going outside the country. Seeing Cho, Jinho thinks it is obvious Hwang will choose him and says he doesn't know Cho knows Chinese. Cho says he knows because he is an elite secretary and says that with his Chinese speaking skills, he'll do his best to give Jinho a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Finally, they head towards the airport, and Cho is happy because it's been a while since he went on a vacation. now that Cho thinks about it. His Chinese character qualification and HSK results were both before he joined the corporation, but he knows the chairman would not let him go if he said he forgot everything. Moreover, Cho realizes that Jinho can also speak some Chinese, so he thinks it'll be fine and he'll enjoy the vacation. After some while, they are on the plane, and Cho is excited because it is his first time experiencing such luxury seats, which are completely different from the budget airlines he always uses. Meanwhile, Jinho says it is his first time on the airplane, too, and the air hostess wonders what these people are. She thinks she was wondering what kind of VIPs they were getting when she heard the first class was booked exclusively, but it turned out to be an immature company worker and a high schooler. Suddenly, the air hostesses realize Jinho looks handsome and wonders if he is a celebrity trainee or something. A few hours later, they land in China, and Cho, in excitement, asks everyone there to greet him for his vacation, but Jinho thinks he seems pretty high. Suddenly, Cho tells Jinho that he scheduled the whole trip, so he should leave everything to him, but Jinho says he is there because he has some business and he is not on vacation. Cho gets shocked and asks what happened to the trip of introspection and relieving stress. Cho whines about what will happen to all his dreams in Macau and Hong Kong, while Jinho thinks he knows this will happen. Jinho thinks the guy is useless, but he agrees to give him some time after his business is over. Cho instantly feels revived, and when Jinho asks if he has a ride ready, to which he replies it's ready. Cho tells Jinho that a person from the Yikai Chinese branch is going to greet them, but Jinho asks if Yikai has a branch in China. Cho says Jinho underestimates Yikai and says it's one of the top 3 conglomerates in Korea, but he says he heard people calling it the top 5. Cho says the chairman would not be happy if he heard this. Suddenly, a man asks them if they are Jinho and Cho Kayumin from the main office and tells them he is Chief Nam Sang Hayek. Hayek says he is from the Yikai Gwangju branch, and Cho says it was nice to meet him. Meanwhile, Hayek notices that Jinho is more handsome than in the pictures, and he knows there are rumors that Jinho is Yikai's heir. Suddenly, Jinho feels like someone is looking at him, and he tries to see that person, but Hayek asks if he is looking for something. Jinho replies he is not looking for something. Hayek asks where he wants to go. Jinho searches a place on his phone and shows Hayek where he wants to go, but Hayek asks what he means by this place and if he wants to go to the mountain range between Nanning and Gwangju. Hayek is worried because this place is not a tourist spot and doesn't have a proper name. Jinho tells him that it was known as the Mountain of 100,000, and it's also known as Mount Tian, the Heavenly Mount. After a while, Hayek is driving them to that place and says they'll get there in a while. Meanwhile, Cho is curious because Jinho doesn't tell him why he wants to go there at all, but when Hayek asks if the two of them eat, Cho excitedly says they should get food before they go. Cho asks if Jinho is with that too. Jinho replies he is fine with it, so Hayek asks if they want Korean or Chinese, to which they reply that they'll war Chinese since they are in China. Hayek says he'll take them to a famous local place, but when they go there, Cho gets disappointed by the food and asks if this place is really famous. Hayek says, as Cho can see, it's really famous among locals, but he says it doesn't fit Cho's palate, just like he expected. Hayek says Cho would probably be disappointed if he expected a premium version of sweet and sour pork or kung pao chicken like the ones they see in Korea. Hayek says the mainland recipes are usually full of spices and use a lot of oil, so they should think of it as a difference of preference between China and Korea. Hayek says it is like how Chinese people usually don't like the taste of sesame leaves, so Cho asks why he brought them here if he knew that. When Hayek, with an evil smile, replies Cho has no idea how long it took him to get used to this place and says it's only fair for their precious guests from the Korean main branch to experience it themselves. Cho gets terrified. Suddenly, Hayek says it looks like Jinho doesn't have a problem, to which Jinho replies that he tries not to make leftovers. Jinho remembers the food back in Zhongyuan was usually steamed and light, so he realizes the cuisine has also changed a lot with time. As Cho says, he has bad feelings about this trip, but suddenly, a man comes flying and falls on their table. Jinho continues eating from his plate and sees some guys asking that man that how dare he eat at such a place with so much debt and ask if he didn't learn enough from them. The guy apologizes, but suddenly, one of the guys who is beating that person notices that Jinho is a tourist. That guy pats Jinho's head and warns him, saying this is no place for the outsiders to wander. Cho gets worried, but those guys take that person and leave. Cho asks Hayek what that was, to which Hayek replies that they are triad and that it looks like there was some trouble over a debt problem. Hayek says people like those do show up from time to time in local restaurants, and it looks like they had some bad luck today. Hayek apologizes to them, and Cho says they should go somewhere else because this place seems dangerous, but suddenly, Jinho gets up from his chair. Cho asks what Jinho is trying to do, but Jinho calls the guy who is dragging that person outside. The guy immediately stops and furiously looks back, while his men ask Jinho if he didn't hear what the boss said, and they think he doesn't understand because he is a foreigner. They try to tell Jinho to leave, and one of them says he'll use the good old body language to make him understand. The guy points at Jinho's head and asks if he wants to die, but Jinho grabs his finger, which makes Cho think that he end up getting in trouble, and Jinho breaks that guy's finger. Meanwhile, the guy who has debt takes the opportunity to run from there, and Jinho says he wasn't planning to get into trouble, but hopes they are ready. The triad guy furiously says that if Jinho knows how to speak Chinese, then he probably knows who the triad is, and that he is going to pay to mess with them. However, Jinho says it looks like there are always people who think they can use their organization's name to get away with anything, and says they must be useless without the name of triad. The triad guys are confused because Jinho is speaking Korean, and Cho reminds Jinho that he needs to speak Chinese. Jinho says he just naturally spoke in Korean, but Hayek is worried, wondering why Jinho is picking up a fight with triad and what Jinho is thinking. Hayek is worried that Jinho might get killed, and while Jinho thinks he thought he would adapt when he gets here, the triad guy tries to punch him. Cho and Hayek tell Jinho to watch out. Suddenly, Jinho lands a fierce punch on that guy's face, making him fall away, which shocks everyone. Jinho wonders why he feels refreshed as if he has quenched his thirst. Meanwhile, Hayek asks Jinho what heal he is trying to do and tells him these guys are triad, so they are going to come after them no matter where they go. Hearing this, Jinho says he'll make sure he puts them in a state where they won't even dare think about retaliation, but Hayek tries to stop him and says he is telling him not to make things worse. Suddenly, Cho notices one of the triad guys is missing, and they get terrified to see that guy brought their people. While dragging the guy whom Jinho punched away, one of them asks how dare Jinho mess with them in their territory and says they'll make him regret what he did. They say the foreigners are not going back alive, and Cho, while hiding behind Jinho, asks if they can go back alive. Hayek blames Jinho that it's all Jinho's fault, but Jinho tells both of them to hide somewhere while he takes care of the triad. They immediately hide behind a table, and Cho says Jinho is an adult now, so he expects him to take care of his own problems. Meanwhile, Hayek says they are doomed, and they are all going to die. But Jinho, while walking toward his enemies, thinks this is the first time anyone is trying to kill him in the modern world after that murder incident. Jinho thinks he doesn't get a lot of chances like these, so he decides to enjoy it without using Kai-based arts. Simultaneously, a triad guy comes forward with a blade in his hand and says it looks like Jinho is Korean. Jinho counts there are 20 men, and that guy tells Jinho not to think he is getting out of there alive. Jinho says that the guy has a big mouth and tells him to come at him, so that guy furiously tries to stab Jinho, but Jinho dodges it and punches him away. Jinho challenges the other guys to come at him, so they furiously rush to attack him, but Jinho starts beating them down one by one. Cho and Hayek are shocked, and when Hayek asks Cho who the hell Jinho is, Cho replies that he is not entirely sure either. Cho says it feels like Jinho might actually have a chance of winning, but Hayek wonders what kind of monster he is because he is fighting so many triads alone. On the other hand, Jinho thinks it's entertaining that the enemies are trying to kill him and thinks their levels don't matter because it's the feeling of his restrained desires being unchained. Jinho continues knocking out the men, and they are in shock to see Jinho fight while Jinho thinks deep inside he has been waiting to go back to the martial training. Suddenly, one of the triad whose finger Jinho broke tells their superior Dage that the thing is that a Korean guy picked a fight with them by himself, but it turns out he is incredibly strong. When that guy says this foreigner is taking down so many people on his own, Dage gets excited. On the other hand, the chairman seems worried when Baek-yong asks the chairman if Jinho is worrying him this much, to which the chairman replies it's not really that, but he asks if Jinho arrived in China. Baek replies that the China branch reported that they picked up the two, and Hwang says it is a mystery why Jinho wants to go to China. Baek thinks Hwang is like a grandpa worrying about his own grandson, and when Hwang asks if he took care of things on the Chinese side, he replies that he asked the Yi Kyung friendly companies for cooperation. Baek says there should not be a problem as long as Jinho doesn't get into trouble, like getting into a violent situation in broad daylight. Hwang says Jinho would be out of his mind to do that in a foreign country, and that's why Baek doesn't need to worry about anything. On the contrary, Jinho is beating the triad men when suddenly, Dage, while taking out a gun, yells that it's enough. Dage says it's interesting that this guy is a martial artist, and Jinho gets stunned because the biggest reason why the martial arts disappeared from this world is probably because of the invention of firearms. Jinho realizes that compared to forearms, with their power and ease of use, martial arts don't hold much merit, considering they only show fruit after decades of training. So, eventually, Gang Jinho, who faced the terror of firearms for the first time in his life, instinctually reacted to the situation with everything he had. As Dage shoots, Jinho, with a flashing speed, runs, which makes Dage laugh, and Jinho moves behind the table, where Cho and Hayek are hiding. Cho gets startled and asks when Jinho came there, but Dage says the gun is fake and asks if Jinho really just runs like that. Dage says it is a disappointment, and Jinho feels embarrassed, but suddenly, Dage tells his men that they are pulling out because they are no match for that guy. Everyone gets shocked, and while leaving, Dage tells Jinho that they'll meet again. Cho asks what it is, and Hayek can't believe the triad pulled back in the middle of the fight. However, Jinho thinks he knows that martial arts exist in China, and thinks if so, maybe the thing he is thinking might still exist. Suddenly, Hayek asks if Jinho is listening and asks what the hell he is thinking. Hayek says it is not over just because Triad left for now because they'll retaliate, but Jinho says Hayek doesn't have to worry too much about that. Jinho says, like Hayek saw, he is used to such situations, and if anything happens to Hayek, he'll make sure he avenges him. Suddenly, Jinho gives his credit card to Cho, and tells him to compensate him for all the damaged properties in this restaurant. After that, they head towards their destination, and Hayek wonders how Jinho faces many Triad members by himself and wonders if that is possible for a single human. Hayek thinks he should not talk to Jinho either, and Cho feels he is dead. Cho thinks that enjoying a vacation is totally out of the window, and thinks that if the chairman heard about this incident, a wage cut would be the best case scenario. Cho thinks he needs to keep a good eye on this walking time bomb, Jinho, because he might just lose his job because of him, so he cannot get Jinho in any more trouble. After some while, they reach Mount Tian, and Cho asks if this is really the place Jinho is talking about, to which Jinho replies that it is right. Cho tells Jinho not to say he is going to climb this place, but Jinho replies he is going to do that, and Cho asks if he is serious. Cho says this is not an ordinary mountain, and Jinho should look at the weather because if he gets stranded up there, he'll freeze to death. Jinho tells Cho not to worry because he already knows how tough the road is, so he says he'll go alone. Cho gets furious because he thinks Jinho is going to get in trouble again. Meanwhile, Hayek says it's getting dark, so he asks Cho if they can stay at the hotel for the night and come back tomorrow, but Jinho says he can climb the mountain at night, and it's not a problem. However, Cho replies that he is going with Jinho, but Jinho asks what he means. Cho asks Jinho knows what it means to work for a company, and he says it means he does whatever the company asks him to do. Cho says he has a dream of becoming a successful figure in Yi Kyung, but Hayek wonders what he is. Suddenly, Cho, with great enthusiasm, says he'll follow Jinho no matter where the place is and that they should go to the mountain. Cho says he'll show him that a mere mountain in China is no match for an elite company worker in Korea, but Hayek says he is not going. After some while, Cho has made all the preparations for the hike and takes all the necessary things with him, but he asks Jinho and Hayek what is wrong with their face. Hayek says it looks like Cho has prepared himself overnight, so Cho laughs and says he did because he wants to go back to Korea in one piece. Meanwhile, Jinho is worried and says it would be better if he goes alone, but Cho says he is not going to revoke his words. Simultaneously, Hayek sighed because it looked like he couldn't stop him now, so he told them to let him know when they came back down because he'd then come here to pick them up. While they are leaving, Hayek says he hopes they come back safe and sound, but Cho yells at him to stop making death flags. After that, they go on their way, and a while later, Jinho asks if Cho is tired and if they can take a break, but Cho tells him not to worry. Cho says that, as an elite secretary of Korea, this much hiking is not a problem at all, so Jinho, with a smile, says that if he is sure, then they should keep going for a bit. However, Cho thinks Jinho is making faces like this in front of him now, too, but when he first meets him, Jinho feels really cold. Cho thinks Jinho has changed a lot, and he guesses it means Jinho acknowledges him as one of his people. Cho thinks it's really amazing how different Jinho behaves depending on who he is facing, but that is also what makes Jinho scary. Suddenly, Cho's foot slips, and he is about to fall, but Jinho jumps after him to grab his arm and ask if he is alright. Cho is shocked to see Jinho holding onto the mountain with a single hand, and after they get up, Jinho says it looks like the snow makes the road dangerous. Jinho asks Cho if he is alright. Cho thanks him, but Jinho said Cho must be really startled, so they should take a break. Meanwhile, Cho looks down the mountain and thinks he almost died, but he wonders how Jinho is so calm. Cho wonders if Jinho is really a guy who was a high schooler a few weeks ago, and he understands why the chairman wants Jinho to be nearby so badly. Cho thinks weirdly enough, it feels like everything is possible for Jinho, and as much as he doesn't want to admit it, it feels like he'll be safe as long as he stays with Jinho. After some while, Cho is shocked to know they are not going to the top of the mountain because Jinho says Mount Tian is more like a mountain range composed of a lot of mountains, and it's going to take 3 more days to their destination. Cho, in shock, asks what Jinho means, and Jinho says he told him it would be better for him to come alone. But Cho says Jinho should have said that first. Cho thinks Jinho fooled him because he thought he just needed to bear with this for a day, but he realized he underestimated Jinho. Cho wonders why he complimented this guy and thinks Jinho is a complete disaster. Suddenly, Jinho says it's getting dark, and they should get ready for the night, but Cho misses his mom. On the other hand, the Youngmu group's vice group leader, Lin Feng, is shocked to hear Triad lost, and she asks Dage Liu Kai if they are facing the Sahi party. Dage is an executive in the Youngmu group, and he asks Lin Feng if she'll be pissed if he says it is some tourist boy. Suddenly, Lin Feng throws a vase at Dage, which he catches, and says he thinks she treasures this thing. Lin Feng furiously asks what he told him about treating everything like a joke and asks if he wants to go back to solitary. Dage, while putting the vase back, tells her that the guy was a marshal and their guys were no match for him. Lin Feng asks why the hell those damn marshals exit in this era, but Dage tells her sister to be quiet because someone is outside the door. Lin Feng speaks of the devil, and it's here. He asks the guy outside what he is doing there. Suddenly, the door opens, and the guy wearing a mask says he thought they told Lin Feng that their eyes were everywhere. Lin Feng has a smile on her face, but she thinks that guy is creepy, and that guy warns her not to go after that marshal because they'll take care of him. Lin Feng says their guys were heavily injured by that guy, but that person asks if she is defying the marital union. Lin Feng immediately says she wouldn't dare to do that, to which the man replies that it is good and that it is important for a person to know their place. The guy says they'll take care of that marshal and she should stay out of this, to which Lin Feng replies okay and tells that man to have a safe trip back. As that man leaves, Lin Feng furiously breaks the vase at the door and asks Dage if he knows that boy's position, to which he replies that he went to the district. Dage says that considering that the boy's crew bought hiking equipment, it looks like he is planning to go to the mountain range near Guangzhou. Lin Feng asks how much support Dage needs to get rid of that guy, and he replies that she should just let him borrow something from the warehouse. Also, he asks if Lin Feng thinks he should take skewer and meat ball with him, to which she agrees and tells Dage to kill that guy. On the other hand, Cho and Jinho are sleeping in a cave when suddenly, Jinho gets up and walks outside. After going out, Jinho tells a guy to come out from behind the tree and not make him repeat. The guy comes out and asks if Jinho sensed him, to which Jinho replies how can he not when that guy is full of killing intent. Jinho says he knows he is tailing him since he is back at the airport. That guy says it's impressive that Jinho already knew back then. The guy says Jinho has some keen senses and calls him a young, high-level martial artist from Korea. Suddenly, the guy asks why Jinho seems so excited, to which Jinho replies that he was planning to just keep an eye for a while longer, but yesterday's incident got him pumped up. Jinho, with a fierce look, says he needs that guy to face him, so that guy says if Jinho is planning to attack him no matter what, then there is not much of a choice, and he, Wu Yuan, will teach him a lesson. Wu Yuan makes a stance, and Jinho asks if this is a variation of Xingyi Quan, but Yuan asks what it is. Jinho says it's been a while, so the names must have changed, but Wu Yuan asks what he is talking about. Jinho wonders if this man doesn't know about the returners and thinks maybe they are hidden more secretly in China, or if this man is simply too low ranked to know that fact. Jinho thinks he'll know for sure after he actually fights him, and the guy gets terrified by Jinho's aura. The guy wonders if this odd feeling or pressure is of demonic arts, and suddenly, Cho says they should begin the fight. While Jinho rushes to attack, the guy thinks he didn't know Jinho was a user of vulgar demonic arts, so he thinks if this is the case, he'll kill him before he gets engulfed by the demonic Kai. The guy notices Jinho is fast, but his movements are slow, so he plans to parry his attack and use this demonic practitioner's own momentum to drive an attack in his heart. The guy thinks he'll end this with a single blow, but Jinho already reaches him and, with a decisive punch, knocks that guy down. The guy gets severely injured and says he is sure he parried that attack, so he asks how this is possible. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks he accidentally finished him with a single blow and realizes he got too excited. Jinho sees that the guy's ribs are broken, and he has a problem breathing, so he decides to help him a bit. But that guy asks Jinho how he can retain his sanity after using demonic arts. Jinho wonders if demonic arts have not been passed down properly in this era. Jinho thinks if he is indeed from the past, it makes sense since neither his red flame art nor the blue demon's blue flame art could have been passed down. Jinho says he is going to ask him questions, and he'll not ask them twice, so he should think wisely before his answer. When Jinho asks why he followed him, he replies that he was assigned the job of tailing the marshal that appeared at the airport. When Jinho asks who requested him to do that, he replies that he received the request from a group called Martial Union. Jinho has never heard of it, so he asks what kind of group it is, and that guy replies that it is a group of martial that take care of the things in the shadows. Wu Yuan says they are simply his clients, so he doesn't know much about them, but he has heard that the rulers of the Martial Union are absolute high-level martial artists who have overcome the limits of humans. Jinho asks how he can contact them, to which Yuan replies that he has no means of contacting them because they visit him when they want to. Jinho understands, and when he asks if Yuan is going to follow him again, he replies that he won't, so Jinho says if that is so, then he'll not kill him. However, while leaving, he tells Yuan to keep in mind that he doesn't show mercy twice, and Yuan thanks him. Meanwhile, Jinho is excited that there is a martial union and wonders how good they are. On the other hand, Cho dreams about partying with girls in China, and suddenly, he notices a girl who is shy in his dream. Cho calls the girl to come and party with him, but as she looks up, he sees Chairman H. Wang's face, who says Cho has quite a nerve to play around like this instead of doing his job. Cho feels destroyed to see the chairman there, and he gets terrified to see the other girls turn into Directors Beak and Jinho. Cho screams with terror and wakes up from his sleep, but he realizes it was a dream and says what a nightmare it was. Cho feels his body is cold and his throat is dry, and he can't believe he really spent the night in a place like this. Cho sees Jinho sleeping and doesn't seem to have a problem with this place at all. After some time, they continued their hike, and Cho thought he should have brought enough water because they still had 3 to 4 days to go. However, Jinho asks if he needs water, to which he replies he doesn't need it because Jinho brought it for himself, but Jinho says it's fine because he brought enough water for both of them. Cho is shocked that Jinho's bag is filled with water bottles, and he has been carrying all of that this whole time. Jinho says he brought enough water and salt to make the trip easier and gives some to Cho, so Cho thanks him. Cho is shocked to know that Jinho thinks it's easier to carry this load for 3 days instead of having no water. Simultaneously, when Cho asks what they should eat because he doesn't think his calorie bars are going to last for 3 days, Jinho tells him not to worry about that. Cho says okay, but Jinho's words are making him worry more. After some while, Cho is terrified to see Jinho skinning the prey, and suddenly, blood spills on his face, which terrifies him more. Jinho apologizes and says it's been a while since he skinned something, so he asks Cho to excuse the blood splattering, but Cho yells at him to stop playing like that because he is freaking him out. Cho asks why Jinho killed so many rabbits and asks if he is really going to eat them because he has never had rabbit meat before. Jinho says they cannot hike with an empty stomach for 3 days, so he says Cho should eat well unless he wants to collapse before they get there. Cho is nervous and wonders how the hell Jinho has survival skills like this. He thinks he has heard kids learn a lot from YouTube these days. Cho is petrified that he has to eat these innocent rabbits to survive and apologizes to them. On the other hand, Dage also hikes the mountain with Skewer and Meatball with the help of a local guide. Dage tells the assassins that it's great to have a local guide, but Skewer asks Dage if he doesn't think he is too relaxed. Skewer says he heard the target is a marshal, but Dage asks if the Meatball is also scared. Dage tells them that marshals are still humans, so if they put a bullet in their head, they bite the dust just like everyone else. Dage says that is why he brought them with him, so they should relax and not make mistakes. Suddenly, the kid with the guide points towards the cave where the smoke is coming from, and Skewer checks the ashes. Skewer says it looks like there were 2 people, and they left not long ago, so he asks if they should go after them, but Dage is nervous that they have already found them because he is not mentally prepared yet. Skewer asks if the boss is scared, but Dage yells that they haven't seen how that guy flew and said of course, he is scared because that guy is a total monster. Skewer says they are doomed because the sis is going to kill them, and suddenly, the guide asks if they are planning to keep on going, but he doesn't recommend it. The guide says beyond here is the territory of the mountain spirit, so if they set foot in his territory, the mountain spirit will take their life as punishment. Dage asks if the mountain spirit is the name of a bear or something, and the guide replies he doesn't know because no one comes back alive after meeting the mountain spirit. The guide says every year, outsiders enter there only to find dead bodies, but Dage says if that is true, things might get interesting. On the other hand, after eating the rabbits, Jinho says that now that their stomachs are full, they should start moving again, and Cho agrees. It's day 5 of climbing the mountain. Cho thinks despite the fact that he initially had a problem eating it because of its smell, he has become completely used to rabbit meat to the point that he can eat a whole rabbit without any problem. Cho thinks the only reason he hasn't collapsed yet is because the devil Jinho somehow realizes that Cho is stored, lets him rest, and keeps moving when he feels good enough again. Cho has adapted to rough roads, but he wonders why Jinho is climbing up the mountain. Cho feels like he has already lost all of his feelings because of this place, and at this point, he is hardly surprised by anything. Suddenly, Jinho sees a statue and rushes towards it, but Cho tells him to wait for him. As they reach the end of a cliff, Jinho is disappointed to see there is no one left there, but when he closes his eyes, he can still see everything. Jinho can see the numerous buildings filling that place, the vision of the past, and the people he lived alongside. Jinho knows that he decided to forget the past and love a wholesome life this time, but he cannot understand why his heart feels so bothered. Suddenly, Jinho remembers something and starts sliding down the cliff, while Cho yells his name with worry. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks about why he forgets about that thing and thinks it must be around here, the forbidden territory that is only allowed to the leader of the demonic cult and the entrance of the cave of the heavenly demon. After Jinho lands on the ground, he finds the entrance of the cave of the heavenly demon, and it is just like how he remembers it. Jinho wonders if this means that this world and the Zhongyuan he used to live in are the same world. Suddenly, Cho also falls near there, which startles Jinho, and Cho yells at him not to go off by himself because if Jinho leaves him alone, he'll be left stranded. Jinho apologizes and helps Cho get up, but suddenly, a mysterious old man appears and yells that there is no place for beings like them. Cho feels immense pain in his ears to hear this voice, and that old man warns them to go back, and then he'll spare their lives. Cho, while closing his ears, wonders who lives here and asks what the hell he is yelling in Chinese. Cho says it suddenly feels cold, and the air feels heavy, so the old man tells them to learn now, or they'll face their death. The old calls them outsiders and say it's his final warning, but Cho tells Jinho that this looks like some crazy old man. However, Jinho tells Cho to stay behind him, and the old man sees they chose to stay, so he says he'll make them pay for entering the forbidden domain. Meanwhile, Jinho wonders why he senses demonic Kai from the man, and on top of that, it's Blue Demon's blue flame art. The old man rushes to hit Jinho, while Jinho thinks if the two worlds are truly the same place, the blue demon should have died in the past, so he wonders how was the blue flame art passed down. Jinho thinks he needs to think about this later because he has to take this man down first, so he immediately blocks that man's punch with his fist and pushes him away. Jinho asks why the old man pulled his punch in the middle of the attack, to which he replies that he heard the demonic master of the past use the Kai of Asura, which overwhelmed all existing martial arts of the cult. The old man says that, finally, the heir of the demonic master has arrived, and that he has waited a long time for him, but Jinho is shocked. The old man, while sobbing, bows to Jinho and chants, "Long live the demonic master." A while ago, Dage was watching all this from afar and wondered if that caveman-looking guy was the mountain spirit. Dage thinks it is a great idea to stalk them for a while and wonders who will win from between the martial versus mountain spirit. Simultaneously, Skewer thinks that the martial and the mountain spirit will probably fight each other, and if the martial gets hurt or killed, they'll take that chance. Skewer wonders how Dage thought of this plan the moment he heard about the mountain spirit, but he knows he couldn't count on Dage. Meanwhile, Dage says it's going to be a blast to see this fight from first class and sees the fight is about to start. Dage saw how the mountain spirit flew afar after getting punched by Jinho and thought that the martial was not too shabby. Dage saw the mountain spirit crying and wondered if he was crying because he got punched. As the old man bows, Dage gets shocked to see a forfeit after one blow and says he expected more guts than that from the mountain spirit. Meanwhile, Cho is hiding behind a tree and wonders how the hell Jinho is having explosions in a fistfight. Cho wonders why that guy is crying and bowing and what the hell is happening between them. Meanwhile, Jinho wonders what that man means by demonic master and says the old man almost sounds like he was expecting him. While bowing, the old man says it's correct. He says he is Chang Min, a descendant of the blue sect of the demonic cult. Chang Min says for generations, his family was assigned to protect the cave of the heavenly demon and keep away outsiders. Jinho is surprised that there are descendants of the demonic cult in the modern world and thinks the reason why he was able to sense the blue flame art slightly was that Chang Min was a descendant of the blue sect. Jinho says the demonic cult doesn't exist anymore, so he asks why Changmin is protecting the cave of the heavenly demon, to which Changmin replies it is because he believes in the legend of the cult that has been passed down. Jinho asks what he means by legend, to which he replies there was a legend that one day, the demonic master would descend on this land. Changmin says his family continued to believe in this legend and waited for the demonic master at this place. Jinho wonders if someone knew he was going to come here, but he thinks that cannot be true and thinks it's probably a story made by the falling demonic cult to retain later generations. However, Changmin says the legend is true because he finally has a chance to beg the demonic master for forgiveness. Changmin says he is aware that the blue demon and the blue sect have committed an unforgettable sin to the cult. Changmin says this role was their family's atonement against the cult, and he requests a punishment upon the demonic master to atone for their sin. Changmin requests Jinho to take his life with his own hands, but Jinho says it's enough and he should stand up. Jinho says if the descendants are responsible for their ancestors' sins, no man in this world shall be free from sin. Jinho says the past is the past, and the present is the present, and since Changmin has been protecting this place for ages with the purpose of apologizing, he no longer has the intention to accuse him. Therefore, Jinho says he'll absolve Changmin's family of their sins, and as he has done well, he is free now. Changmin gets emotional and starts crying. Suddenly, when Cho comes out and hesitantly calls Jinho, Jinho realizes he accidentally used martial arts in front of Cho, and now there is no way Cho will think he is an ordinary high schooler. Surprisingly, Cho tells Jinho not to worry because doing things like that doesn't even surprise him anymore. He says he was just surprised that Jinho suddenly started fighting. Jinho wonders how Cho read his mind, but when Cho asks what Jinho was talking about with this old man because he couldn't understand Chinese, Jinho says he thought Cho was supposed to know Chinese. Cho says he didn't know Jinho could actually make a person cry with his words and says he must have used some dirty words, but Jinho says it's not what he thinks. Jinho says it turns out he kind of knows this person. Cho asks how he knows a random person in the mountains in China. After that, Changmin takes them to his home and says it must have been a hard path for them to come this far, so he gives them some tea. Changmin says it's been a very long time since he had visitors, but Cho and Jinho are shocked to see his change of appearance. Changmin is wearing shades and modern clothes, which makes him unrecognizable. He says that ever since people started calling him a mountain spirit, he had gotten a pair of these clothes. Changmin tells them to think of it as his mountain uniform, and Jinho realizes Changmin is enjoying this life. Suddenly, the handle of Cho's cup breaks, so Changmin apologizes and says it looks like being 40 years old took a toll on the cup. Chang says he'll get him another cup, but Jinho asks how long Zicheng has been protecting this place. When Chang replies that it must have been about 150 years, Jinho spits the tea in shock, and Cho yells at what Jinho is doing. Jinho asks how old Chang is, and he replies that he has turned 180 years old. When Chang asks if something is wrong, Jinho pretends it's nothing, but he is embarrassed because his combined age from all his life is 70 years. Suddenly, Jinho says he'll go take a look at the cave of the heavenly demon, but Cho gets worried about where he is going. Jinho says there is some business he needs to take care of, but Cho says he'll not leave him here because he doesn't want to stay with Changmin. Jinho tells Cho not to worry because Chang is a good man, but Cho insists he takes him along. Jinho says he has to go there alone and he'll be back soon, so he leaves. Meanwhile, Chang asks in Chinese if Cho would like to have another cup. Cho nervously replies with the words, Ziu, Ziu. On the other hand, Jinho goes outside the cave, and he can hear the thing he was looking for calling him, so he enters it. After some time, Cho thinks he doesn't know how many cups of tea he has, and it's awkward because the only thing he can do is keep drinking. Looking at Chang, Cho wonders how he is supposed to deal with this guy with a straight face. Suddenly, Chang says it looks like Cho is enjoying the tea and asks if he would like another cup, to which Cho replies with a nod. While Cho is wondering how he asks where a bathroom is in Chinese, Chang is making tea while standing in front of the window. Meanwhile, Skewer is aiming at Chang with a gun, and as Dage says they shall begin the hunt, Skewer shoots Chang in the shoulder, and Cho gets terrified to see this scene. Chang falls to the ground, and Dage is happy that it's a bullseye shot. A while ago, when Chang brought Cho and Jinho to his cabin, Dage thought it was boring. Skewer asked what they should do and asked if those two cooperating made their decision difficult, but Dage said it didn't matter because the match of the century goes down the gutter. Skewer told Dage to be a bit more serious, and Meatball also showed a negative sign, so, looking at the situation, Dage said the mountain spirit was probably weaker than the marshal, and the other guy with the marshal was probably just a normal guy. Dage said it doesn't matter how strong the marshal is, and if they don't have a chance to win, they just make leverage. Dage tells Skewer that his first shot is not about killing anyone because his goal is to make a burden for Marshall by giving him a wounded old man and some useless guy. Dage said the Meatball would go in and bring those two guys because two hostages would give them an advantage. After Chang is shot, Cho hides under the table and asks if he is okay, but suddenly, he sees someone coming inside. Cho thinks it's Jinho, so he immediately comes out and tells him to get down because it's dangerous, but gets terrified to see it's someone else. Cho asks Meatball who he is and begs him not to kill him, but Meatball is about to grab him when Chang gets up. While Cho screams with fear, Chang throws Meatball out with a single hand, but he feels unwell, so he tells Cho to run. Suddenly, Meatball gets up, and as he goes inside again, he sees there is no one there because Cho ran away carrying Chang on his back. On the other hand, Jinho goes inside a door in the cave. It's only been a few years since he last came here, but it feels like it's been so long. Jinho feels the cave of the heavenly demon has not changed even after centuries and sees another door behind, which is the forbidden area. Jinho remembers it as the territory that is only allowed to the leader, the one who performed the Kai of Asura. Jinho thinks it looks like he can't enter it now with his body's incomplete performance of the Kai of Asura, but what bothers him now is another room there. Jinho went inside that room and was glad to see the swords there. Jinho says he knew it was their voice that was calling him so desperately and that they were finding him, too, the Red House and Blue House swords. Jinho grabs the swords and is happy that Red House welcomes him, but holding Blue House, he remembers his past life when he got stabbed by the Blue Demon Master. Jinho thinks they are all past events now and that there is no good in lingering in the past, so he decides to leave with the swords, but he wonders who contained these two swords. Jinho thinks the legend of the demonic master's descent and the Red House and Blue House being stored in this cave feels odd. On the other hand, Cho puts a bandage on Chang's wound and says this should stop the blood. Cho wonders who was that guy and what he wants from them. Cho is worried because there has only been a bunch of confusing events ever since they came to China. Cho starts crying because he just wants a vacation, and instead of that, he gets a murderer chasing after him and a man dying in front of him. Cho prayed that Jinho would hurry here, but suddenly, Meatball arrived there. Cho immediately picks up a piece of wood and wonders if the killer followed them all the way here. Cho warns him not to get close, or he'll have to hurt him, but Meatball tries to get close to him. Suddenly, Cho stabs him with that wood, but he gets terrified that he stabbed a person. However, Meatball is fine, and he slaps Cho down, which makes him unconscious. Meatball wears an earpiece and reports to Dage about the situation while Dage is sitting in the cabin. Meanwhile, Jinho arrives there, and Dage says it's been a while, so he asks if Jinho remembers him. Dage says he has been waiting for him for so long, and Jinho remembers it's the man he met in the restaurant. When Jinho asks where are the other two, Dage, while pointing toward Chang's blood on the floor, says who knows, they could be anywhere. Jinho gets furious to see the blood, but Dage immediately says he is just kidding and tells Jinho not to be so serious. Dage says they are with his men, and if Jinho wants them to be alive, he'll have to ask him to follow his words. Dage says if Jinho attacks him, they'll die, and if he runs away, they'll also die. When Jinho asks what he wants, Dage says they'll start with the swords and that he doesn't like dangerous stuff. Jinho immediately throws the swords toward Dage, and Dage says these are cool, but Jinho wonders how he tracked them there because he didn't see anyone on the way there. Jinho wonders if Dage deliberately tracks them from a distance so he cannot feel his presence and thinks that if this man is used to dealing with marshals, it makes sense that Chang is lost. While Dage is posing with words, Jinho wonders what he should do and thinks he has to find an opportunity to save the two and move them to safety. Suddenly, Dage notices Jinho is thinking something and asks if he is thinking of a way out of there. Dage says it's of no use because he didn't come here without his back covered, and as he shoots a deer near them with his finger, Skewer shoots from afar. Jinho was startled to see the deer actually got shot because he didn't sense any killing intent at all. Dage says it's his superpower, but he immediately says he is kidding because he has a sniper covering him. Meanwhile, Skewer can't believe Dage loves to play around like this. Dage tells Jinho not to be a smart guy because he still has a lot up his sleeve, but Jinho thinks there are two hostages he needs to save, while there is a sniper he cannot sense, and this guy is hard to deal with for some reason. Jinho wonders what to do, but he sighs and agrees to do what Dage says. Instead, he asks Dage to show if Cho and Chang are safe or else he'll hesitate to abandon them. Dage agrees and tells Meatball to bring the two, so he brings them there. Jinho is shocked to see them unconscious, but Dage says they are alive. Dage tells Jinho to keep his promise so the two of them can go alive, and while Jinho is looking at them, Dage takes out his gun, saying since Jinho might change his mind, he'll help him with his determination to keep his promise and make him crippled for a while. Dage tells Jinho that they'll start with his leg, but suddenly, Dage notices something is wrong with Meatball. Dage can see Meatball is terrified and says he didn't know he could make a face like this, but suddenly Dage also gets terrified because he can't move and feels the air seems heavy. Dage asks Jinho if he is going to break the deal and if he doesn't care about his friends, but Jinho replies that it's enough and furiously says it's no deal if it doesn't benefit him. Jinho says he can protect those two as long as they are within his sight, and when Dage tries to shoot him, Jinho immediately moves behind Dage because he needs to be careful of the sniper. Jinho plans to take Dage down, use him as a shield, and exchange him with Chang and Cho. Jinho knows the moment he gets them to safety, it's all over, but he thinks he'll come back and pay back everything. Jinho thinks he'll torture them with such pain that they would rather ask for death. But suddenly, Dage grins and disappears in front of him. Dage immediately puts a gun on Jinho's head from the side and says the marshal let his guard down because he assumed he was much more powerful. Dage says the marshal is strong, and there would be no chance in hell for him to win if he fought him normally, but he says the winner always hides their cards until the very last moment. Dage says he also uses martial arts, and Jinho loses because he failed to predict that fact. Suddenly, Dage shoots down Jinho, and after that, he takes a picture of the three of them, Cho, Chang, and Jinho. Dage says he'll name it a human triangle, and is happy that another job is wrapped up. Dage says Meatball did a great job, but he asks how long he is going to keep that piece of wood on him. Meatball acts unaware, and Dage wonders how he did not notice that. Meatball takes out that wooden piece from his body, and Dage sees it was not stabbed that deep, so he tells them to clean up and go. Dage tells Meatball to take care of the remaining two, so he tries to touch Chang, but he immediately breaks Meatball's arm and asks how dare he confront the demonic master. Dage says he thought it was a dying old man, but he is more alive than he thought. He asks if he used the martial thing called Kai breathing. Chang is devastated to see Jinho dead, but Dage says he doesn't want him to bother them, so he tells Meatball to finish this. Chang furiously says they won't get away with this, but Meatball hits him down with his broken arm. Meanwhile, Jinho's past self, Red Demonic Master, is standing near his current body and asks why he didn't try to kill them. The Red Demonic Master calls Jinho pathetic and tells Jinho not to tell him that he thinks he cannot go back once he kills someone and goes back to being the Red Demonic Master. The Red Demonic Master asks if Jinho is afraid of abandoning his current life and if he makes something precious in life. The Red Demonic Master says Jinho is too weak and he has become weaker ever since he came back to his era. The Red Demonic Master tells Jinho to kill those who get in his way and abandon those who hinder him. The Red Demonic Master says being powerful will excuse him from anything and grant him everything and says Jinho should have gone back instead of biting the dust like that. The Red Demonic Master tells Jinho to go back to him when he was the Red Demon, but a voice from Jinho's body tells him to get lost. The Red Demon says Jinho's stubbornness is futile, and that Jinho has already become close to him ever since he came to this place. The Red Demon says Jinho will eventually return to his form, no matter how much he struggles. Jinho replies he'll resist, but the Red Demon says he cannot because destiny will not allow it. Jinho says he'll screw destiny and will struggle with all his might, but the Red Demon asks if Jinho really thinks that'll let him obtain the life he wants. Jinho replies that he'll see the end of his choice even if it means he'll regret it again. Suddenly, Jinho closes his fist, and Red Demon smirks to see his stubbornness. He says that Jinho is still him, even on the brink of death. The Red Demon, while leaving, tells Jinho to struggle as much as he wants and says he'll see what the end of it is. Meanwhile, a voice inside Jinho asks him how much longer he is going to lay like that and tells him not to be a crybaby with a scratch on his head. Simultaneously, when Meatball is choking Chang, Jinho gets up, and Meatball throws away Chang after seeing Jinho. Suddenly, Jinho punches Meatball away, and Dage is stunned with terror because he himself shot Jinho. Jinho asks Chang if he is okay, but Chang cries, so Jinho tells him not to talk because he already knows everything. Dage thinks Jinho is a monster because he grazed the bullet at that distance, so he tells Skewer not to wait a moment and shoot. Skewer is ready to shoot, but Jinho tells Dage to wait because he'll be back in a moment, and with a blast, he disappears along with Chang and Cho. Jinho is transported inside the cave with them, and is glad their wounds are not fatal. After that, Jinho tears his shirt to tie his wounded eye, and says now he'll begin the hunt. On the other hand, Dage checks if Meatball is okay but notices he is knocked out. Meanwhile, Skewer asks if the boss is okay. Dage replies he is fine, but it looks like they lost. Dage says Jinho's capability is way off the charts, and he is nothing like the masters they have faced before. Skewer asks what they should do now, but Dage asks what kind of stupid question it is and says they'll run. They instantly run to save their lives, and Dage is carrying Meatball on his back. Suddenly, Skewer asks if the boss is a marshal, to which Dage replies that Skewer should not worry about it because he learned some of it from a person he knew when he was young. When Skewer asks why Dage didn't tell them until now, Dage replies that it's something he would rather not bring up and says they should always hide their ace until the end. While running, Skewer asks if Liu Feng also does not know about this. Dage says they know how much she hates marshals. Skewer apologizes to Dage and says this wouldn't have happened if he didn't hinder him, but Dage says if Skewer is talking about how he can't pull the trigger on his own, then he should stop. Dage says he told him it is not a flaw, it's a talent, and says marshals are very keen on sensing killing intent, so in Skewer's case, he cannot shoot with his own will, but he doesn't emit any killing intent either. Dage says that is why Skewer is perfect when fighting marshals and says Meatball's analgesia is also a talent in a similar sense. Dage says Skewer just needs to shoot whenever he gives him the signal, as always, and they'll get that marshal next time. Skewer agrees, but suddenly, Dage notices Jinho's killer's intent, and Skewer asks him what's wrong. Dage says that the monster is not even trying to hide his hostility, and when Skewer asks if that guy is coming, Dage says at this rate, they'll encounter him any second, so he says he'll buy some time. Dage tells Skewer to go because they cannot fight the thing face on, and they'll end up being wiped out. Dage says Skewer can't buy time, and Meatball is unconscious, so the right move is for him to buy some time so Skewer can get out of there. Dage tells Skewer not to make him repeat himself. Skewer knows this is the right decision, so Skewer tells Dage to stay safe and run. Dage puts Meatball down, and suddenly, he sees Jinho is there. Dage, while apologizing, takes out Jinho's swords and asks if he is here for the swords he accidentally took. Dage says this happens sometimes and asks if he will return the swords and if Jinho will let them go. Jinho ignores Dage and asks why he is ignoring him when he is saying he'll return the swords, but Jinho walks towards Meatball. Dage asks where he is going and gets terrified to wonder if he is going to hurt Meatball. Suddenly, Jinho kicks Meatball with great force, and Dage is terrified because it looks like this boy is a completely different man. Meanwhile, Jinho tells Dage that one is down, so he is the next. Jinho tries to punch Dage, but he dodges it, and Jinho is shocked that he dodged his attack again. Dage says that it is dangerous, but Jinho says those moves are unfamiliar and asks where Dage learned them from. Dage says it seems he has no choice but to fight, and that he learned these moves from a kung fu class. Meanwhile, Skewer has not left, and he aims at Jinho, thinking he cannot leave the boss and Meatball like this, but wonders if he can actually pull the trigger without the boss's command. Skewer remembers Dage saved his life in the past, and if he hadn't saved him that day, Meatball, and he would have been tortured to death by the other gang. Skewer thinks the one who taught him, a traumatized sniper, a new way was also Dage, so he thinks it's his turn to save Dage. While Skewer thinks he can kill that guy, Jinho feels his killer instinct, and he dodges the bullet. Dage calls Skewer an idiot and notices Jinho has disappeared from there. On the other hand, Skewer is happy that he overcame his trauma and pulled the trigger himself. Skewer thinks he won't hinder Dage anymore and tries to find Jinho, but all he sees is smoke. While Skewer is thinking he'll shoot that guy again, Jinho is standing behind him with a sword in his hand. In a while, when Jinho goes where Dage is, Dage starts laughing in shock to see Jinho's sword covered in blood because he understands Skewer is dead. Jinho says this makes it too, and Dage furiously says they should see the end of this now. Back in Korea, the orphanage kids were impressed because Saeun made them huge snowmen. Saeun says she told them it's going to be cool, and the kids praise her for being so cool, which makes her blush. Suddenly, Park tells the kids to come in because the dinner is ready and says they are going to catch a cold. Park tells Saeun to come in, too, because she must be exhausted from keeping up with the kids. Saeun replies with an okay, but before going in, she looks at the snowman with a pleasant smile, because she made it look similar to Jinho and calls it a dummy. On the other hand, Dage starts shooting at Jinho, but Jinho moves towards him while dodging the bullets. Dage realizes this monster is predicting the trajectories and dodging the bullets like it is nothing. Dage knew he had to fight him in close quarters eventually, so he took out a dagger to stab him, but Jinho had already gotten close to him and cut down his dagger. Dage gets shocked and immediately jumps back, thinking his Kai is no match for Jinho at all. Dage thinks the only way he can hurt this monster is with a gun, and as he realizes he can keep up with his speed, he thinks he just needs to find a chance to put a bullet in his head. Dage, while avoiding the stabs, suddenly shoots Jinho, but Jinho dodges it, and Dage is shocked to see Jinho smiling. Dage thinks this guy is mad, but it seems he is enjoying the situation, and he realizes that Jinho is a bigger freak than he thought. Suddenly, Jinho tries to stab Dage, but a bomb falls from Dage's jacket, and Jinho gets startled. Dage immediately points a gun at his head and shoots, while telling him not to worry because the pin is intact. However, Jinho immediately bends to dodge the bullet, and as Dage tries to kick him, Jinho moves away. Dage says that it was close, and looking at the inside pockets of his jacket, he says he really likes it as it has bombs and some medicine in it. Dage agrees that he is no match for Jinho, but he says that all things considered, he is not going down without landing a scratch on him. Dage injects himself with a medicine that increases his strength, and he, with instant movements, fires Jinho from all directions. While the bullets are about to hit Jinho, he thinks he knows he is weaker than back then, but it is a pity because he has to give his best against someone this weak. Jinho thinks he should train himself when he gets back to Korea. And with instant movements, he cuts down all the bullets. Meanwhile, Dage is Shim, and Jinho immediately attacks Dage with multiple stabs. Dage still doesn't want to accept his defeat, so Jinho asks why he is still trying after being injured. Jinho says the only decent part of Dage's martial arts is his footwork, and the rest is a mess, so he asks where he learned it from. Dage, in a trembling voice, asks how many times he has to tell that he learned it from a kung fu class nearby and tries to punch Jinho, but Jinho cuts down his arm. Jinho says he is done with this and asks what he ever did to get such a grudge from him. He also asks Dage why he is fighting him so desperately. Dage is bleeding badly, so Jinho says he is a total wreck and he is going to get himself killed. Suddenly, Dage, with a laugh, says they have survived by ripping apart anything that got in their way because this is the only way of living that was allowed to them. Dage says he is not afraid of dying because he has been broken inside this whole time. Jinho thinks it is troublesome how this guy is not losing his will to fight, even after getting his arm cut off, and thinks it must be the effect of the drug he used. Jinho says whatever he is saying is none of his business, and he has no intention to murder anyone here. But Dage furiously asks how he can say that after killing his brothers. Jinho replies he didn't kill them, but Dage asks what he means, to which Jinho replies that he caused them enough pain so they regret the fact they harmed the people around him, and they are still alive. Dage gets shocked, and suddenly, he falls, saying he should have said that first, which makes Jinho realize that is why Dage was obsessed with fighting him. Dage says, Kowloon City, which is also called Sin City, is a small land overpacked with buildings and a spiritless population. Dage was born and abandoned in this city, which was a lawless hellhole, crime being a daily event. Dage was 11 at that time, and he had to choose crime as a method of survival. That place was too harsh for a kid to live normally, so Dage ran trivial errands for the triads at night and slept on some dirty corridor during the day. One day, a man said to Dage that he saw Dage was being productive as always, so he told him to take the chocolate and cheer up. Dage took the chocolate because that man was an ill and weak man who slept on the streets near Dage. Dage remembers that man always talked about a pipe dream of leaving that place through studying, but at that time, Dage says he liked to listen to his nonsense. Suddenly, Jinho tells Dage to keep it short because he is not interested in it. Dage calls him cold-blooded and asks if he doesn't feel anything, to which Jinho replies that he doesn't care, but he wants to know how he learned martial arts that create circles. Dage tells him one day, nearby thugs started hunting the homeless to clean up the place, and he was no exception. Dage tried to retaliate, so a thug pushed him to the ground and tried to stab him, but Dage hit that thug's face with a rock. Dage decided to go back because the weak man who used to sleep near him couldn't get up for the past few days because of a fever. Dage feared that guy wouldn't survive a hunt in that state, so he went to help him, but he couldn't believe what happened before his eyes. Dage says that the guy, who was a dying man, was violently breaking the necks of the thugs. Dage says nowhere was that man's kind face, and his eyes had become that of a murderer. Dage says the first thing that man said that day was so odd for the situation that he remembers it to this day, and the words were, "I am back." Jinho is shocked, and Dage says he clearly remembers those words, and ever since then, that man has become a completely different person. Dage says he guessed it was because that man still had some attachment to him, but he said he'd make Dage stronger and train him. However, Dage says he only taught him footwork and left. Jinho is nervous because he realizes that man is a returner and wonders if they show up all around the world. Jinho thinks that looking at how decent this guy was with his footwork, he assumes that returner is pretty skilled. Suddenly, Dage sits up and says just so Jinho doesn't ask, he doesn't know any sect name or anything like that. Jinho asks if he is saying he only attacked him as simple retaliation for what happened at the restaurant and not because of the group known as Martial Alliance. Dage replies with of course not and says they hate the Martial Alliance. Jinho thinks it means all of this happened because he was impulsive and remembered when Hyuk warned him that Triad would retaliate. Jinho feels sorry for the secretary and Chang Min for getting caught in the middle and thinks he should fix his behavior for the sake of having a more normal life. Meanwhile, when Jinho sees Dage in pain, he heals his wounds, and Dage is impressed that his bleeding has stopped. Dage asks how the hell he does that and asks if he is sure it's not magic he is doing. Jinho says it'll be a pain if he dies like that, so Dage excitedly asks if he can also put his hand back on, but Jinho asks why the hell he thinks that would be possible. After some while, Dage checks Meatball is rarely alive, and Dage says not only did Jinho let the people who came to kill him go back alive, but he also healed them, so he asks what kind of naive marshal he is. Jinho tells him to be thankful that none of Jinho's friends are dead, and Dage says he owes him one. While picking up Meatball, Dage says that although he hates martial arts, he'll return the favor whenever he has a chance. After Dage leaves, Jinho goes to the cave where his fellows are, and Cho suddenly wakes up. Jinho asks how Cho feels, to which he replies he is fine, but he asks about the people who attacked them. Jinho says he sent them back, but when Cho asks about Jinho's wound, Jinho tells him not to worry because it'll not leave a scar. Simultaneously, when Cho asks about Chang, Jinho says he'll wake up soon and says Cho has been through a lot. Cho, with a sigh, tells Jinho that maybe he has taken his job of being his secretary too lightly. Suddenly, Cho starts crying and asks why Jinho didn't stop him and if it was going to be like this because this is going to traumatize him all his life. Cho says this vacation is completely ruined and asks what Jinho is going to do about this. Jinho tries to console him, but Cho requests Jinho not to forget about their trip to Macau or that he'll be really mad this time, so Cho, with a smile, replies that he'll make sure of that. On the other hand, when Wu Yuan returns back, his boss says he never imagined him to lose and asks if taking care of that brat was a difficult job. Wu Yuan apologizes to Kai Kecheng and says that the boy is beyond his capability. Kai Kecheng is the masked guy who met Lin Feng earlier, and he says that it looks like that boy beat Yuan badly. Kecheng asks if Yuan is saying that a martial artist of that level comes from Korea, to which Yuan replies if that boy chose to kill him, he would not even be here right now. Kecheng can't believe there is a man with such power that they don't know about, and when Yuan says there is one more thing he would like to talk about, Kecheng asks what it is. Yuan says that the boy is not an ordinary martial artist, and he is sure that the boy is using demonic martial arts. Yuan says it wasn't some low-level art, and Kecheng says if it is, then assuming that boy doesn't cause any trouble, they should just leave him until he goes back to Korea. Kecheng tells Yuan that a demonic practitioner at such a level can't withstand their thirst for blood and says it looks like they are going to have a serial killer in Korea soon. Yuan agrees and thinks maybe it's better for him not to talk about how that boy's mind seemed to be perfectly normal because he thinks it would be better for his reputation if the story was that he lost to a demonic practitioner who went berserk. As Yuan is thinking about this, suddenly, a man arrives there, saying that it is quite an interesting story. Yuan gets startled, and Kecheng asks that guy if he has already arrived, but that guy asks why Kecheng didn't invite him to such an interesting story. Yuan is scared to feel the pressure, and Kecheng immediately tells Yuan to get on his knees. Yuan knows the Martial Alliance is the organization known to be the best of all of the martial groups, and he heard there are 3 kings that rule the Martial Alliance. Each of them is known to possess power that surpasses the limits of a human. Yuan has heard that the Great Red King, who is known to have a large physique like the Asura himself, has flaming eyebrows and hair like that of a lion. Yuan realizes the man in front of him is the Red King, and the Red King says he heard about a demonic practitioner, so he asks Yuan to tell him more about this. A few days later, when Jinho and Cho are leaving, Chang asks if they are leaving already. Jinho apologizes to him, saying he feels he has only given harm to Chang during his visit, but Chang says it's not like this and apologizes because he thinks he was not much help. Chang is wearing his mountain spirit outfit again, so when Jinho asks why, Chang replies that he was able to heal enough while Jinho was here, so he was thinking about going back to his job. Jinho guesses Chang is really enjoying it, but he tells Chang that he can quit this job whenever he feels so. Chang tells Jinho that there are many things that have been prepared for the heir of the demonic master, so he asks if Jinho is really going back. Jinho replies that he requires none of them anymore, but he asks if Chang Min has any connection with the outside world at all, to which he replies he doesn't have it. Chang says although he decided to guard this place, there are more descendants of the cult, and each of them lives their lives while maintaining communications with each other. Chang says if they hear the news that the demonic master has returned, he is sure they'll stride here in an instant, and Jinho understands it. Suddenly, Jinho asks if Cho has a piece of paper and a pen, and a minute later, Jinho gives Chang his contact number. Jinho tells Chang to ask a young one how to use it, but suddenly, Chang tells Jinho to wait a moment and goes inside his cabin. While Jinho and Cho wonder where he went, suddenly, Chang comes back with a smartphone and says he saved the number in it. They both are shocked, and Chang asks if Jinho would like to have his number too, to which Jinho replies with a yes. Meanwhile, Cho is shocked because it's the latest iPhone, and it's a limited edition glossy black color. Moreover, Jinho asks if Chang knows about the Martial Alliance, to which he replies he knows that they are the ones who currently rule the world. Jinho says he wants Chang to investigate the Martial Alliance as much as he can, especially about who is on top of it. Chang accepts the task, and when Jinho is leaving, suddenly, Chang asks where they are heading and asks if they are trying to go down the mountain. When Jinho replies that they are going down the mountain, Chang asks them why they are heading in the wrong direction. Chang checks his phone and says there is a road nearby if they go in the opposite direction. When Chang shows them on the phone, Jinho and Cho are amazed. Chang says the age has changed and recommends using some modern technology. On the other hand, Dage's hand is fixed with a fake one, but he is amazed that it is as good as the new one. However, Dage says it's a pain that he has to move each finger manually, so he asks Lin Feng if they have neural interference things, but Lin Feng replies that they'll be in his dreams. Lin says she got him the best one he can, so he should live with it. Lin Feng asks if he is really going to leave the Youngmu group, to which he replies she should look at her and ask what she thinks he can do with this body of his. Dage says he'll be just dead weight next to her, and the other two are done too. Dage says Skewer had the nerves in his hand damaged, so he cannot shoot a gun anymore, and Meatball is not in any shape to work for them either. Lin Feng is sad, and when she hesitates to say something, Dage asks if she is going to stop him. Dage says he told her that she is a martial and says he thought she hated martials, but Lin Feng says she already knew. Lin Feng says they have been together for years, so he asks if he really thinks she didn't know about it. Suddenly, Dage says he'll open a store and live normally because he wants to take this opportunity to live a normal life. Dage asks if she is interested in quitting the triad and joining him to grill some lamb screws, to which she replies that like hell she'll. Dage says that is right and tells her to be the vice leader she is and cuts off her useless tail. Dage tells her to tell others that this incident was not a decision of the group, but his independent decision, and tells her to leave now. Dage says it looks like a visitor who has been waiting for a while has run out of patience, which makes Lin Feng nervous, and she asks if there is really someone. Dage replies that someone from the Martial Alliance is here, and they have a real monster at their doorstep. After some time, when Lin Feng leaves, Kechang and Red King visit Dage, and Dage knows they are not there just to give him a visit. Kechang recommends that Dage spare his worthless jokes, and says that Dage should be aware that he ignored the Martial Alliance's orders and engaged in that martial without their permission. Dage says that he was working on personal terms, and he has already been expelled from the group because of that, but Kechang says it doesn't matter because they weren't planning to punish the whole Youngmu group anyway. Suddenly, when Kechang says the ones who will be punished for this incident are Dage and his direct boss, Lin Feng, Dage gets worried and immediately replies that it was just him messing around. Kechang tells Dage to know his place because the Alliance's decisions are absolute, but Red King tells Kechang that he didn't come all the way here for such boring matters. Kechang apologizes, and Red King asks Dage to tell him everything about the demonic practitioner he met. After hearing the name Rad King, Dage realizes he must be the one in charge here, and hopes he is not as stuck up as the other guy. Dage says he can tell them about the martial under one condition if they don't touch Sis Lin Feng. Dage says he is only going to speak if they promise him that, but Kechang asks how dare he speak like that in front of Red King. However, Red King agrees, but when Kechang says doing that will show a bad example against the low ones, Red King, in an intimidating tone, says he finds Kechang's words to be long and unnecessary. Kechang immediately apologizes, and Dage also feels a strong pressure in the atmosphere. Suddenly, Dage says they have a deal and starts telling them about the martial. After some while, Red King asks if Dage is saying the demonic practitioner collapsed after being shot in the head by him, to which Dage replies that he is right. Dage thinks he is technically not lying and hopes this makes him even with the Korean. When Red King asks if that guy is dead, Dage asks if the demonic practitioners die after getting their head shot. Kechang asks how Dage dares to speak like that in front of the Red King, but the Red King is looking at the bruise on Dage's stomach. Red King thinks he may be overly concerned, but he thinks the bruise Yuan has is an indication of the demonic arts at a quite high level. Red King can't accept that the demonic practitioner lost to a weakling like Dage, so he asks how Dage could possibly fight against the demonic practitioner. Dage replies that being honest, he also knows how to use martial arts, but Red King says it seems like every man and his dog thinks they can speak about martial arts. Red King says they'll find out if Dage is telling the truth with a single test and tells Dage to survive a single attack from him at all costs. Red King says if Dage survives it, he'll pardon him for everything he has done in this incident. Dage says that is why he hates the damn marshals and tells the Red King to keep his promise. Dage gets up on his bead and suddenly points a gun at Red King, which startles Kechang, and he asks what the hell he is doing. Dage asks if he can do this too and shoots, but suddenly, the bullets fall on the ground in pieces. Dage is shocked, and Red King says a martial artist who relies on a gun is pathetic. When Red King says it's his turn now, Dage gets worried because he emptied the magazine at such a close distance. Dage decides to focus because this man can be a monster and thinks he needs to dodge his attack once. Dage uses his footwork to move around the room immediately, thinking he still has a chance, but Red King is standing still. Meanwhile, Kechang wonders how Dage is so fast, but suddenly, Red King blocks Dage's movement by appearing in front of him and calls his footwork crude, which shocks Dage. In an instant, the Red King touches Dage with a finger while saying Dage lacks any fundamentals to call himself a martial and blows him away with a fingertip. Dage gets slammed against the wall, and Kechang is amazed to see the power of the Red King. Kechang realizes it's a completely different level and thinks he knows the title Tyrant only suits the Red King. Meanwhile, Dage faints on the ground, and when Kechang asks what they do with him, Red King tells Kechang to leave Dage. Red King says he compromised Age's meridians, so he won't dare talk about martial arts anymore and tells Kechang that from now on, no matter how trivial it is, he should report to him everything related to the demonic arts. When Kechang asks if that demonic practitioner holds such a value, the Red King replies that he assumes Kechang has not experienced true demonic arts yet. Red King says the demonic arts Kechang knows are trash that is nowhere near their true potential. The Red King says the inheritor of the Master of Demonic Arts can even control death as he wishes, so he says if a person at the level of the demonic cult has reincarnated in this era, and he revives the true demonic arts in this world, the world will once again be engulfed in chaos. On the other hand, Hayek is taking Jinho and Cho back from the mountains and wonders what the hell happened there because they are sleeping like logs. A few days later, the trip is about to end, and Cho whines that he wants to go back, but Jinho asks if all that fun in Macau is not enough for him. Cho says Jinho won't get it because he still has his winter break when he gets back. He says Jinho has no idea about the pain of a company worker who has to go to work after their vacation. Jinho says he'll make sure the chairman knows about this, but Cho says he cannot even make a joke in front of him. Suddenly, Hayek says since Jinho can't take his swords on the flight, he'll find a way to send them to his address in Korea. Jinho thanks Nam Sang Hayek, but he tells him their boarding time is getting close, so they should start moving. Jinho thought he was going to get answers on how to live his life if he came to China, but it looks like he only has more problems, let alone any answers. Jinho thinks there is a martial alliance, a Chinese martial society group, and another martial society group in Korea, so he has no idea what is going to happen in this life. Jinho thinks even for the sake of preparing for it, he first needs to take care of it. After they land in Korea, Jinho goes to see Park and gives him his souvenir. Park thanked Jinho and asked when he would come back, to which Jinho replied that he had come back yesterday, but there was no one at home for some reason. Park says he guessed Jinho's family had something come up urgently and asked Jinho how China was. Jinho replies that it was not bad, but Park says he doesn't look satisfied. Suddenly, Park tells Jinho to make sure he tells Sam that he is back, but Jinho says he doesn't have a souvenir for her. Simultaneously, Park opens his souvenir and is shocked to see it because it's gross. Park asks what's wrong with Jinho's taste, but Jinho can't understand what's wrong, and he is planning to give it to Sam if things go wrong. However, Cho asks Jinho if something went wrong in China because Jinho's face doesn't look so good, but Jinho gets worried that his face really says that. Suddenly, when Jinho says there is a lot he needs to do, but there is nothing he can get done, Park asks what he is talking about. Park asked if Jinho was worried because he had nothing to do during his winter break and asked if Jinho would get his license with him. When Jinho asks what license he is talking about, Park replies that he is talking about a driver's license, but Jinho says he is not interested in driving. Park says Jinho will need to get it someday because he can't ride his bike anywhere, but Jinho says he can go anywhere with his bike. Park says that Jinho might be able to do it, but he asks what Jinho will do when he needs to drive his parents somewhere. Jinho starts thinking about it, and Park says if he is going to get it anyway, then why not do it now? Jinho thinks getting done with something that he eventually needs to do sounds right and says he should just get done with going there, but Park wonders if he is talking about going to the driving school. On the other hand, H. Wang says he hopes Cho enjoyed his vacation, and Cho replies that he enjoyed it. H. Wang says he heard the report from the Chinese branch and asked if they got into trouble with Triad. Cho immediately apologizes, but he is furious that Hayek told the chairman everything. Suddenly, H. Wang says it's enough about that matter, but he asks what the terrible thing happened that Cho mentioned. Cho replied that it happened when he climbed the mountain with Jinho and asked what the chairman would think if he saw an explosion from a fist and a person flying about 30 meters away from that. H. Wang gets worried and asks if Jinho did that, to which Cho replies that it is right and says it may be hard to believe, but he witnessed Jinho fight against a mysterious man up that place. Cho days, he wasn't able to comprehend anything at that time, but now that he thinks of it, everything is simply bizarre. Cho says Jinho was severely injured back then, but his wounds healed in no time. He says that seeing how Jinho talked with the mysterious man, he seemed to be someone he knew in China, but Jinho refused to explain anything. H. Wang thinks it sounds like Jinho is some character from the Wuxian novels he read when he was young. H. Wang never expected such an incredible report like this, and he tells Cho that if Jinho doesn't want to talk about it, he shouldn't force him to do so. H. Wang says Jinho doesn't cease to surprise him because he is such a man of desirable talent, but Cho says considering that's his chairman's expression after listening to his story, he also doesn't seem an ordinary man either. Suddenly, when H. Wang asks if Jinho is showing any changes after this trip, Cho replies that he has heard Jinho is preparing for his driver's license. H. Wang says it seems like it's about time to teach the beast the taste of money. On the other hand, when Jinho goes for the driving test, he drives extremely fast, but he doesn't cause any accidents. The testing officer feels extremely scared while Jinho drives, and when Jinho passes by an old man at high speed without stopping, the officer fails him in the test. Jinho is shocked, and he cannot understand why he failed the test. A few days later, at the graduation ceremony, a junior girl suddenly congratulates Jinho on his graduation and gives him a bouquet. Jinho takes it, and the girl immediately runs to her friends excitedly. Jinho tells Injayu that he doesn't remember doing much, but it looks like he has been a better senior classman than he thought. However, Injayu asks if Jinho is kidding. Suddenly, Park excitedly tells Jinho that he got his license on his first try and asks about Jinho, to which Jinho replies that he failed, so Injayu makes fun of Jinho. Meanwhile, Seon arrives, and they are impressed that she received a lot of flowers. Suddenly, Seon asks why Jinho didn't tell him that he was back and says he would have texted him, but Jinho simply apologizes. When Seon says it's not like she is important to him anyway and says it's fine, Jinho gives a confused expression. Seon says she'll get going and she'll see Jinho in college, to which Jinho replies with a him, which makes Injayu say that's not normal, and Park also feels something is wrong. A few days later, when Jinho is going out, he gets confused when he sees Cho standing outside the house with a car key in his hand. When Jinho asks what it is, Cho replies that it is a gift from the chairman congratulating Jinho on college entrance. Cho says the chairman is looking forward to Jinho enjoying it, but Jinho is not impressed to see the sports car as a gift for him getting into college. Jinho is leaving on his bike, but Cho sits behind him and says the chairman made a special order after he heard Jinho got his driver's license. Jinho tells Cho to send his gratitude to the chairman and tells him that this car is overkill in so many ways. Jinho says if the chairman really wants to give him a gift, he should make it something more subtle, but Cho begs Jinho to help him because he has already gone through a lot of trouble with the chairman because of what Jinho did in China. Cho says they went through a lot in China, so he asks if Jinho is going to leave him like this. Jinho feels bad, so he says this is the last time these words are going to work, and Cho immediately gets happy that Jinho agrees to take the car. However, Jinho says he is never going to ride it, so Cho should park it in the garage, but Cho says that is good enough for him. After that, Jinho leaves for college, and Cho thinks it's easy to manipulate Jinho sometimes. Jinho goes to the freshman orientation of the Yikai University of Business Administration, and Jinho notices that Seon is also present there. After some time, Jinho and Seon hang out with some other students, and Jinho introduces himself to them. When Jinho says he is Gang Jinho from Dongyong High School, the others say it's a short introduction, but they are only forgiving him because he is handsome. Next is Seon's turn, so she tells them that she is also from Dongyong High School and her hobby is singing, but she is not particularly good at anything. Seon says she looks forward to her time in college, but Jinho asks if this is what they call a woman with 1,000 faces. Seon furiously tells him to shut up. Suddenly, a guy approaches Seon and tells her that his name is Gil Young, and he is a sophomore. Gil asks if she can lend him her phone for a second, to which Seon replies he can have it, and when he gives it to Gil, he saves his number in it. Gil Young tells Seon not to hesitate to ask him questions about college, and Seon thanks him. Gil Young says they should get drinking and asks if she knows the rule that they have to chug down the first glass. Seon says she knows and drinks the first glass immediately, but Gil Young fills it again, saying they have a drinker here. Seon says she'll take her time with this one, and as she finishes it, Gil Young says he knew she was a heavy drinker, and he fills her glass again because she lied about it. Seon says she is near her limit, but Gil Young says she is surrounded by seniors and asks what she is worried about. Gil Young pressures her to keep chugging it in because that is how they live the campus life, but Seon is hesitant. As Gil Young tries to cheer with her, suddenly, Jinho picks up the glass and cheers with him. Jinho says he assumes Gil Young likes drinking and asks how he can help him with that. Jinho says since Gil Young said drinking is essential to campus life, he assumes Gil Young is not lightweight either. Seon is shocked, but Gil Young asks if Jinho is challenging him and says Jinho doesn't know that nobody in their department can beat him. Jinho says they can get rid of beer and bring soju. Gil Young nervously asks if Jinho is going to make him drink soju out of a water cup. Jinho tells him not to worry because he is also going to do it twice at a time, including Seon's. Gil Young wonders if Jinho is this confident and says he'll remember his name. Meanwhile, Seon is getting more impressed by Jinho, and this day, 2 legends were born at Yikai University. Gil Young was completely destroyed after drinking, which shocked other students, and Jinho thought he had overdone it. Gang Jinho is the god of drinking because back in Jinho's days in Jongyuan, Beiju was an alcohol known for his stiffness, and Jinho was a heavy drinker who especially enjoyed Sichuan Beiju, a version that was extra strong. Normal soju was nothing to Jinho, and when Jinho got up, Seon asked where he was going, to which he replied he was going to the men's room. When Seon asks if his stomach is okay, Jinho replies that it would have been the same if what he drank was water, and says he is just really full right now. After some while, when they go back, Seon is completely drunk, so Jinho tells her to get a cab, but she says she'll walk. Jinho says she is drunk and her place is pretty far from home, but Seon asks why he is following her. While walking home, Seon asks why Jinho helped her back there, to which he replies that she seemed to be in trouble. Seon yells that she didn't need his help at all back then, and yells that he didn't even get her a souvenir. Jinho thinks he knew she had a problem with that, and suddenly, Seon sits down, saying she can't walk anymore because her feet hurt and her legs are shivering. Jinho says he told her to get a cab, but she apologizes, so Jinho has no option left and tells her to get on his back. Seon gets happy and immediately gets on his back. After reaching home, Seon calls Park, and he says he didn't expect her to call at this time, but Seon says she really cannot stand it. Seon tells Park that dense idiot, Jinho, is never going to get it until she says it himself, and says she is going to confess it. The next day, pro gamer Park Yoo-min, who is a rising star in the Korean esports scene whose calmness is known to be his best weapon, is deeply shaken by the situation in front of him. It's because of his hero and best friend, Gang Jinho, and he wonders what to do. Park wants to tell Seon that Jinho is up to something while he is looking at a trimmer. A while later, Jinho goes to his parents' cafe, and they are shocked to see his looks. When they ask why he did that, all of a sudden, Jinho removes his cap, showing his new haircut, and says he decided to do his military service. Jinho's sister is shocked, and when she asks when the day of enlistment is, he replies it's next week, but his mother asks why he decided on something so important without having a word with them. Jinho apologizes, saying he should have thought of that, but his father asks if there is a reason why he decided to go so early. Jinho replies that if it is something he has to do anyway, he just thinks he would rather get it out of the way quickly. Gang says there is nothing they can do if Jinho chooses to do so and tells him to be careful, but his wife yells at him to scold Jinho. Gang's wife asks how he can be so careless, but Gang tells her that they should not resort to violence. After some while, when Jinho visits his friends, Injayu laughs at his haircut, but Seon is in shock. Injayu says he was wondering why Jinho wanted to see them all of a sudden and asks if he is joining the military. Injayu laughs while saying Jinho looks great with this hairstyle, but Jinho tells him to shut it. However, Injayu realizes Jinho actually does look fine with that hairstyle. Meanwhile, Park asks why Jinho decided to go to the military, so suddenly, Jinho replies Park himself said it's better to get it out of the way. Park remembers that when he was talking about the driver's license, Jinho was talking about military service. Park can't believe this situation, and when Jinho asks what's wrong, Park replies that it is nothing. On the other hand, Seon is completely silent, and when they go out for dinner, Seon wonders why she even likes a guy like this. Seon remembers he came close when she decided to give up, but now he is leaving like this. Seon is sad because she was finally able to make up her mind, so she wonders why he is leaving now. At night, Jinho, while walking Seon home, remembers Park furiously telling him to walk Seon home tonight and telling him not to ask the reason. Jinho thinks he doesn't mind walking her, but she has not said a word for a while. Suddenly, Seon stops and says they have reached so Jinho can go, to which Jinho replies okay, and she tells him to be careful in the military. Suddenly, Seon asks if Jinho doesn't have anything to say to her. Jinho is confused, so Seon says she guesses it makes sense that he doesn't have anything to say. Jinho gets worried and says it looks like he made a mistake again, but he apologizes to her and tells her to cheer up. Seon, while controlling her emotions, says he didn't do anything wrong, and it's just her expecting things herself. But still, Seon asks how Jinho is so dense like that, and asks if he is not interested in her at all. Seon asks how he can make her so miserable like this, and says she is just going to say this before he makes her more miserable. Seon says it looks like she really liked him for quite a long time, too, ever since he first talked with her. Jinho is shocked. And Seon says now that she thinks about it, she has always been around him and influenced by him. Seon says she knows he is not interested in her, so everything she has done until now just feels like a waste of time to her. Jinho apologizes, saying he didn't notice that, but Seon says it's okay, and that she is done now. Seon says it looks like she has been bothering him because she was making her feelings a priority, and that she won't bother him anymore. Seon says she'll see him again and leaves after saying bye to him, but Jinho remembers it now and wonders why he forgets it. Jinho remembers that the one who fell in love first was him, and remembers that he gave her a present in the past to confess his feelings. Suddenly, Jinho feels a strange feeling in his heart and wonders if this is the feeling he felt back then. Jinho thinks it's too late now and sighs. But suddenly, he gets startled to hear Seon yelling at him to be safe and come back safe. Seon yells she'll still be his friend, to which Jinho replies with a thank you and leaves. Meanwhile, Seon is crying behind the door, and Jinho, while leaving, feels bitter and wonders if this is what everyone feels. Jinho thinks it's the first time he has felt something like this and wonders if this means that he is starting to live a normal life. A few days later, the day Jinho leaves for the military arrives, and Gang tells Jinho that there will be times when Jinho will feel like things are unjust. But in the military, there will be many moments when he has to restrain himself. Gang says he knows Jinho is not the type of person who can just live with that, but Jinho has to learn that in life, there are times when he has to let things be. Jinho tells his father not to worry, and his sister says it's not like they are sending him off to the war zone. Jinho's sister says every guy does this, so they shouldn't make a fuss about it, but Gang says this is just how parents feel. Suddenly, an announcement is made for new entering personnel to gather behind the signs with their designated numbers, so Jinho says he'll leave now. Suddenly, everyone gets emotional, and they tell him to be careful and not get hurt. But while Jinho is leaving, Park tells Jinho not to worry about Seon much. Park says it doesn't change the fact that they two are still his friends, and says Seon also wanted him to tell Jinho to be careful. Jinho thanks Park, but suddenly, Park tells Jinho to stay calm no matter what happens and requests him not to kill anyone if he doesn't stand it. Park advises Jinho to stay away from trouble and desert the military if he cannot stand it, but Jinho asks what kind of person Park thinks Jinho is. Jinho tells Park not to worry about anything like that and leaves, saying he'll see him later. The first day of the military begins, and an officer yells at the newcomers if they think they are in the outside world. The officer says they are all soldiers now and orders them to move double time. Jinho sees this as the modern military and thinks although he never had a chance to experience it in his first life because of the accident, it's pretty similar to the demonic cult in how it makes people obey through pressure and making examples. However, Jinho remembers the demonic cult was far worse in how they cut heads and tortured people. Jinho realizes the basics have not changed, be it past or present, and thinks it's boring. Just like Jinho expected, the 2 days in the replacement depot turned out to be boring, and he spent most of his time in the replacement depot sitting in a meditation pose. Jinho didn't want to waste a second of his time, so he decided to spend his 2 years in the military to train himself in martial arts, and the first step was to train his Kai core. By constantly shrouding himself in Kai, Jinho can grow the size of his core and make his body more adapted to Kai. It was a necessary step for Gang Jinho, who already adapted to life in the modern world. Before entering the military, Jinho thought they might be martial artists stronger than him whenever he met martial arts, and this thought made him impatient. After 2 days in the replacement depot, they go to a place where they'll be staying for the next 5 weeks. In the drill training ground, the soldiers march forward. The officer thinks drill and ceremony are nothing too difficult, but it's training where new recruits and seasoned soldiers show very different movements. The officer thinks there are occasions when a new trainee shows some excellent movements, and suddenly, he notices Jinho. The officer wonders who the hell this guy is because he remembered and performed everything perfectly after a few looks, and the look on Jinho's face makes the officer wonder if he is a spy from the north. The officer thinks it looks like everyone is going to love this kid and tells trainee number 100, Jinho, to come out and have some rest. The officer tells the other trainees to keep moving and get their feet together, but also scolds them to do it properly. Meanwhile, Jinho wonders if it is really that difficult. Next, the rifle training begins, and while the other newbies are struggling with using a rifle, the seniors are surprised to see Jinho shooting perfectly. Suddenly, trainee 105 Jin Young HWA says it looks like he finally has a worthy rival because he himself is a National Sports Festival Award winner. Jinho hits 20 hits out of 20 shots, while Jin Young HWA's score is 12 hits, so he says they'll see each other next time. After that, in the physical training round, Jin Young HWA uses his full strength to win against Jinho, but Jinho thinks he'll just need to keep up with this guy so that his record won't look too abnormal. Young HWA says push-ups are his forte, and Jinho is out of luck this time, but he is shocked to see him doing push-ups at an insane speed. Jin Young HWA gets badly beaten by Jinho in all the rounds, and he cannot believe it. The other trainees asked Jinho if he had received some special training before he came here, and they asked what it was that Jinho could not do, to which Jinho replied that he had just graduated from high school. During the break, Jinho thinks he didn't know they let them rest during the weekends, but he can't waste his time, so he starts meditating. Meanwhile, a huge guy arrives there and asks Jinho what he thinks he is doing, but Jinho asks if he is talking to him. The guy curses Jinho and says he is talking to him. The guy asks Jinho if he really has to be such a douche and sit like that during the weekend and asks if he can't see everyone is uncomfortable because of him. Suddenly, another trainee comes forward asking Young-gi what's wrong and says they don't have to start a fight, but Young-gi tells him to get out of the way and ask others if he is the only one who has a problem with Jinho. Young-gu furiously asks if Jinho can't get a hint and asks if Jinho knows that others are facing the consequences because Jinho is trying to act well to the instructors every single moment. Young-gi furiously asks if Jinho really has to be a model soldier every single second of his life and says Jinho is trying to look good when everyone is trying to relax. However, Jinho says it looks like he caused harm, and when he asks what's wrong, Young-gi pushes the guy away who is trying to stop him and furiously asks if Jinho is kidding that he doesn't know. Jinho says he simply asks what is wrong, but Young-gi grabs his collar and asks what the hell Jinho is going to do if he has a problem. Jinho replies that if his actions are causing harm, then he should fix it, but Young-gi gets furious and asks what's wrong with Jinho. Young-gi says Jinho is a bigger douche than he thought and tries to pick him, but wonders why Jinho is so heavy. Simultaneously, Jinho warns Young-gi not to curse him again because he won't stay still, but Young-gi asks what he'll do. Jinho, with a fierce tone, says it's Young-gi's last chance, and Young-gi starts sweating. While Young-gi wonders if he is scared, suddenly, the sergeant arrives there and asks what they are doing. One of the trainees replies that they were just playing, but the sergeant says he told them that the weekends are not their days off, but their days for personal organization. The sergeant says if they get caught playing around again, they'll spend the rest of the weekend on the ground. Suddenly, the sergeant tells Jinho to follow him, and when they go outside, he offers Jinho a drink. Jinho thanks the sergeant, but when he asks if this is not off limits for recruits, the sergeant points towards his badge and asks if Jinho can see who he is, to which Jinho replies that he is a sergeant. The sergeant says that is right, and he is not any sergeant, but a sergeant clearing for ETS, so Jinho shouldn't worry about it. Suddenly, the sergeant asks what Jinho is going to do back there if he doesn't show up, and if he is going to start a fight. Jinho replies that he is going to do that. The sergeant laughs and asks if Jinho has no idea why Young-gi has a problem with him back there, to which Jinho replies that he doesn't know. The sergeant says it is because Young-gi is annoyed by Jinho, and that is how the military works. The sergeant says everyone here becomes sensitive, and that is why it feels like they have more weirdos in society because there is no freedom in the military. The sergeant says Jinho sticks out too much during training, and his outstanding performance makes others look bad, which pushes them in unwanted ways. Jinho asks if the sergeant is telling him to be careful not to attract attention, and the sergeant replies that he is right. The sergeant says he is putting his leg into others' business and guesses he is getting bored with his ETS coming soon. The sergeant tells Jinho that he can go now, so Jinho leaves. Meanwhile, the sergeant wonders what's going on with this recruit because he felt stifled the whole time he was talking with him. The sergeant says it looks like they have one stubborn fellow here and thinks Jinho is good, but he lacks social skills. The next day, in the hand grenade training range, the instructor tells trainee number 99, Young-gi, to focus on him, so Young-gi apologizes and says it won't happen again. Young-gi is disturbed because yesterday's scene keeps bothering him because he noticed Jinho's eyes were not normal. Young-gi remembers Jinho made him scared with just a glare and wonders if he is really that scared of him. Suddenly, the instructor tells the trainees not to relax their hands after they remove the pin and tells them to follow the instructor's orders and everything will be fine. The trainee asks if they understand. Young-gi replies he understands but wonders why he has to be right next to Jinho. The instructor tells Young-gi to relax because everyone can do it. Young-gi tries to convince himself that he is not nervous, but he wonders why the hell Jinho is staring at him. Young-gi wonders if Jinho is making fun of him and gets furious, but the instructor tells him to stay focused. Young-gi removes the pin on the instructor's order and thinks he just has to throw it so nothing will go wrong. As the instructor tells him to throw with confidence, Young-gi wants to tell the instructor to shut up because he would be nothing if he met him outside. Suddenly, Young-gi tries to throw the grenade with pressure, but after hitting the safety wall, it falls inside the safety wall near him. The instructor and Young-gi get terrified, and Young-gi realizes he has gripped it harder than usual. The instructor tells Young-gi to move to the other side of the safety wall, but he can't move out of fear and thinks he is going to die. Suddenly, Jinho picks up the grenade and throws it away. Everyone gets shocked, but Young-gi faints because of the shock. The instructor scolds Jinho because he almost got himself killed and asks who told him to be a hero, to which Jinho replies that he is confident that he is going to survive. After some while, when Jinho is polishing his boots, the other trainees praise him. They say Jinho was awesome back there, and they say he also has the guts to go with his muscles. When they asked how he was so calm after that, Jinho replied that it wasn't a big deal. When they say he must be acting, Jinho thinks it looks like not sticking out is not an option anymore. Meanwhile, a trainee thanks Jinho for saving Young-gi and says Young-gi can get rough at times, but he really helped him a lot during his training, so he requests Jinho not to hate Young-gi. The trainee offers a snack to Jinho and says it is not much, but after seeing this, others also give their snacks to him. Jinho says sweets are not really his thing, but they insist he takes them, and Jinho feels awkward. The next day, during the CBR training, the instructor tells the trainees to remove filters from their masks and says they'll be singing an army song, The Real Man, during the training. As the poisonous gases are released, everyone starts coughing, and Jinho wonders if it is poison because it stings his breath and skin. Jinho thinks it's the first time he is experiencing modern chemical weapons and thinks it's difficult from the organic poisons the Tang clan and the 5 Venom sect used back in Zhongyuan. Jinho thinks it is impossible to block, considering it's airborne and poisons the subject through their skin. Jinho wonders how bad the real stuff is if this is the training material, but suddenly, the instructor asks Jinho if the training is too easy for him because he seems fine. When Jinho replies that it's not a problem, the other trainees get furious because they are coughing badly. Suddenly, the instructor tells them to remove their masks, and as they do, Jinho's eyes are teary, and his nose is runny. After they go back to their room, young HWA asks Jinho what the hell his problem is and asks if he seriously does not know what saying not a problem in that situation would have resulted in. Young HWA says Jinho can't be this dense, but Jinho says he apologized if he caused harm and says he just thought it was a rare and valuable experience. Young HWA gets furious and says they are the ones who suffer the consequences. When Young HWA asks if Jinho doesn't feel anything about it, another trainee tells him to relax because Jinho is not doing it with bad intentions. However, Young HWA furiously asks if any of them has seen Jinho engage in a conversation with anyone for the past 3 weeks and says Jinho doesn't really care about any of them at all. Meanwhile, Jinho is worried because they have another problem with him, and he doesn't know how many times this happened. Jinho thinks he is only surrounded by friendly people in society, but everyone here has a problem with him and wonders if this is also because of the senses he had back in Zhongyuan or wonders if some part of him is actually broken because of his number of reincarnations. Suddenly, Young-gi arrives there, and when a trainee gladly asks if he is allowed out of the hospital, Young-gi replies that he said he was fine, but it took a while for the doctor to let him go. Suddenly, Young-gi says he is not the one to say this, and he understands their situation, but they shouldn't be too harsh on Jinho. Young-gi says he gave it a thought while he was in the hospital that Jinho always apologized and said he'll fix his problems. On top of that, Young-gi says Jinho never denied that it was his fault, but when HWA tries to argue, Young-gi says Jinho is only a human. Jinho is shocked to hear this, but Young-gi says everyone has flaws, and they are in this together, so they should look after each other. Young-gi says Jinho is the one who taught him that, so he thanks Jinho for saving his life and apologizes to him. A few days later, it's week 4 of training, and during a night march, Young-gi is extremely exhausted. Suddenly, the instructor asks Young-gi if he is fine and says he is free to give up anytime, so he should not force himself too hard, but Young-gi says he can do it. The instructor thinks this group of trainees did have a lot of problems, but they cannot just push them to do the rest of the training so strictly. The instructor wonders how do they expect trainees to do a 20-kilometer full-loaded march. Meanwhile, Young-gi suddenly feels his ruck lighter, but he doesn't know it's because Jinho is placing his hand under it. After some while, they get a 10-minute break, and the instructor tells them not to get too comfortable because it won't be easy getting their engines back up and running. Meanwhile, Young-gi gets out of the water, so Jinho offers him his water, for which Young-gi thanks him. When Young-gi asks if Jinho doesn't need it, Jinho replies that he is fine, and he is not yet 30. Young-gi asks if Jinho is really a human and whines that this place is crazy, so he is giving him, but Jinho asks if that is so. Young-gi tells Jinho that when a guy says he is giving up, Jinho should say he can do this, or they should do it together. However, Jinho says giving up if Gi doesn't want to do it is also an answer, but Gi says he can't believe him. Suddenly, the break ends and Gi gets up, but Jinho says he thinks he is giving up. Gi says he is still the big bro of the squad, and if he wants to stand up to that, he can't give up so easily. Jinho, with a smile, says at least Gi's face is big bro material, so it's alright, and tells Gi that they should get going. But Gi is shocked that Jinho made a joke. After some while, the sun rose, and Gi yelled that he had completed the march, but the trainee scolded him to lower his voice. Gi apologizes and tells Jinho that it's amazing because he never thought it was possible by himself. Gi says he was able to do it because there was someone next to him, and says it is true that humans are not made to live alone. Gi says he misses his grandma and brother, and this makes Jinho remember the days when he lost his family and was alone. Jinho remembers that he thought he could live alone despite the fact that humans are not meant to live alone. Jinho remembers his family, friends, and companions and thanks Gi because he learned a lesson from him that humans are not made to live alone. After some while, Jinho is called to the battalion commander's room, and he is shocked to see Chairman H. Wang there. Jinho asks what the chairman is doing there, but H. Wang asks what he means by that. H. Wang says it's been a month and asks if Jinho forgot about saving his life, to which Jinho doesn't reply anything because he is embarrassed. Jinho starts healing the chairman, but H. Wang says he is shocked that Jinho actually forgot and asks if he is only worth that much to him as a person. Jinho apologizes, but he asks if the chairman is allowed to come here, to which H. Wang replies that he told the officials that he is here to make a donation while he comes to meet his grandson. However, Jinho asks if this is not bribery, and H. Wang replies that if it goes to the generals, it becomes bribery, but if it goes to the troops, it becomes a donation. H. Wang says he'll keep a good eye on where his money goes and wear his shirt after getting healed. H. Wang says Jinho is quite a stubborn man because not only did he decide to join the military all of a sudden, but he also refused his offers to get him in better condition. When H. Wang asks why Jinho is so obsessed with the military, Jinho replies he was never obsessed and says he just thought it was necessary to live a normal life from now on, so he wanted to get it out of the way. The chairman, H. Wang, asks if Jinho is obsessed with being normal and not with the military. Jinho replies that he is right. H. Wang says if that is what Jinho wants, he'll root for it and congratulate Jinho on finishing his basic training, so Jinho thanks him. A few days later, when they are leaving the training center, Young Gi's friend says he'll miss him, and Young Gi tells him to call him on his break. Simultaneously, a trainee asks if Young Gi is sure he is okay, but Young Gi asks what he means, to which the trainee replies that Young Gi is going to the same unit as Jinho, and it won't be easy constantly being compared to Jinho. Young Gi asks what that guy is talking about and asks how he is not as good as Jinho. Suddenly, they ask Jinho to give them their number so they can meet up together during their 100-day break, to which Jinho replies that he'll give it to them and says they'll meet. After that, when the others are seeing them off, Young Gil emotionally screams in a loud voice at the others to call him when they get out of there and says he'll treat them really well. Gi says it looks like he has gotten attached to those guys and tells Jinho not to worry about anything and just follow him. Gi tells Jinho to be thankful that they are in the same unit, but Jinho says he hears that being in the same battalion doesn't necessarily mean they are going to be together. On the other hand, Park meets Seon and asks how she is doing, to which she replies that she is doing fine and she was thinking about studying for the TOEIC. When Park says it looks like she is doing well, Seon asks if he wants her to not be well because of Jinho. Park immediately says that is not the case and that he is worried, but Seon says she is kidding and asks how Jinho was entering. Park replies that Jinho is calm, so Seon says it's alright then because that sounds like Jinho. Seon tells Park that until recently, she really hated Jinho for being so dense, and she even cried a lot by herself, but then she thought about it, and it made her think about something. Seon says Jinho was always lost in thoughts while staring at the sky, and every time she saw him, Jinho did that. Seon says that when she remembered that, she finally understood that maybe he was not in a situation to think about something else, and that maybe they had just met at the wrong time. Suddenly, Park asks if love happens when the time is right. Seon replies that it is right and that it's all about timing, and besides, it is a saying that first love always fails. Seon says that the moment she thought it that way, things became easier, and she thinks she can move on now. Park is happy for her and tells her to just become happy and make Jinho regret he missed her. On the other hand, Jinho and Gi go to their assigned unit, where Captain Ha Jinom says that it looks like they have some big boys. Jinom says he is the battery commander of this place and tells them to make sure they answer loudly and clearly when they are still new because that is how they earn points in their platoon. Jinom tells them to make sure that they adapt as soldiers of their unit, to which they loudly reply, "Yes, sir." Meanwhile, two squad leaders arrive there and Jinom tells them to take each one from Jinho and Gi to the barracks. Jinho realizes this is where they split ways, and Gi, while leaving with his squad leader, says he'll see Jinho soon. Jinho's squad leader, Cho Wongu, asks Jinho his name, to which he replies that it's Gang Jinho and Cho Wongu tells him his name. Cho Wonju says he is the third squad leader, and Jinho has just become the NFG of Charlie Battery, 3rd Squad. Wongu pats Jinho's head and says it seems Jinho will stay the newest guy while he is here, so he tells Jinho not to hesitate to ask anything, to which Jinho replies, "Yes, sir." Suddenly, Wongu takes Jinho to his squad's room, and everyone there says finally, a newbie has come. They immediately bombard Jinho with questions and ask if he has a girlfriend or a sister, to which Jinho replies he doesn't have a girlfriend, but he has a younger sister. When they ask if she is hot, Wongu tells them to back off and congratulates Sung Tiho on becoming the newest boy. Wongu tells Tiho to help Jinho clean and change, but Hyuk-soo puts his arm around Tiho's neck and asks the squad leader how Tiho can teach anything when he doesn't know anything. Hyuk-soo says he means Tiho does his best, but he is not really good at anything. When Wongu asks if Hyuk-soo wants to do it instead, Hyuk-soo replies that he will soon become a corporal and that he is past the point of babysitting the new guys. Jinho feels offended, and Wongu tells Hyuk-soo to shut up if he doesn't want to do it. Hyuk-soo welcomes Jinho into the squad with a creepy smile. Private first class, only after 2 weeks of being the newest guy, Chun Hyuk-soo became 3rd in rank in the squad. It is what most people consider lucky, and Chun Hyuk-soo, who was an athlete before enlisting and already lived in a hierarchy system, had one hobby, hazing the ones belonging to him. To Hyuk-soo, the guys below him are simply playing things, so a while later, Hyuk-soo says he told Jinho to remember all the information he need during duty today. Jinho replies that he has already remembered everything, but Hyuk-soo asks if Tiho is in charge of teaching him, to which Tiho replies that he is right. Hyuk-soo says every time Jinho gets something wrong, Tiho will take the responsibility as the teacher, but Tiho gets nervous. Hyuk-soo knows it takes 2 weeks for others to remember all the stuff, so he is sure Jinho didn't remember it in a day. Hyuk thinks he can already see Jinho stuttering and giving wrong answers, so he asks Jinho what they call the 57th Regiment. Hyuk-soo thinks the fun will begin now, but when Jinho replies that it is 2,369 units, everyone is shocked. Hyuk-soo asks another question, and Jinho again gets it right. Hyuk-soo asks which college Jinho is from, and he replies that he is from Yi-Kine University. Hyuk, while walking towards Jinho's cabinet, says Jinho has some brain, but says he doesn't care if Jinho is new or not because being a soldier is all about being neat and tidy. When Hyuk-soo takes a look at Jinho's cabinet, Hyuk-soo wonders how the hell is the new guy's cabinet this clean and organized. Hyuk-soo asks how the hell Jinho folds his uniform this cleanly without ironing it, to which Jinho replies he just pressed it hard. Hyuk-soo wonders what is wrong with this guy because Jinho has folded his blanket so nearly, and he wonders if this is really Jinho's first time in the military. Hyuk-soo thinks he has to admit that this guy is not an ordinary new guy, but suddenly, he falls on the floor. Tiho asks if Hyuk-soo is alright, but Hyuk-soo asks how the hell the floor is so neat and shiny. Jinho replies that he cleaned it because Hyuk-soo told him to do so earlier, but Hyuk-soo furiously asks that he give Jinho only a wet rag, so how did he mirror polished it? Jinho replies that he just cleaned it extra hard. After some while, Hyuk-soo is exhausted while running and wonders how it came to this. A while ago, Hyuk-soo told Jinho that because he'd help him exercise, they should do a 50-lap competition, to which Jinho agreed. Hyuk-soo is sure he bought Jinho out to teach him a lesson, and is sure they already ran 20 laps or so, but he cannot believe how Jinho is outrunning him like this. Hyuk-soo is exhausted because 20 laps are 6 kilometers, and suddenly Jinho crosses him, thinking it feels good to work out like this. After some while, Jinho, worried, asks Hyuk-soo if he is okay because Hyuk-soo is in bad condition, and when Wongu asks Hyuk-soo what happened, Hyuk-soo replies that he just ran some laps with the new guy. Hyuk-soo, in a trembling voice, says it looks like he was not in prime condition today, and he felt like he had a cold. Suddenly, Jinho suggests they should make this one a no contest and do it again next time. Hyuk-soo agrees, but Wongu wonders how Jinho put an athlete this far. Wongu asks if Jinho is a marathoner or something, to which Hyuk-soo replies that Jinho is just a college boy, which makes Wongu think he has to do something on his own. Meanwhile, Tiho tells Jinho that tomorrow is his first training, so he should make sure to be sharper than usual, to which Jinho replies with an okay. The next day, squad leader Wongu shows Jinho a 155mm meter-towed howitzer and says it is going to be Jinho's friend for 2 years. Jinho says it is huge and asks Wongu the range of this howitzer, to which he replies that it is 15 kilometers with normal rounds and 30 kilometers with wraps. When Jinho asks what the casualty radius is, Wongu replies that it is around 25 kilometers, but he asks why Jinho is asking. After hearing this, Jinho is shocked and thinks it is no wonder martial artists have disappeared. Jinho wonders if they can possibly evade an artillery round coming from 15 kilometers away that kills everything in a 25-meter radius. Jinho thinks that if they are saturated with these things, it would not matter if someone is at first class or at the peak level of martial arts. Jinho thinks he would safely assume that martial artists are no match against a modern military. Meanwhile, Wongu can see Jinho is scared, but he tells everyone to move to the main training grounds and train with the jack screw guys. Jinho wonders who they are, but suddenly, Wongu shows them the screw and demonstrates how they stick it to the howitzer and move it to elevate the howitzer. Wongu tells them to think of it like the jack screws they use for cars, and they say okay. However, Wongu says while the cars are only 100 kilograms, this thing weighs 7 tons and says they are talking about a completely different weight class, so they should be careful. Wongu tells Jinho to come out and give it a try, but he does this because he thinks Jinho is too much of an overperformer. Wongu thinks that, at this rate, Jinho will end up demoralizing his superiors, so he thinks he has to do this for the hierarchy of this place. Wongu hopes Jinho understands, but he knows this jack screw is normally operated by a 2-person group, and it is also used as a rite of passage for the new guys into the artillery by making them lift it by themselves. Wongu hopes it breaks Jinho because he knows operating the jack screw alone is something even the buffest soldiers have a problem doing. As Jinho starts operating the jack screw, Wongu gets shocked to see Jinho doing it without any problem. Suddenly, another soldier tells Wongu that the shaft is about to go out, and Wongu immediately tells Jinho to stop. When Jinho asks if this is enough, Wongu replies that this is enough, and he is shocked at how Jinho can do it so easily. Similarly, Jinho does all the work easily, which shocks everyone around him. Wongu asks Hyuk-soo who the hell Jinho is, to which Hyuk-soo replies that he also doesn't know and says that, according to the other new guy who came with Jinho, they call Jinho the Terminator at basic training. While watching Jinho cleaning, when Wongu asks Hyuk-soo if there is nothing to nitpick about Jinho, he replies that Jinho is perfect at everything from standby to cleaning. Hyuk-soo says it makes him feel like he has OCD just by looking at Jinho's cabinet. Suddenly, Wongu says he is going to spend the rest of his time watching TV here, so he leaves the rest to Hyuk-soo. Wongu tunes in a singing show in which a new singer, Gang-si, is called on stage to sing. The whole squad starts watching the show, and when Wongu asks who this new singer is, Hyuk-soo replies that she is a new singer who debuted, and she is top tier in singing, dancing, and having a nice body. Suddenly, Jinho tells Hyuk-soo to move because he needs to clean up the place. Hyuk-soo yells that he'll move after Gang-si is done singing. Jinho wonders why people like those singers because it's not like they are exceptional at singing, but suddenly, he gets shocked to see it's her sister, Gang Yoon-young. Jinho immediately calls Cho, and Cho says it's an honor because he never expected Jinho to call him first. Jinho asks if Cho watches what is on TV. Cho understands he is talking about Yoon-young and says Jinho has no idea how popular she is in the industry. Cho says Jinho must feel assured in the military of how well she is doing, but Jinho furiously asks Cho who made Yoon wear like and dance like that. Cho gets worried and says it must be the stylist and the choreographer, but Jinho asks if he is sure. Cho starts sweating with tension and says the stylist decides the clothes, the choreographer makes the choreography, and that is how things usually are. Jinho tells Cho to fire them immediately and change her concept, but Cho gets terrified because he can't tell Jinho that he has decided. When Cho, in a scared voice, says he doesn't think Yoon-young would like that because she is pleased with all the interest directed to her, Jinho asks what he means. Cho says he heard Jinho's family is going to visit him tomorrow, so he tells him to talk to them himself, to which Jinho replies that he'll do that. After turning off the phone, Cho wonders if he almost lost his job just now. The next day, when Jinho's family comes for a visit, everyone is shocked to see Gang-si, and she asks Jinho if showing up all pretty on the TV will not benefit her life in the military. Jinho furiously replies that he doesn't need any of that. Jinho, trying to keep his calm, says it looks like she has forgotten that she is a student and strictly tells her to change her concept and songs to something that suits her status as a student immediately. However, Yoon-young yells at why he is so oppressive and tells her parents that Jinho is about to destroy her career. When Yoon-young tells them to say something, Gang says Jinho has a point. Jinho says that maybe being a celebrity was the problem and that it was too early for a student like her to make a debut at all, but she taunts that it looks like she made a premature decision. Meanwhile, Jinho ignores her and asks his dad if Park didn't come with them, but Yoon-young furiously asks why he is looking for him on a visit with his family and asks if they are dating. Jinho furiously tells her to zip it, and his father says he is concerned about whether he will talk about this to Jinho or not. Gang says he did call Park and asked him to come with them, but the way he was speaking and his voice trembling made it sound a bit weird, as though something was happening. Jinho gets worried and asks if his father can tell him more about this. Suddenly, when Yoon-young again interrupts, asking if he doesn't really date Park, Jinho gives her a terrifying look, and she immediately apologizes. Yoon-young thinks she always used to have the upper hand against Jinho when they were young, but he feels scarier than dad nowadays. Meanwhile, Gang tells Jinho that he thought it was not appropriate for him to ask Park directly, so he didn't ask him yet. Gang apologizes, but Jinho tells him not to worry about it. He thinks that since it's a 100-day break soon, he should visit him for once and hopes Park is doing well. A few days later, when the break starts, young Gi gets excited that they finally get their break. Suddenly, Gi asks how Jinho is going to get home, to which Jinho replies that he can just take a bus or something, but Gi is amazed at how laid-back Jinho is. However, when Gi asks how to get to Seoul Station from here, Jinho thinks Gi is also a laid-back kid. Suddenly, Cho arrives in a car and tells Jinho that he'll give Jinho a ride to Seoul, but Gi says Jinho never told him that he is a rich kid. Jinho says that the car doesn't belong to his family, but he asks if Gi wants a ride because he wants to go to Seoul Station, and Gi gladly agrees. After some while, they drop Gi off at Seoul Station, and Cho asks Jinho if he made a friend in the military. Jinho replies that they are in the same batch. Cho says Gi is pretty polite for such a rough-looking guy, and Jinho says he is an interesting man. After that, when Cho asks if he can drive Jinho home now, Jinho agrees but tells Cho that he wants to go to the Sungshim orphanage after visiting home and hopes Park is fine. After changing his clothes at home, Jinho goes to the orphanage and thinks it seems unsettled compared to the last time. While Jinho wonders if something really happened, suddenly, the kids see Jinho, and they are happy to see him. Jinho says it's been a while, and he can see they have grown up, but the kids excitedly start teasing him and pull his cheeks. Suddenly, Park comes out after hearing noises and is shocked to see it's Jinho. Park is carrying a baby at his back and asks Jinho if he is out for his break. Park says Jinho should have told him that he was coming, but Jinho says he came because he heard Park did not sound well. Jinho says Park is wearing an apron and carrying a baby, so he asks if Park got married while he was gone. Park furiously asks what Jinho is talking about and says he is just helping out the orphanage, but Jinho asks what he is doing there instead of training with his team. When Jinho asks about the director, Park nervously replies that he was planning to talk about this too, that the director is in the hospital. Jinho gets shocked, and when he asks what happened, Park replies that she collapsed once before. Park said when they went to the hospital, the director was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. Park says that after he had worked in the orphanage instead of her, he realized how it made so much sense and that he was trying his best, but he could not possibly replace her. Park, with tears in his eyes, says if only he had taken care of her earlier, it wouldn't have become like this and asks what will happen if she doesn't make it. Jinho hits Park's head and tells him not to worry because it's not his fault, but he asks Park where the director is now. After some while, Jinho goes to the hospital, where the director is and thinks he has been there many times, but he still can't get used to this place. Jinho goes inside her room, and she recognizes it's Jinho, but Jinho says it's been a while since they met and says he came alone because Park had to stay at the orphanage. The director says she feels sorry for them, especially for Park, who can't focus on practicing because of her. Jinho tells her that everything is fine, so she should not say that, but the director says he has become quite a man while she hasn't seen him. Sister Lee Hae-suk is the director of Sungshim Orphanage, the place which raised Park Yoo-min, and Jinho has met her a number of times because of his visits to the orphanage. Hae-suk is a warm-hearted woman with a kind nature, and when she asks how Jinho's military service is, Jinho replies that it's nothing much, and everyone does it. When Lee says she heard it's hard, Jinho replies that it's an exaggeration, but he knows a fact that director Lee is quite sharp. Simultaneously, Lee says he talks as if he has already lived a life before, but Jinho gets nervous and asks if she is eating well. Lee says she is trying her best, but things are not working as they used to. Meanwhile, Jinho uses her vision to examine her body and sees her chest and stomach are filled with murky kai. Jinho is worried because it's not something he can solve in his current life, and suddenly, Lee says, looking at Jinho's face, it seems like Park has already told him everything. Jinho gets startled, but Lee asks if Jinho can take care of Park if anything happens to her. Jinho tells her not to worry. Lee says she is relieved that Jinho says that, and Jinho says she can make it, but Lee says her life depends on God's will, so she can't possibly defy it. Lee says it looks like that God is trying to say that her time has come, but Jinho says the children at the orphanage still need her. Lee replies that she knows, and that is why she is more heartbroken, but everyone has to say their farewells someday. Lee says she knows that being left behind is lonely and frightening, but people can't move on if they are stuck in the past forever. Lee says she can only hope for the children to move on, and Jinho thinks that it is right that he has to accept it. Jinho realizes it's not as simple as Chairman H-Wang's case, and if he makes a mistake, it'll only make things worse. While Jinho thinks there is nothing he can do, suddenly, his past self from his first life appears there and asks if he is giving up so easily here. Jinho's past self asks if he is doing this because Lee doesn't benefit him and says Jinho helped Chairman H-Wang with his normal school life. What he did in China was for his own curiosity and his family for his own stability. The paralyzed Jinho says the current Jinho poked his head in everything so far because it helped him, but asks if he can do nothing for Lee. The paralyzed Jinho says it makes sense because of how helpful a dying orphanage director can be to Jinho. The paralyzed Jinho tells the current Jinho that nobody cared for them after they were broken and lost everything and asks if he is right, but Jinho is in shock. Suddenly, Lee asks if Jinho is alright, to which Jinho replies that he has something to do, so he'll leave and apologizes. Lee thanks Jinho for visiting her, and Jinho leaves, saying he'll come again, but after going outside, Jinho thinks he knows Lee's words are right, and if he simply accepted it, he wouldn't have died that way in his first life. However, Jinho remembers Park saying that the children cannot part with Sister Lee like this, so Jinho decides that he'll find a way to save her. After some while, Jinho meets Cho, and Cho asks why he wants him to investigate the orphanage all of a sudden, to which Jinho replies that Sister Lee of the orphanage is ill, leaving the orphanage in danger. Cho apologizes and says Chairman Hwang Yi Kyung was not able to support the orphanage as actively because of the stockholders showing complaints. Jinho says he understands that Yi Kyung is a corporation, not a charity group, but asks what'll happen to the orphanage if Sister Lee passes away. Cho says that since it becomes void of a manager, it will either be managed by the government or taken over by another orphanage. When Jinho asks what'll happen to the children if another orphanage takes over, Cho assumes they'll be separated. Jinho says he cannot let this happen, so he says he'll pay the money and ask if Cho can find a better hospital and a person who will manage the orphanage. Cho immediately replies that it's not a problem and that he'll get it done as soon as possible. Cho also gives the cancer surgery data that Jinho asked for, so Jinho thanks him, but Cho asks if there is something Jinho can do about it. Jinho says he is not sure, but he'll try everything he can. After that, Jinho goes back to meet Lee and asks if she'll mind if they move her to a different hospital, but Lee is confused. Jinho says he is not trying to cure the cancer, but the other hospital is close to the orphanage, so it should be better for the children to visit her. Lee says that she is just being greedy, but Jinho asks why he thinks so and says she is the last person ever to be greedy. Lee says greed doesn't have to be something grandiose and says it's about doing something because they simply want it. Lee says it is unreasonable for her to be greedy just because she wants to live a little longer, but Jinho says she can't consider Park and the children. Jinho, as if she doesn't think that showing effort for those who are left behind is also a valuable effort. Lee replies that he seems anxious. Lee says maybe he is oppressed by a sense of obligation and says there are things that they simply cannot stop. However, Jinho says he can stop it, but wonders why he wants this person to live so desperately. Jinho wonders if it is because of Park and the children, but he thinks he already knows it is something out of his reach. Jinho asks himself what exactly he wants to do, and suddenly, he gets worried when Lee coughs and vomits blood. Jinho says he'll bring the nurse, but Lee stops him and tells him not to bother the busy people. Suddenly, Lee says she'll do as he says and says she'll move to the hospital because she is sure Jinho has a reason for it. Jinho is sad because the cancer is more dangerous than he thought, and he has 3 days left until he returns to the military, so he has no time to waste. After Lee is shifted to Yi Kyung Hospital, Jinho visits her at night when she is sleeping and sees the cancer got even worse than he last saw. Jinho thinks it looks like she is at her limit, and as he has studied cancer, he decides to see how much it has spread. Jinho examines it as terrible because her stomach is filled with poisonous Kai and wonders how she can bear it for this long. Jinho knew it was not going to be easy, but it was worse than he expected, and unlike Hwang and Jae-yoon, whom he had treated before, he was not sure if it was even possible to cure this one. Jinho can't touch the poisonous Kai concentrated in the center, so he decides to get rid of the poison spreading around it using Fire Kai. Jinho knows Fire Kai burns poisonous Kai, but it also burns the body, and Lee's body is already at its limit. Jinho decides to use a little Kai to minimize the damage and starts the healing process, but he cannot rush it because her life is at stake. Jinho does it slowly, a little at a time, but he sits down with exhaustion, and he isn't wrong that this is the best he can do with his current level. However, Jinho is glad that he did it and that he was able to kill the spreading cancer cells. Jinho thinks that if he left the rest to modern science, Lee might have a chance to live. The following day, the doctor is shocked to see Lee's latest reports and wonders how it is possible that a terminal cancer patient just naturally recovered to stage 3. When the doctor says that, after looking at the test results, the patient's condition has improved significantly, Park gets happy. Jinho asks the doctor if they can be sure of Lee. The doctor replies that he cannot guarantee anything, but there is some hope, and they can try some surgical measures at this stage. Park gets emotional to hear this and hugs Lee while asking if she heard it. Park says they can go to the orphanage together, but Lee is looking towards Jinho. While taking Lee to her room, Park, with tears in his eyes, says they are setting up a date for surgery tomorrow, and Lee says it's great news. Meanwhile, Park tells Jinho they suddenly got an orphanage teacher and says it feels like things magically turn out well when Jinho comes back. Park thanks Jinho for coming, but Jinho tells Park to clean his face first and stop crying. Suddenly, Lee asks if Park can leave her and Jinho alone for a moment, but Park asks what he means. Lee says she needs to have a word with Jinho, and Jinho wonders what it is about. After Park leaves, Lee apologizes to Jinho for making him use his precious break like this, but Jinho requests her not to say that and says he decided to do this. Lee thanked Jinho, but he asked what she wanted to talk about. Lee says isn't it amazing because the doctors said she was done not long ago, and now they say that they can try surgery? Suddenly, Lee asks if Jinho is hiding something. Jinho gets nervous, and Lee says she knows he is a terrible liar, so she won't insist if he doesn't want to say anything. Lee says whenever she sees him, it feels like he is tied up by something, but she tells Jinho to remember that she doesn't know what he did to her, but he did his best, so he should smile and feel a bit more relieved. Suddenly, Jinho's inner demon says this hag talks like she knows everything about him, so Jinho tells Lee that she doesn't know about him. Lee grabs his hand and says, of course, she doesn't know everything about him and his life, but she wanted to tell him that he doesn't have to push himself hard. Lee says there is no need for him to take the burden of everything. Jinho thinks that during his repeating lifetimes, there were words that he kept telling himself not to push himself hard. Jinho remembers that he kept moving forward and fought against his fate, but the more he fought against it, the more he realized that no matter how much he moved, he couldn't see the end of it, and he was going to reach his limit someday. Lee tells Jinho that coexistence is about acknowledging that he cannot live alone and relying on other people. When Jinho asks what she means, Lee replies that just like how he supports Park, it's okay for Jinho to rely on someone from time to time. Lee says she doesn't know what Jinho did, but she is thankful to him for trying so hard and says she'll do her best so his efforts don't go to waste. Jinho wonders how she can be so calm and wonders if she has received the realm of acceptance after being on the verge of death. Suddenly, Jinho says it looks like she has talked for too long and that she read that Jinho is returning tomorrow, so she hopes he relaxes for the rest of the time he has. The next day, when Jinho is leaving, Gang says it's sad that he is returning already. Meanwhile, Yoon Young asks why the 100-day break is so short and asks why it is not 100 days, as the name suggests. Simultaneously, Jinho's mother scolds him, asking why he had spent all 4 days out of home. She says it's no use raising children at all, but Jinho apologizes to her. Jinho says he'll make sure he spends the next break with his family, so his mother says alright and tells him to be safe. While sitting in the car, Jinho sees Park sitting inside, so he asks what Park is doing there. Park replies that since he didn't greet Jinho when he came out, he decided to greet him on his way back. When Jinho says he is not a kid, Park yells that he is here to say something. Park says he heard that Jinho was behind the orphanage support and the director and said Jinho can't do things like that without telling him. Park says he thought it was some miracle, but Jinho says he didn't do it for him. He did it for the children, so there is no need for him to worry. Meanwhile, Cho is glad to see Jinho being shy, and simultaneously, when Jinho asks about the surgery, Park replies that it is in 3 days. Suddenly, Park worriedly asks Jinho if the surgery is going to be okay, to which Jinho replies that it's going to be alright. After that, they drop Jinho, and while hiding at the military base, Cho asks if Jinho is worried, but Jinho asks if it looks like that. Cho says he is Jinho's secretary after all, and he knows a lot more about him than he thinks. Meanwhile, Jinho wonders if this is how it feels to be worried, the feeling he has. Suddenly, Cho says he knows Jinho doesn't like to leave things uncertain and understands that Jinho wants to stay until Lee is fully recovered. But Jinho's break doesn't go on forever. Cho tells Jinho not to worry about it because he'll take care of the rest, and Jinho understands this is the coexistence Lee is talking about. Jinho realizes he still has a lot to learn and thanks Cho. After Jinho returns to his unit, Hyuk-soo asks if he has met his girlfriend. Jinho replies that he doesn't have any, but when he asks about C, Jinho remains quiet. Suddenly, an instructor arrives there and tells them that they have ranger training next week, and the division commander has given the order to give 10-day breaks to all squad members who achieve the best squad during the training. Everyone gets excited, but the instructor furiously yells at them not to get their hopes too high because this is not an internal competition and warns them not to lose to the infantry boys. As the instructor leaves, Hyuk-soo asks if Wongu heard about the break, but Wongu says it doesn't matter and he just hates that he has to attend ranger training in his last days here. Hyuk-soo says if they achieve the best squad, Wongu can combine that with his final break and make it into a 20-day break. Wongu says this will only happen in dreams because regiment guys are also attending, and they're talking about at least 80 squads. However, Hyuk-soo says it can be possible, and when Wongu asks how it's possible, Hyuk-soo points out that they have Jinho in their squad. Wongu thinks for a moment and realizes it can be possible, so he agrees that they should do it and get their breaks. In the Korean military, there is a term called halfway crisis, and it describes the commonly occurring breakups that happen to soldiers around halfway through their service. They still exist as complexes among many soldiers, and Hyuk-soo is also going through that crisis. Hyuk-soo tells his girlfriend that he'll get a break and come back, and they'll talk about the issues in person. Meanwhile, Wongu asks Jinho what he thinks breaks are for soldiers, to which Jinho replies that there are occasions when soldiers are allowed to go outside. Wongu says it's true, but that's not what he is talking about. Wongu says to soldiers that breaks are lifesavers and a driving force that motivates them to continue their service. Wongu says right now, they have a 10-day break set as a prize and ask if Jinho knows what it means. Wongu says they, the Charlie 3rd Squad, are going to aim for the best squad this time, and to make that possible, they need Jinho. Suddenly, Hyuk-soo comes in while crying terribly, and Wongu asks what's wrong with him. Hyuk-soo replies that it's just a yawn, and suddenly, he tells Jinho that he has a word for him. Hyuk-soo says he won't let Jinho slack off in this time's ranger training and tells Jinho to do everything he needs to achieve the best squad. Suddenly, Hyuk-soo starts crying loudly and begs Jinho to get him that break certificate. A few days later, the day of ranger training arrived, and the squad members had to do PT number 8 20 times. Everyone is in terrible condition, and Wonju wonders why he is going through this. His training ends really soon. Similarly, Hyuk-soo is on the nerve of losing, but he is thinking about the break. Meanwhile, Jinho easily holds his legs up straight, but suddenly, someone drops on number 18, so they have to repeat the PT again. Wongu furiously asks who said the number on the last one, but a squad member says this time's ranger training is oddly harder. Suddenly, when a squad member says he thinks they'll not get the break, Hyuk-soo furiously yells at him, and Wongu says Hyuk-soo needs this break because he is having trouble with his girlfriend. Wongu tells Jinho that the real training starts now and they should do their best, to which Jinho replies he will do his best. Jinho liked those words from Sergeant Cho Wongu, but there was one thing Wongu forgot. The performers get the reward, so Jinho is exempted from obstacle training. Wongu is mad that Jinho gets to rest while his seniors are going through hell, but he thinks Jinho will stop everyone in the next training. Next, in the trench combat training, the instructor says a squad wins by pushing out all the competing squad members outside of the trench. The instructor tells everyone to remember that they are equal soldiers and tells them to compete fairly. As the instructor tells both sides to get ready, suddenly, Hyuk-soo rushes to attack like a devil, but the opponent throws him out with a single hand. Wongu is shocked that an athlete like Hyuk-soo got flung that easily, and the opponent asks how dare Hyuk-soo challenge him with a body like that. The opponent's squad is confident that they'll win this training, and they make fun of the weak bodies of Jinho's squad. Suddenly, a member of the opponent's squad attacks Jinho, but Jinho grabs his neck, making it impossible for him to move. The guy thinks he needs his squad leader's help, but gets terrified to see his squad leader is also trapped under Jinho's arm. Suddenly, Jinho throws all the opponents out of the trench, and Tiho is happy that they have Jinho on their side. At this point, they feel bad for the opponents, and Charlie's 3rd squad wins this match. The next day, the teams have to reach a specific position on the map faster than others, and Wongu tells his team that only one squad member needs to reach the position. Wongu tells Jinho that his job is simple and that he has to get to the position as fast as he can, so Jinho immediately rushes toward the location. Jinho creates a record of reaching the location in 3 minutes 23 seconds, which is half of the time of other squads. The 3rd day is gas chamber training day, and Wongu is in a terrible state, so he tells Jinho to let him go, but Jinho, while grabbing his collar, says he cannot let him go. Jinho says the squad leader ordered him to let no one outside, but Wongu yelled that he is the squad leader. Jinho says Wongu told him not to listen to him in the gas chamber, which makes Wongu scream. Meanwhile, Jinho is alright and feels he built immunity back in basic training. The last day of training is marching, so Wonju tells his squad that their break is right ahead of them. Wongu notices Jinho is the only one who looks fine, and even the instructors are freaking out. The march continues, and it's getting dark, which is making it more difficult. Suddenly, when Tiho drinks water, Hyuk-soo scolds him because they still have a lot of miles ahead and tells him to get together. Hyuk-soo tells the squad leader that Tiho is not doing well, and Wongu gets worried because the company commander said they are almost ready for the best squad as long as they don't have any stragglers during marching. Wongu is worried that at this rate, they might have to medevac Tiho, so he tells Tiho to get himself together, but suddenly, Tiho faints. Everyone gets worried. They rush to pick up Tiho, and Hyuk-soo worriedly shakes Tiho while telling him to get up. Wongu tells Hyuk-soo to calm down, but suddenly, the instructor arrives there and asks if they have a problem, to which Wongu replies that it's nothing serious. Wongu says their team member just tripped a bit, but the instructor asks if Tiho is alright and if he can complete the march. Everyone gets worried, but Tiho, in a low voice, replies that he can do it, so the instructor says they'll continue after a 10-minute break. Wongu takes a breath of relief, and while others get Tiho to sit down, Wongu wonders what he should do now. Wongu realizes that he can't put the break above a person's life, but he knows if they miss the best squad because of Tiho, everyone will blame him. While Wongu is wondering what to do, suddenly Jinho calls the squad leader, and Wongu immediately realizes they have Jinho, so he asks if Jinho can help them. Jinho replies that it's no problem for him, and he immediately picks up Tiho, which shocks them. Wongu says something doesn't look right, but Jinho says this is how he was taught at basic training and asks if there is a problem with his pose. Wongu says Jinho is nailing it, but he doesn't have to do that much, so Jinho drops Tiho and carries his gear. Tiho apologizes to Jinho for making him carry his gear, but Jinho tells him not to mention it. Still, Tiho feels terrible, and he wants to lie down, but they have a lot to go, and he wonders if he should just give up. Tiho knows everyone will blame him, but he thinks that would be better than this. Suddenly, Jinho asks if Tiho needs water, and Tiho thanks Jinho for this, but he thinks it's amazing that Jinho barely drinks any water. Tiho asks if Jinho regrets coming to the military, to which Jinho replies that it's not like regretting gives him a choice, and Tiho agrees with this. Tiho thinks JJ Nicho is younger than him and that he comes in later, but he is way more mature than him, and he drags everyone behind. Meanwhile, Tiho is going to trip from a stone, but Hyuksu grabs him and reminds him about the break. Wongu asks if Tiho is okay. Tiho replies that he is fine, but Wongu says that Tiho is free to give up anytime, and that nobody is going to blame him for that. Hyuksu shouts, break, break, but Wongu says they are all in this together, and they are in the same squad. Tiho gets emotional and says he'll give it a try and finish it, which makes Jinho realize its coexistence, and they all begin the march. The next day, Wongu excitedly packs his things because they won the training, and he is going to meet his girlfriend, Yeonju. Wongu says Hyuksu returned to normal as if nothing happened, and Tiho says he was really scared of Hyuksu until they got the result. Wongu thanks Tiho for making it to the end and says he is leaving earlier, which is thanks to Tiho, but Tiho says it's all thanks to Jinho. Jinho was chosen as the best soldier and earned 10 more days, which makes it a 20-day break. Tiho says if they add Jinho's scheduled regular break, it should stack up to 30 days, and Wongu asks if it means Jinho is going to end his service before him. After Ranger training, Jinho's military life changed a little. First, Gang Jinho was promoted to Private First Class, and second, he was no longer the newest guy on the squad because a new trainee, Private Jang Yihwan, arrived in the squad. Jinho scolds Yihwan because his bed is dirty and asks if this is the best he can do. Yihwan apologizes, and Wongu tells Jinho it's good enough, but Jinho says it is dirty. Jinho says Yihwan can't clean his own bed, so they can't expect him to take responsibility for other matters. Yihwan gets emotional, so Wongu asks Jinho if he thinks that his standards are weird and tells Jinho not to force his standards on others. When Wongu says Jinho is going to make this kid cry, Jinho asks if he is forcing too much. Wongu gives Tiho the charge of the new boys, and Jinho wants to argue, but he is called to the administration office. Jinho goes to get the call, but Wongu says it's a real pain when they have a super rookie in the squad, and Tiho can't agree less. On the other hand, Jinho receives the call from Park Yumin and says he didn't expect him to call so early, to which Park replies that it's about Sister Lee. After listening to Park, Jinho says he'll try to get out as early as possible and asks Sergeant Lee if it is possible for him to start his break a bit early. Jinho gets the permission, and Cho immediately arrives to pick him up. While heading back, Jinho asks how Sister Lee is doing, to which Cho replies that they confirmed she is getting better after the surgery, but her condition relapsed recently and put her in a terrible state. Jinho worriedly asks if there is any chance of her becoming better, but Cho apologizes to Jinho because he told Jinho to leave the rest to him, and it turns out this way. Jinho says it is not Cho's fault, but it is his fault because he thinks he should have stayed by Sister Lee's side. After some while, Jinho goes to the hospital and asks Park how Sister Lee is doing, to which Park replies that she is resting in her ward. Park says it is their fault and that he should have paid more attention to her, but Jinho says it's nobody's fault, and if anyone is at fault, it's him himself. Jinho goes to see Lee, but Lee says he shouldn't have bothered and apologizes for making him so worried. Lee requests Park to leave them alone because she needs to talk with Jinho, so Park goes outside. Lee tells Jinho to have a seat and hold her hand, so when he does that, she thanks him for coming, but Jinho tells her not to mention it. Jinho feels her hands are cold and realizes there is nothing he can do. Suddenly, Lee says back to that night. She realized Jinho did something to her and says the feeling she felt that day was warm and soft. Jinho wonders if the road he came through and the power he obtained with blood was warm. Lee says he has done so much for him, and she is sorry to show him such a miserable face, but he shouldn't blame himself. Lee says she is happy, and it's thanks to Jinho that she has learned that there are so many people who care about her. Lee says Jinho is a strong person for what he did to her and hopes he becomes a person who can also tolerate the weakness of others. Jinho thinks he is not that strong, but he replies to her that he'll keep that in mind. When Jinho goes out, Park asks how his sister Lee is, to which Jinho replies that she fell asleep and tells Park that they should go. When Park asks where they are going, Jinho replies that they should go to the orphanage and Park should be busy with that place. After they go to the orphanage and the kids fall asleep, Jinho is sitting outside alone. Suddenly, Park arrives and says they should have a drink. While having a drink, Park thanks Jinho for coming and says he didn't call him because he was asking him to come out or anything. Jinho calls Park a crybaby, but Park asks what he means. Jinho says the kids are surprisingly calm, and they must be equally sad, but nobody mentioned it at all. Park replies that it is because everyone is used to losing someone and says when they live in the orphanage, they get used to losing something and things not happening the way they want them to. Park says he is sure that Sister Lee doesn't want them to drown in sadness, but suddenly, he asks why Jinho is making a sad face. Park grabs Jinho's collar and says Sister Lee might be dying, but it is not the end of the world. Lee says he has to go back to practicing and earn money to feed the children at the orphanage. Park apologizes for making Jinho worry too much and tells him to stop worrying, but Jinho realizes Park is drunk. Park is completely drunk, and Jinho thinks he didn't know Park has drinking habits like this. Jinho thinks as he does. Maybe there are things Park wants to say when he sees him, and he wonders if this is what friends are for. Suddenly, Park, drunk, says he is tired, and Jinho thinks living is the same for everyone. Jinho realizes people simply do their best to stay quiet about it and asks himself if he wants to live a normal life, but he realizes he wants to live a life that is different than before. Jinho thinks he hasn't changed, but if there is one thing that's different, it's that he realizes that he cannot live alone. Park remembers Lee telling him that she hopes he can become a person who can tolerate others' weaknesses, so he decides to keep that in mind. A few days later, the break ends, and Jinho goes back to the military, but he receives a call from Park that Sister Lee has passed away. Jinho apologizes that he is not there for Park, but Park asks why Jinho would be sorry. Park says they'll visit her when Jinho comes out, so he should not worry, and Jinho agrees. Jinho remembers Lee telling him not to push himself so hard, and he remembers the last moments he spent with her. Jinho thinks neither he nor Park tried to cheer one another with words because they knew better than to give formal words of comfort. After some while, Jinho calls Jang Yihun and asks about the laundry, to which he immediately replies that he is drying them right now. Jinho says he was supposed to be done with it yesterday, so he asks why he is doing it today. Jang replies that it won't happen again, but Jinho asks him why he didn't finish it yesterday and says he told Jang before that there is no need to hide his mistakes. Jang, while crying, apologizes, so Tiho tells Jinho to stop bullying Jang because he'll only go AWOL at this rate. Jinho says he just asked a simple question and wonders if he said something wrong. After some while, Jang is sitting sadly when another squad member asks if he is alright, but Jang asks if it seems fine to him. The other guy says Jang is going to lose his hair at this rate, but Jang says he is sure he'll be dead before that. Suddenly, Jang asks where Corporal Jinho is. The guy replies that he is doing the laundry, but Jang says he just did it. The other guy says it looks like Corporal Jang was not satisfied with it. Jang sighed that Jinho was already a corporal, so why was he trying to do the underwork at that rank? The other guy says he heard a corporal in another squad go crazy because he didn't like how a cabinet was organized, so he says that compared to that, Corporal Jinho is not bad. Jang yells that he is right, but Jinho tells him to organize it again, and then again. The other member tells Jang to calm down, but Jang yells that he has been going through this for months and asks why the hell he has an overperformer like Corporal Jinho to instruct him. The next day, the instructor tells them that their training for today is lame. The instructor says their battery is going to undergo a combat effectiveness evaluation soon, so he wants every one of them to train with utmost sincerity. Laying is about installing the howitzer into the firing position, and it may sound simple, but it is serious heavy labor, which involves pushing, rotating, fastening, and lifting a 7-ton hunk of steel within a limited time frame. Meanwhile, Jang is worried because his body is aching, and Jinho notices if Jang is alright. Jang says he is fine, but he wonders why Jinho has to be in his group, and he is worried because he can't tell Jinho about his condition. The training begins, and the instructor tells them to prepare a spade, but Jang, while lifting it, feels dizzy because it's heavy and thinks he has to keep himself together. Jang thinks he should have told Jinho that he is not feeling well, but suddenly, he trips, and the spade is going to fall on his foot. Jinho immediately grabs the spade and asks Jang if he is okay, but Jang says he is fine. Jang is shocked because that spade is supposed to be 80 kilograms, which Jinho lifts with one hand and wonders if he is even a human. After the training, Sergeant Jun scolds Jang and says he should have told him he was ill. Jun says Jang is lucky Jinho was there with him and asks if Jang is trying to stop him from getting discharged. Meanwhile, Jinho tells Jun that they should let Jang rest now, so Jun says he'll go back and report while Jinho keeps an eye on Jang. After Jun leaves, Jang thanks Jinho, but when Jinho asks why, Jang says things would have been bloody if it hadn't been for Jinho and says Jinho saved his life. Jang says that, until this whole time, he had never been comfortable with Jinho, but after experiencing something like this, he understood why Jinho was so strict with the rules. Jinho asks if Jang thinks he cannot get comfortable with him. Jang replies that Jinho rarely talks about anything, and it's hard to start a conversation with such a stoic face. Jinho asks if Jang finds it hard to have a conversation with him. Jang apologizes, but Jinho thanks him for telling him this. Jinho says he still has to learn a lot, and he is still not used to living in a group. Jinho says just like Jang said, it's true that he is not the easiest person to start a conversation with, but he says he doesn't want to be like that forever. Jinho says he'll do his best to change, but Jang is shocked and wonders if Jinho was always like this because he always thought Jinho was a freak. Suddenly, Jang says he'll also try to do better than before, and as he is leaving, Jinho tells him to clean his blanket once he gets better. One step at a time, Gang Jinho was changing, and like that, his life in the military was coming to an end. 9 months later, Yoon Young became a famous singer, and her industry name was Gang C. After her concert, C's manager said she did a good job, and the crowd seemed excited. C is also happy, but suddenly, she gets some text messages from a guy, and she says he is really persistent. Suddenly, C asks her manager if he can clear her schedule for Wednesday next week, to which he replies he'll do that. However, C's manager asks if she has something going on that day, and she replies that her brother is coming home from the military that day. On the other hand, Jinho tells Jang that her bedroom floor is too dirty, but Jang asks if, for Christ's sake, he can leave quietly. Jang says Jinho is getting discharged tomorrow, so he asks why he is doing this, to which Jinho replies that his bedroom floor is dirty. Jang yells that he is a sergeant already and begs Jinho to leave him alone now. Suddenly, Jang asks the newbies if his bedroom floor is too dirty, and they all tell Jinho to leave Jang alone and go home if he doesn't like it. Meanwhile, Young Gi barges in and requests Jinho to hide him, but Jinho asks what's wrong. Young Gi says the guys in his squad are going to do a celebration beating on him, so he runs away and says their faces are no joke. Suddenly, those guys arrive there and say he'll reap what he sows. Young Gi gets terrified when his squad members say they'll give Young Gi a back massage as his back is hurting. Meanwhile, Jang asks if they should give it a try, but Jinho gets a call to report to the battalion commander's office, and he immediately gets going. Jinho's squad members are shocked that he is so fast, but they are happy that Jinho is finishing his service. When they say it was really a pain being with Jinho, Jang tells them it's all thanks to Jinho that they are making all these complaints. When they ask what Jang means, Jang replies that when he first came here, he barely had a voice about anything. Jang says they are only like this because it's all thanks to Jinho, and he is no short of a legend in their battery. Jang says Jinho made all the seniors shut up by being such an overachiever, and not only did he tank all the bad customs of their unit by himself, but he never did any of them to the newer guys. Jang reminds the other guy of his squad that he also benefited from Jinho's prize breaks. Jang says Jinho dominated every support in the military, including soccer, basketball, and wrestling, and he swept every prize break, even in the regiment and division competitions. Jang says Jinho gave them all of that as though greed was not a thing for him, and says he is sure Jinho didn't have to spend the last few weeks here if he decided to use all of the prize breaks for himself. Suddenly, they also get upset and realize that if Jinho leaves, they'll have to say bye-bye to C, who is visiting them in jerseys. On the other hand, Gang Jinho reports to the battalion commander's office, and the battalion commander, Nam Tishik, tells him to have a seat. Nam says he heard Jinho is discharged tomorrow, so he thought this was the last chance for them to have a conversation like this. Nam asks what Sergeant Jinho is planning to do after leaving this place, and says he believes Sergeant Jinho has a lot to do once he returns to society. Jinho says he doesn't have any plans yet, but he asks why Nam is addressing him in such a respectful manner, to which Nam replies that he will definitely address him respectfully. as Nam says Jinho deserves such treatment when they consider how much longer Jinho has lived compared to him and call him a retuner. Jinho gets shocked and asks who Nam is. Nam says he believes one of them told Jinho before that they resided anywhere and everywhere. Nam says it's obvious that they keep an eye on someone like him, and Jinho remembers the returner from the group of marshals he met in the park. Jinho wonders if he failed to sense the existence of a marshal, but Nam tells Jinho not to worry because he is a normal person who serves people like Jinho. Jinho asks if Nam has approached him ever since with a purpose. Nam says it was a pure coincidence that Jinho was assigned to his unit and that his master finds Jinho to be quite special. When Jinho asks what he means by special, Nam says when a person possesses power, they tend to display it, but Jinho seems to stay patient against the bad customs and irrationalities in the military. Nam says that despite the fact that Jinho has an easy solution to violence, it almost makes him suspicious of the fact that Jinho is a returner. Suddenly, Jinho asks if Nam called him to say those words. Nam says his master wants to meet Jinho and tells him to treat Jinho gently. However, Jinho asks why that buffoon, whom Nam calls his master, wants to meet him, and Nam says his master wants Jinho. When Jinho asks why, Nam says his master needs Jinho's existence, his sense of kinship as a fellow returner, and his interest in each other's lives. Nam says his master wants everything about Jinho and says they should go because his master is waiting for him. But Jinho says he'll teach Nam a thing first. Suddenly, Jinho, showing a glimpse of his power, says the reason he has not used it is because it has no place in this world. Jinho says it would have been the same for him if Nam had been a normal person, but if he had been with the returners, then it would have been a different story. Nam gets terrified because his voice is gone, and he can't move. Jinho realizes Nam is not a marshal because he is already hallucinating with this much Kai. Jinho asks how dare Nam's master send his underling to face him, and Jinho's inside devil warns Nam to inform his master to bow to him. As Jinho leaves the office, the soldier outside says the car is ready, and they'll escort Jinho, but Jinho says he is not the one who needs a car and tells that soldier to go inside. Meanwhile, Jinho thinks contact with marshals is inevitable, just like he expected. Jinho thinks the training he did while he was in the military made the size of his core, and the control of his body incomparable to what Kai had done back when he was in China. Jinho, while leaving, thinks he has prepared himself more or less, and he'll not let anyone ruin his life this time. The next day, Cho goes to pick up Jinho and congratulates him for finishing his service. Cho says he'll give a ride to Jinho and young Gi, and while they are going home, Gi sleeps in the car. Suddenly, Jinho sees something on his phone and furiously asks Cho where Gang Yoon Young is. After some time, Jinho arrives home, and his parents welcome him warmly, but Gang says that Jinho doesn't seem to be doing well. The Gang immediately shows something on his phone to his father and asks his mother where Yoon Young is, to which his mother replies that Yoon is on stage live today. Jinho furiously says he needs to bring her back, and Gang tells Jinho that he is cleared to bring her back. Jinho says he'll do it with speed and precision, but Jinho's mother asks what is wrong with them all of a sudden. As Jinho shows the news to his mother, she is shocked to read the news that C is found dating Yoon Young of The Voice. On the other hand, Yoon is talking with his manager on the phone, and he asks if she is okay. The manager says he can try pulling some strings right now, but Yoon says she can do it because changing her schedule now will only make things worse. The manager says once the live broadcast is over, he'll send out the news articles and he'll leave the stage up to her. After shutting the phone, Yoon screams and yells what the hell do they mean she is dating Yoon Young. Yoon says all he did was say hi to him, but then he kept texting him, came to her training center to see her, and then dropped a bomb like this. Yoon thinks she has been so much to become a celebrity, so she cannot let some crazy idiot ruin everything. Suddenly, a staff member arrives there and tells C she is next on the stage, so she says okay but thinks if Jinho finds out, she might have to end her career. While going on stage, Yoon thinks she needs to calm down because when facing hardships, just collapsing will get her nowhere. Yoon thinks this is Jinho's own words, so she decides not to give up and confidently goes on stage waving at her fan. Suddenly, Yoon notices Jinho in the audience and wonders what he is doing there and why she can see him with such pinpoint focus on her. Yoon sees Jinho moving his hand and wonders if he is calling her down, but her song is about to start, and it is a live broadcast. Suddenly, Jinho gives her a killer vibe and points her to come down, so she, with a smile, says okay. On the other hand, Cho tells Hwang about this scandal, and Hwang says he is not an expert in this industry. He asks if that doesn't happen all the time with celebrities. Cho says that it's not normally a big deal, but he hasn't seen Jinho making a scary face like that for quite a while. Cho says he is pretty sure this is something serious, and Hwang says Jinho is an overprotective boy. When Hwang asks what happened to Yoon Young, Cho says it looks like they cannot avoid a scratch in her reputation. Cho is furious because it's all because of that idiot Yoon Young and thinks he has done so much to get C in orbit while Jinho is gone, so he won't let this fly. Cho says it looks like she is doing well on stage and that she is Jinho's sister. However, when they see the live broadcast, they see Jinho taking her away from the stage, and the host says something happened, so they'll continue with the next performance in a while. Cho is shocked and wonders what the hell Jinho is doing because the internet is storming after seeing Jinho drag C, and they wonder if he is C's boyfriend. When the chairman asks what is happening, Cho immediately takes the tab away from the chairman and says he'll look into this. Jinho sits in the live interview with C, and when asked who he is, Jinho replies that he is C's brother. Meanwhile, C feels doomed, and when Jinho is asked why he dragged her down the stage, he replies that C's family only allowed her in the entertainment business, so it only makes sense she quits if she shows interest in the love business. C yells that it's all a misunderstanding, but when they ask what he means by quitting, Jinho says he thinks it should be obvious and says she is retiring. Jinho says this is a family affair and will be decided with their family, which shocks Cho, and he wonders what the hell Jinho is saying. Cho thinks it's too early to give up and thinks there is still a way, so he tells Hwang that there is an emergency situation and that he'll be using some of their corporation's funds. Hwang asks if Cho wants to be fired, but Cho says he doesn't want it, and he is mad at Jinho. Gang C is a new rising star in the idol industry, and while she was only just starting to get famous, the recent scandal and incident during a live broadcast instantly made her a hot topic in the industry. Unlike how the experts predicted that her career was practically doomed, public opinion was tipping toward her favor. People assume that maybe the love scandal is a lie, and they think C's brother would do better if he debuted. All of this was the work of Cho Jae-min, the head secretary of the Yi Kyung Corporation. When the scandal happened, Cho asked Hwang why he scared him by talking about firing him if he was going to help him anyway. Cho said all he had to do was mention that Jinho was involved and Cho was learning to handle those two people. Cho confirmed from his sources that if Yoon Young dared to touch their precious C, he would teach him that there are things he shouldn't mess with. Cho told his source that he needed him to do something for him. On the other hand, C's family waits for an explanation while she sits in embarrassment in front of them. After C explains everything, Gang asks if she is saying that this was all just that guy trying to flirt with her, to which C replies that is right. C's mother says she understands C didn't have much of a choice when having to deal with him formally, but still, Jinho asks how she is going to explain that she first met Jun Young at a bar. Jinho says if her day had ended, she could have studied or practiced or just rested at her place, but instead, she decided to go drink. C says she was just tagging along with other girls, but Jinho furiously says it looks like she forgot the fact that she just became an adult. Jinho asks how long it has been since her debut that she decided to meet men while drinking alcohol. C apologizes, but Jinho tells his parents that she should be rightfully punished and they should make her quit her job as a singer. Jinho's parents get worried, and Gang says they think it is a bit too harsh because she is an adult too, so a bit of alcohol should not be that big of a deal. Jinho's mother agrees with Gang, and C gets happy, but Gang says that doesn't mean she is off the hook. Gang says it looks like their daughter lacks social experience because she went straight to becoming a singer after high school, so as punishment, they'll make her learn more about having a social life. C's mother suggests she should work at their cafe for a while and says she is pretty sure C will learn a lesson or two after facing customers and doing some hard day's work. However, Jinho says it is too light of a punishment and that she should quit her job and go back to studying. Meanwhile, Gang tells Jinho that he is also done with his military service, so he can't just live off of Chairman H1's support. Gang says Jinho should work too because their cafe is always open for resumes, but Jinho and C are shocked. Gang says both of them will start working at their cafe, and this is the end of the discussion. On the other hand, at the FRC agency, Jun Young asked the president of FRC, Han Sung-gu, if he saw him rise in the search rankings, and Han said he didn't expect things to go this well. Jun Young says he is a damn genius and asks who would have thought of creating a scandal to instantly make him famous. Han says he knew Gang C was gaining popularity, but he didn't know it would be this much. Han says all the preparations were worth it, but he asks if Jun is sure about this because he heard the Yi Kyung Corporation was behind C. Jun tells Han not to worry about it because it's not like he did anything objectively wrong. Jun says, if anything, he was just being a romanticist and says, besides, a girl has never said no to him, so if C says she likes him, Yi Kyung can't do anything. Han says that is why he likes Jun and there is no need to put a leash on him, but suddenly, Han receives a call that he has a guest. When Han asks who it is, they reply that the guest says he is from Yi Kyung's secretariat. After that, Cho is having tea in Han's office, and he says it's nice tea, so Han thanks him. Han thinks Cho looks too young and clumsy to be Yi Kyung's head secretary, so he thinks maybe he is a con man. Suddenly, Cho shows his business card, and as Han checks it, he gets worried and asks what brings Yi Kyung Corporation to a place like this. Cho says he is sure Han is already aware that there was a scandal between one of FRC's celebrities and C, who is highly cherished by one of their VIPs. Han knew it was about C, and Cho said that after some investigation, they found out that despite C not having any interests, she was constantly approached by Jun. Cho says C's agency and their VIP find this fact to be very unpleasant, but when Han asks if the VIP is Chairman H-Wang of Yi Kyung Corporation, Cho smiles. Han gets shocked and immediately apologizes because they were not aware of that. Jun also gets worried because he didn't expect any of this. Jun says he didn't do anything wrong, though, but he'll be careful from now on and ask if this is fine. However, Cho asks what is wrong with Jun's manners and says because they too bumped in with C, he did some background research, and it looks like they have some interesting story. As Cho says, FRC President Han forced a number of idle trainees to entertain other company representatives, and he has also found that he extorted money from trainees under the name of training costs. Han feels doomed. Cho says Jun Young of the voice group also has quite a history with a good number of trainees, which shocks Jun. When Cho says it looks like Jun planned this recent scandal, Jun gets scared. Jun, in a trembling voice, says it's a misunderstanding, but Cho tells him to shut it and asks how dare he mess with their dear C. Cho asks if Jun knows how much effort C put into achieving that position and says that Yi Kyung Corporation never spent a penny for her directly. Cho asks if they know how much she did since high school to make her dream come true and yells that he knows all this because he has been right next to her and managing her the whole time. Cho grabs Jun by his collar and says he messed with the wrong person. He asks if Jun thought messing with someone else's career for the sake of his own was a great idea. Cho furiously says he hopes Jun is prepared to get what he deserves because it is not the Yi Kyung Corporation he is facing. It is the wrath of the #1 fan of C. On the other hand, in China, some guy is watching worldwide news while eating food, and when he sees the incident that happened during a live broadcast, the spoon drops from his hand in shock as he sees Jinho on TV. The guy is Wu Yuan, and he immediately stands up from his chair in shock because he recognizes Jinho is the demonic practitioner from before. After some while, Kechang shows Jinho's picture to Red King, but Red King asks if he is sure it's this guy. Kechang replies that Wu Yuan has confirmed it, so Red King says a demonic practitioner who is not consumed by demonic Kai means he is definitely an irregular. Red King says demons don't go down easily, so he is going to Korea, but when Kechang asks if he'll go himself, Red King replies that he can't leave the demon alive and he'll make sure it is dead by his hands. However, Kechang says that if the Red King leaves his throne right now, it will give the other two kings an opportunity to spread their influence in Jongyuan. Red King says that doesn't mean he can leave a demon alive, but Kechang tells him not to worry about that and says there is a sleeper he has left on the peninsula. Kechang says this will lower their influence within the peninsula, but it should be better than losing their influence in Jongyuan. On top of that, Kechang says they know Jinho's sister is a celebrity, so they can use it too, but Red King gets extremely furious. Red King asks how dare he say such words as an individual of the Martial Alliance and asks if he is suggesting they should act like mere ruffians would do. Red King furiously asks Kechang, suggesting they deal with a demonic practitioner by using methods worse than what they would use, and asks how he would dare call himself a person of Martial Alliance with such thoughts. Kechang immediately apologizes while trembling, and the Red King says he'll leave this affair to Kechang because he has no option but to warn him not to cross the line. Kechang says he understands and thinks a process without achievement makes it meaningless, but he thinks he'll follow his king for now. On the other hand, Secretary Cho is cleaning dishes in Gang's cafe and wonders how things ended up like this. Cho remembers he came to meet Jinho, but he wonders why he is cleaning dishes. The reason is the cafe is flooded with people who want to see C, and they want her to see them, but she says she is in the middle of serving. Suddenly, a lady tells Jinho that she is his fan. The lady saw him on TV, so she asked his name, but Jinho said he didn't ask personal questions. Meanwhile, many people also find Park cute, who is also working there because he is taking a break from his pro-gamer job. Simultaneously, when Cho says Gang seems pleased, Gang replies that this has always been a dream of his that he runs a cafe while his children serving. Gang says now that he actually sees it happening. It seems nice. On top of that, Gang is glad the sales are skyrocketing and starts laughing, while saying who would have known his children would have been much help. Gang says they are too good like their parents, but Cho says he thought Gang's goal was to teach them some social manners, to which Gang replies that it also doesn't hurt to earn a bit more green. On the other hand, the Yongnam Area Martial Union leader, Kim Suk-il, gets the news that the Red King, one of the 3 kings of the martial alliance that controls China, has contacted them. When Kim asks the reason, his worker tells him that the Red King has requested them to eliminate a specific person. Kim Suk asks about the terms, to which his workers reply that the Red King has proposed to forgive them all the supporting debts they have sent them, but Kim is shocked. Kim worriedly asks if they are asking them to kill a president or something. His worker replies that the target is a college student, Gang Jinho, who is suspected to be a returner. The guy reports that Jinho just finished his military service recently and is getting ready to go back to school. Kim is confused, and his man says they also have intel that even the assembly is keeping a close eye on Jinho. When Kim asks why the Red King is not moving, the guy replies that the martial alliance is in a tight balance between the 3 kings. The guy says it seems the Red King is in a difficult position to make a move, and Kim thinks an individual that even the Martial Alliance and the Korean Martial Assembly are keeping an eye on. If they take care of this job, not only they'll have an upper hand against their nemesis, the Korean Martial Assembly, it is also a chance to settle their awkward relationship with the Martial Alliance. Kim orders his man to call Astray, which shocks him, but Kim says from now on, the Yongnam Union will put all resources into the assassination of Jinho. After some time, Kim's man goes to Astray's residence with his junior, and the junior says he was curious to see where Astray lives. Kim's man is nervous because he doesn't want to come here again, and while going in, when the junior asks why the brother seems nervous, the guy tells the junior not to let his guard down. Kim's man warns the junior that he might get himself killed in front of Astray, but the junior thinks he is just scaring him. Astray is a demonic practitioner deeply engulfed by demonic Kai who no longer walks the path of an ordinary person. After entering a dark room, Kim's man calls Astray to come out and show himself, but the junior says he cannot see Astray. Suddenly, the door shuts, and it's completely dark inside, so Kim's guy yells at Astray to end the jokes and come out because the union leader has sent an order. Suddenly, when Kim's man turns on his phone's light, Astray is standing behind him while choking the junior and asks if it's a killing job. Kim's man immediately moves away and says it is a killing job, but he is scared to see Junior is dead. Kim's man thinks he is right to bring someone else with him, and he knows the leader is hiding Astray in exchange for making him do dirty jobs, but he thinks it is always disgusting to see Astray. Astray asks if he can use this boy as a toy, to which Kim's man replies Astray can do whatever he wants. Kim's man takes out Jinho's picture and tells Astray that he is not even a kid in his 30s, but there are eyes watching Jinho, so Astray should do this job as stealthily as possible. Astray gets close to Kim's man and, while looking at Jinho's picture, asks if he can bite his neck and shove his hand in his guts, which terrifies Kim's man. Astray wonders how Jinho's stoic face will change and says that'll be fun. A few days later, a couple is driving back home after having a party, and the man is drunk. When the girl asks if he can drive easily, the man says he only had a few drinks, so it's not a big problem. Suddenly, they see a person in the middle of the road, and the man tries to push the brake, but it's too late. The man thinks they hit that person and yells at the girl that she should have stopped him from driving. When the girl asks the man to check if that person is alright, the guy goes out, but suddenly Astray pulls him up on the car roof and kills him. The girl gets scared, and when she looks above the windscreen, she gets terrified to see Astray and tells him to stop it because he is scaring him. Suddenly, Astray attacks her by breaking the screen and killing her. On the other hand, the girls who come to see Jinho in the cafe don't show up often, and they tell him to come daily, but Jinho feels irritated when they try to take selfies with him. It's been 2 weeks since Jinho started working at the cafe. In the second family meeting, the 2 siblings achieved victory by decreasing their shift from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, and with her extra time, C took a casting offer for a TV show. C continued her celebrity career as an actor, and meanwhile, Jinho left the cafe and started to feel deep skepticism about working in the service industry. The gang tells Jinho that this is how it is serving customers, so he should get back and straighten up like a man. Jinho requests his father to learn about his social experience with a different job, but his father yells that it's nonsense and says he never taught Jinho to be a man who runs away in the face of hardships. The gang is furious because he knows he'll lose all his customers if Jinho doesn't show up either. Gang says they are losing customers, and maybe it's because of the murder incident that happened nearby, but when Jinho asks about the accident, his father shows him the newspaper. Gang says there has already been a second victim, and both crime scenes were so horrific that they say they are not even sure if it was done by a human being. The gang tells Jinho to be careful at night too, while Jinho is reading the news carefully. Suddenly, Yin arrives there, and when Gang says she is early today, Yin replies that with the news in town, it's just too scary to roam around when it's late. Gang says she still decided to come to their cafe, so he'll give her a little extra today. Yin thanks him. Suddenly, Yin says Jinho is also here and says she'll count on him again, but Jinho wonders what she is talking about. After some while, Gang tells Jinho to serve her order to her and says the cake is in the house. Gang tells Jinho that Yin is the VIP of this place who came frequently even before Jinho started working, so he should let her take a lot of pictures and talk with her for a bit too. Jinho serves her order and says he heard she comes here a lot, to which Yin replies that's right. Yin says she has come more often ever since Jinho started working here and asks if he'll take some pictures with him. Jinho agrees, but when he asks what she is planning to use them for, Yin shows her business card to him and says she is an illustrator. When Jinho asks what his pictures have to do with drawing, Yin says she usually draws illustrations for web novels and asks if he wants to take a look. When Jinho sees his illustrations being used in different web novels, he gets shocked and asks what the portrait rights are. Yin replies this is the reason why she comes here every day to drink 3 cups of coffee and says the owner gave her permission. Suddenly, Gang comes there and says that Jinho is all hers, but Jinho can't believe it. Yin says illustrations are about drawing characters with charm and that people have always said she was good at drawing, but her male characters were not charming at all. Yin says that stopped ever since she used Jinho as a reference, but now people say she draws the same face all the time. Jinho says that is because she does that, and Gang says he thinks it's because the facial expressions are the same. Yin, while showing them Jinho's pictures, says that it is because she doesn't have much of a choice, and that Jinho has the same expressions in all the pictures. Jinho and Gang are shocked to see this, and Gang says Jinho is even scaring his own dad, but Jinho says it is his normal face. Suddenly, Gang says this won't do, and if their VIP falls into a slump, that'll mean a decrease in her income, and she won't have enough money to buy coffee here. Jinho asks what his father is talking about, but Gang yells that Jinho knows what he is saying and tells him to make poses for Yeon as much as possible. Jinho is shocked, but Yeon is ready with a camera to take his pictures and tells him to pose pretty, but Jinho whines he is not paid for this. After some while, Yeon happily leaves the cafe after taking Jinho's pictures and says she'll come again. Gang sees her off and says he'll see her again, but Jinho hopes she doesn't come often. Jinho, seeing her leave, thinks he never knew being on the other side of the camera was this tiring, but his father asks if it doesn't seem nice to see her so happy and tells Jinho to be proud, so Jinho realizes it wasn't bad. On the other hand, it's dark, and while Yeon is walking him, she is taking a look at Jinho's pictures. Yeon wonders how he is so handsome and is happy that she got some really good pictures. Suddenly, Yeon bumps into Astray and falls while her glasses also fall. Astray asks if she knows Jinho and if they are friends, but he says it doesn't matter. Astray says he wants to see how Jinho will react if he breaks her, but when Yeon, while wearing her glasses, asks what he means, Astray attacks her and says he really wants to see Jinho's stoic face change. On the other hand, after closing the cafe, Gang tells Jinho that he is meeting his friends tonight, so Jinho should go home in a taxi. Jinho says it's within walking distance, and he is fine, but his father reminds him about the murder incident and tells him to take a taxi. Jinho agrees and tells his dad to be careful, too, but Gang tells Jinho not to worry because his dad is strong. As Gang leaves, Jinho starts walking and sees the streets seem quieter than before. Jinho thinks information spreads much faster in the modern world than back in Jongyuan and thinks if an incident happened in Jongyuan, there would have been people who would not have even heard about it. Jinho is worried that a murder happened near where his family lives, so he decides to take a look around. Suddenly, Jinho senses the blood scent and starts following it until it becomes clearer, but he is shocked to see Yeon's camera near the blood spilled on the road. Jinho remembers the smile on Yeon's face, and as he gets closer to the body, he is in shock to see she is dead. After some time, Jinho is at the police station with his father, where they give their statements. The officer thanked them for their cooperation and told them to let him know if they remembered anything special. Gang and Jinho are sad, and Gang wonders why it happened to such a nice lady, who was someone they knew personally. Once the murder incident was verified as a serial murder, many things changed. People barely wandered around during the day, and the number of customers decreased dramatically. When people heard that the last victim frequently came to Gang's cafe, they decided to be careful. Jinho hears their conversations and gets furious that the culprit must be wandering around like nothing happened. Jinho doesn't know who the killer is, but he is determined that he'll make him pay for messing with him. Suddenly, a girl comes to their cafe and says she is there to have a word with Jinho. Jinho says he is working, so she should go, and Gang also says they don't talk to the reporters, but the girl says she is not a reporter. Suddenly, the girl comes closer to Jinho and asks if he doesn't want to know about the culprit, but Jinho is shocked. After going outside, Jinho asks if she is saying she'll tell him who the culprit is, and he says that is right. The girl formally introduces herself and says her name is Lee Hyunju. Lee says she has come to meet him as a representative of the Korean Martial Assembly and says they are one of the top martial organizations in Korea. Lee says they are interested in having a friendly relationship with him, and they thought Jinho would be interested in the recent incident, so she brought some information. Jinho gets furious that it is the damn marshals again and says he is sick of repeating himself again and again. Jinho furiously asks if he looks like a joke, and when Lee tries to ask what he means, Jinho tells her to shut it. Jinho asks if she thinks he is going to react with joy if she offers him information and if she thinks he'll let some friendly relationship happen. Lee gets nervous, and Jinho says it looks like this incident is related to them. As Lee requests Jinho to listen to her first, Jinho immediately grabs her neck, slams her against the wall, and asks her when he says that she can speak. Jinho is choking her, and she starts trembling. Before Lee met Jinho, she was confident in talking out Jinho with the information she had, but in front of such an overwhelming force, she was helpless. The reason she was humiliated like this was simple. To Jinho, Lee Hyunju, a person of martial union, it was nothing more than a thing, and he had no need to control his feelings. Jinho asks if she really wants him to be a part of her world and asks if she can really handle it. On the other hand, Cho is driving somewhere and is worried about the murder incident. Cho thought he had finally settled C's problem, but now this happened. Cho fears that Jinho might kill someone out of anger, but he tells himself to calm down because there is no way Jinho would think of doing something like that in such a sloppy manner. Cho hopes it's nothing major, and as he reaches the cafe, he comes out and sees Jinho standing outside with a lady. Cho wonders if Jinho is dating someone in a situation like this, but he gets scared to see the look on Jinho's face because it is always a sign of trouble. Suddenly, Jinho sees Cho, and immediately, in a nice tone, he says he didn't know Cho had come. Cho takes a breath of relief that it's just normal Jinho, but wonders if Jinho is not mad anymore because he saw him. Cho oddly feels happy and scared at the same time, but he asks Jinho who this girl is and says he heard the news about the murder. Jinho says there is a whole story behind that part, and when Lee says she can wait outside if she is bothering, Jinho tells her to come with them. Jinho says he'll talk with both of them about this incident, but Cho has a feeling that it would be better off not knowing about it. As Jinho takes them inside, his father sees Cho has also arrived, and Cho greets Gang. Jinho tells his father that he wants to use the room inside, but his father says he is still on the clock. Jinho apologizes to his father, so his father asks if it's something important, to which Jinho replies that it is somewhat important. Gang tells Jinho to take his time because they don't have any customers anyway and asks if Lee would like a latte. Lee replies that she is fine but hesitantly asks if she can use the restroom. After some while, Cho is having juice and thinks that the girl is taking pretty long. Cho doesn't know what is happening, but he realizes that the lady doesn't look like she is having a good time. Suddenly, Cho tells Jinho that she might have run away, but Jinho says she is not going to do that. When Cho asks how he is so sure, Jinho asks if Cho faces a problem that he cannot handle on his level what he would do. Cho replies that he would give up or ask someone higher for help and says most people rely on the group they are a part of. Based on this, Jinho says she is probably calling for help. On the other hand, Lee is calling her grandpa, but he is not getting on the phone, which makes her nervous. Lee wonders what is wrong with this crazy guy, Jinho, and why he is mad at her. Lee remembers his eyes were not normal when he was choking her, and he is not something she can deal with. Suddenly, Lee thinks that Jang Hui may be able to help her, so she calls him, and he immediately picks her up. Jang says he didn't expect her to call him, but Lee asks if he can come there, which surprises Jang, and he asks if she is asking her out for a date. Lee tells him to cut the rubbish and says she needs him to do something, but Jang says he is not interested in doing it if it's a job. Lee says it's fine because she is about to be beaten to death, but Jang is shocked to hear this and immediately asks where she is. After some while, Lee goes out and tells Jinho and Cho that the culprit of the murder incident is associated with the Yeongnam Union. When Jinho asks about what it is, Lee replies that the martial arts in Korea are divided into multiple groups. Lee says, to name a few, that there is the Korea Martial Assembly, which she is a part of, and the Yeongnam Union, which is a rival to them. Lee says the Yeongnam Union is the most influential organization in Korea and also possesses many powerful martial arts. Suddenly, Cho asks if she is saying Yeongnam Union sent an assassin to kill Jinho. Then why is he killing others and not Jinho? Lee replies that it is because the assassin is a bloodthirsty murderer, and they call him a stray. Lee says a stray is like the hunting dog of the Yeongnam Union, so Cho asks if they are just letting that fly. Lee replies that they don't have evidence. Lee says it was obvious to everyone, but there is nothing they can do when the Yeongnam Union leader denies everything. When Cho asks how she is sure that a stray is the culprit, Lee replies that they were forced to clean up his mess a number of times, and this incident is similar to those ones. Jinho furiously asks if she is saying similar incidents happened before and asks where this stray is. Suddenly, there is some noise outside, and Lee is happy to hear that Jang has arrived. Meanwhile, Jang causes a scene outside and yells where Lee is when Lee goes out and tells him she is there. Cho says she acted exactly as they predicted, and Lee immediately tells Jang that Jinho is the one who attacked her. Jang furiously asks if he is the one who touched their dear Lee Hyunju and instantly jumps to attack Jinho. Gang gets worried, but Jinho grabs his face and slams him down, saying he is making a mess in their installation. Lee and Gang are shocked to see this while Cho is calmly drinking his juice. Lee is shocked that her grandfather's second disciple is overpowered so easily, and Jinho warns that if they start the trouble here, it will be difficult. Jinho tells Lee to wait until the closing time, so Lee gets terrified and immediately runs outside while dragging Jang with him. Suddenly, Gang asks if Jinho is okay, to which he replies that he is fine. Gang says this is all happening as a result of doing business, but Jinho says there are days like this. Meanwhile, Cho asks Jinho if he is letting them so too easily. Cho says this is his father's shop, and he doesn't want any trouble here while he is working. Cho understands from Jinho's expressions that he hates when his private life is violated and hopes Jinho won't kill them. A few hours later, Jang wakes up in shock and asks Lee if he was knocked out, to which she furiously replies that he is right and asks if he knows how difficult it was for her to drag him outside. Jang tells her to shut up and be cautious while he goes back to kill that guy, but Lee tells him to stop if he plans to go now because there are too many eyes watching. Besides, Lee says that the boy said he'd come from there, so it would be better to make a request for support, but Jang furiously asks if she thinks he cannot handle a single child. Lee says he is already beaten by Jinho once, but Jang tells her to forget about support and says he is going to clean it up with his own hands. Lee sighed and wondered why Jang was so proud, but she realized that Jang Huey was the leading force in the association. Lee doesn't know about Jang's personality, but she is sure of his skills, so she decides to entrust this task to him one more time. After some while, Jinho arrives at the place of the murder, where Lee and Jang are already present, and says he thought they would run away. Jang asks why they would run away and says he was vigilant, but he made a mistake. Jang says he hates returners, social misfits who are disapproved and can't get along with others. Jang tells Jinho to show him how much his modern martial arts have developed and says Jinho will regret what he has done to him before. However, Jinho says if he is finished talking to them, they should finish it quickly, which makes Jang furious, and he tells Lee to stay away. Jang tells the returner to get ready and tells him not to regret after failing to defeat him. Jang rushes to attack and thinks Jinho will definitely avoid his first attack. He plans that the real attack will be the follow-up shot to that first attack. Jang thinks it'll be his win, but as he attacks, Jinho takes the punch and falls. Jang is shocked, but he gladly asks Lee if she saw that and says there is nothing special about this returner. Jang says he was careless before, and that's why Jinho was able to beat him, but Lee is nervous because she saw the face Jinho made before getting the punch. Suddenly, Jinho gets up, and Jang is shocked that he is not injured by that blow. Jinho says he almost got angry with Jang, but he is not the culprit here. However, Jinho says that it's only that Jang gets for the fuss at the cafe, and Jang is shocked to realize that Jinho deliberately welcomed his attack. Jinho says that this time, the real fight starts from here, and he immediately gets close to Jang, which makes Jang realize that Jinho is fast. Jang realizes that Jinho is different from other martials, but he is confident that he is a second disciple of his master. He tries to punch Jinho, but Jinho dodges all his attacks. Suddenly, Jang tries to crush Jinho on the ground with his full force, and a blast happens. Jang realizes he missed Jinho and wonders where did he go. As Jang tells Jinho to stop hiding and come out, suddenly Jinho attacks him by grabbing his neck and choking him with such force that he faints. Jinho asks if it is already over and says he doesn't think Jang will stand this much force. Jinho says Jang began this, so it's only fair if he himself gets to decide when it's going to end. Jinho says he wants to know a little more about the modern martial arts that has been developed. A while ago, when he was going to meet them, Cho asked if he was sure about this because Jang is also a martial, and he might have brought more people with him. Jinho said that would only make things easier and told Cho to wait there because it would be dangerous. Jinho says he'll take care of this himself and leaves, and Cho says he is right because he knows nothing is going to happen to Jinho. However, Cho wonders what'll happen if Jinho gets too pumped up and kills them, and suddenly, he hears a scream, which makes him nervous. On the other hand, Lee furiously asks what Jinho is trying to do while he is breaking Jang's hand. Jinho tells Lee not to worry because he is not going to kill anyone and twists Jang's arm, making him scream in pain and get his consciousness back. Jinho says he is finally awake and asks if he doesn't feel ashamed as a martial to be knocked out this early. Lee tells Jinho to stop, accepts it's their fault, and apologizes, so Jinho leaves Jang's arm and asks if sorry is supposed to be a magic word that stops everything for the people. However, Jinho asks if she doesn't think that it's only fair for him to decide when to stop because they started it first. Jinho tells her not to think it is going to end easily and breaks Jang's leg, making him beg for help. Suddenly, Lee asks if Jinho is trying to make the assembly his enemy and if he thinks they'll let him go away with this easily, but Jinho grabs Jang's neck and says those are some arrogant words she used. Jinho says they are the ones who meddled with his life, and they ask him if he'll get away with this. Jinho, with great force, slams Jang into a tree, which breaks the tree, and Lee starts trembling with fear. Jinho asks if she thinks he can get away with this, and while walking towards her, he says he has already asked if she can handle him or not. Jinho said now it was time to pay her price for ignoring his warning and asked if she thought it was a good idea to bring her friend and make a fuss. Lee requests Jinho to spare her life, but Jinho says he told her that he is not going to kill anyone, so she should try not to faint. Suddenly, Cho arrives there, saying it's hard to stay outside because the weather is really cold, and Jinho immediately stops after hearing Cho's voice. Cho gets terrified to see Jinho's fierce look, but Jinho immediately turns back to normal and says Cho is right that it is pretty cold out here. Meanwhile, Lee is shocked that Jinho has changed so suddenly, and Jinho asks if there is something more she wants to do. Jinho says if she wants to bring one of her friends, she should do it, or ask if she wants him to visit her assembly. Lee gets scared and tells him not to do that, but is in shock at how he changes his face so quickly. Suddenly, Jinho says he is done for today and tells Lee to come back tomorrow with everything she knows about Astray. Jinho leaves with Cho and thinks he failed to control his impulses again. Jinho thinks the Kai of Asura, the basis of his martial arts, is a one-man art that only the leader of the demonic cult is allowed to practice. Jinho knows the reason why he has such changes in his emotions is because his current Kai is not strong enough to control the demonic force of the Kai of Asura. Jinho thinks maybe he should have practiced the Kai of Asura after building up a basis with a different cultivation method, just like he did back in Zhongyuan. Jinho realizes he needs to be careful, and suddenly, he feels something is wrong with Cho. Meanwhile, Cho texts Jinho that he cannot move his face ever since he saw Jinho in the eyes earlier and asks what he should do. Cho texts Jinho not to say that he has to live like this forever, and Jinho understands that his pressure has paralyzed Cho's body. Jinho says Cho will be fine after some while but asks if Cho wants him to fix it right now. Jinho says it'll hurt a bit, so Cho immediately shakes his head and texts Jinho that he'll just wait it out. Jinho is embarrassed and thanks Cho for stopping him back there, but Cho texts him that he is really scary, so he should be careful from now on. Cho texts if Jinho is sure that Guy is not dead. Jinho replies that Jang is a martial, so he should be alive. Cho asks if practicing martial arts makes a person this, though Jinho replies that it strengthens the body overall. Suddenly, Cho texts if it also helps with back problems and if there is a chance he can learn it too, but Jinho wonders what all these emoticons Cho is sending. Jinho realizes Cho has already stepped into this world too deeply for a normal person, but considering his age, he doesn't have much room for service advancement. However, Jinho thinks it'll be good enough for self-defense and thinks he never thought of having an apprentice, but he agrees to teach Cho. Jinho tells Cho to be aware that training for martial arts is going to be tougher than Cho thinks and says since Cho taught him back in school, he'll be the one teaching Cho now. Cho immediately declines with his hand and says he'll pass if he has to learn from Jinho because he doesn't do strict things. The next day, Lee is standing outside Jinho's cafe and thinks asking the assembly for help is easy because if they knew she was in trouble, her grandfather wouldn't let it go unnoticed. However, with the Yeongnam group in front of them, Lee can't divide the assembly forces, so she thinks she needs to take care of this by herself no matter what. Suddenly, Jinho opens the door and calls her inside to talk, but Lee wonders why he is so polite and what's wrong with him. As they go inside, Jinho asks what she wants to drink, but Lee gets shocked, and when Jinho repeats his questions, she replies that she wants a mojito. Lee tries to keep herself together and thinks Jinho seems a completely different man from yesterday, but she is terrified, wondering what the hell he is up to. Suddenly, Jinho serves the mojito and says they should now start the conversation. Lee gives him the information he wants and says, as she said yesterday, that Astray is the prime suspect in this incident. Lee tells Jinho that Astray is a demonic practitioner who takes care of the Yeongnam group's dirty business in exchange for being under their protection. Lee says Astray used to be an ordinary martial, but a few years ago, he somehow learned demonic arts and was engulfed by its madness while practicing it. Ever since that, Astray has become a senseless, bloodthirsty murderer, which also makes him a nice expendable piece for the Yeongnam group. When Jinho asks Lee why the Yeongnam is targeting them, and he doesn't even know them, Lee replies that the Yeongnam group is only the contractor and the ones truly targeting him are someplace else. Lee says the Martial Union, a large martial group in China, wants Jinho's head and asks if there is something Jinho has done to offend them. Jinho immediately remembers Wu Yuan, but he thinks he let him go alive, so why is he after him? Jinho says the solution seems easy and asks where Yeongnam Union is, but Lee asks if he is crazy. Lee yells that she told him that the Yeongnam Union is the largest martial group in this country and that they are the worst of the worst and would do anything to get what they want. Lee says they might even target the people around Jinho, so she says if they somehow take Jinho out, the Yeongnam group, with the Martial Union on their back, will try to take over the assembly. For that reason, Lee proposes that they join forces for the good of both sides. Lee says they'll keep the Yeongnam group at bay, so Jinho should focus on Astray and ask what he thinks. After some while, C returned home from work, and Jinho was waiting for her outside. Jinho says she is late, but when C asks if he is worried about her, he replies that he just happened to see her on his way out for a walk. C teases him and asks why he was leaning on the wall if he wasn't waiting for her. Jinho pushes her away and says he'll be off then. C, worried, asks where he is going, to which he replies that he is going out for a walk and she should go inside. Jinho starts checking the area around, but he doesn't sense any demonic Kai. Jinho wonders if that guy is far away and knows he has lost his mind, so he won't be able to hide his Kai. Jinho thinks he cannot let Astray make more victims, so he is determined to catch him tonight. Jinho thinks it's all his fault and thinks pushing away strangers isn't the solution. Jinho thinks that if he had been more active about this matter, Yian might still have been alive. Jinho goes to the place of the incident and, sitting on a bench there, he furiously says damn this normal life. Suddenly, as Astray steps foot in the zone, Jinho can sense him, and Jinho immediately knows his location. Jinho immediately goes to the building Astray is hiding in, and he can smell the rotten blood everywhere. Jinho understands that this is Astray's hideout, and he knows Astray is hanging on the roof above him. Jinho, as if he is Astray, immediately comes down and says that he is right, but then he says he is not and asks who Astray is. Jinho realizes he is completely out of his mind and asks if he killed a woman recently, but Astray asks what kind of woman he is asking about, a younger one or an old one. Astray points towards something there in the dark and tells Jinho to pick one from them. Jinho is shocked to see the dead bodies, and Astray says Jinho can take one if he likes any of them. Suddenly, Jinho says he never needed to find a reason to kill Astray in the first place, but Astray says Jinho is the one who is going to die. Astray says he wonders how he can get the most out of Jinho, and suddenly, he transforms his arms into tentacles, and he starts attacking the pillars around Jinho. Astray says he must be scared, but Jinho is standing still. Suddenly, Jinho's inner demon asks if he is still hesitating and says Jinho just needs to kill Astray already. The demon says Jinho already knows the normal life he wants so badly has been shattered and says Jinho can kill this one, but another one and another one is going to appear in his life again. When Jinho's inner demon asks how long he is going to bear with it, Jinho dodges Astray's attack, but his demon asks if he is going to bear until his family and friends get killed. Jinho's anger increases, and his demonic self tells him to go back to being him and destroy everything getting in his way, but Jinho tells it to shut up and says he'll decide what he'll do. Suddenly, Jinho tears Astray's arm, which shocks Astray, but as Astray says he still has his left arm, Jinho immediately tears it apart and punches Astray in the wall. Astray is in shock, but Jinho gets close to him and says it looks like Astray can't feel pain because of the demonic Kai. Jinho says he'll get rid of that for Astray so that Astray will be able to feel it, the fear known as him. Jinho starts absorbing the demonic Kai from Astray's body, and Astray remembers the moment when a guy gives him a book to become stronger and tells him there is no future for a weak martial. Astray yells that he is not a bad person, and it's all because of demonic arts, but Jinho tells him to shut it. Jinho punches Astray and says he knows Astray wants to make excuses that he didn't have a choice and it was because of demonic arts, but Jinho says it was Astray's own choice to learn demonic arts. Jinho says that whatever the process was, Astray should take responsibility for his choices and that he has good news and bad news. Jinho says the good news is simply that he won't kill him, but the bad news is also that he won't kill him and takes out his eyes, saying that sometimes death becomes a luxury. The next day, Jinho's father reads the news that the serial killer has been found dead and says he should have been rightfully punished by the law. When Gang says it must have been God taking care of it himself, Jinho says it seems so. Suddenly, Cho arrives there, but Jinho asks what he is doing there so early in the morning, to which Cho replies that he is here to see him. Cho asks Jinho to read the news about the serial killer and asks if it is Jinho. Jinho tries to ignore his question. Cho says that Jinho seems suspicious, but Jinho yells that he thinks Cho is there to see him. Cho says that is right, and he has some good news for Jinho, but Jinho asks what it is. Cho says as Jinho is done with his military service, he should be getting ready to go back to college, but suddenly, Cho says since it's not back to school season, he is sure Jinho is having a hard time earning school credit, so he brought him some news of how he can get credit in his current situation. Jinho feels Cho seems like a suspicious salesman, but Cho says Yi Kyung will support Jinho with full payment for his startup and also with the legal and locational support that one person would have problems with. Suddenly, Jinho interrupts Cho and asks if he can stop him there, but Cho asks what the matter is. When Jinho asks why he is suggesting a startup, Cho says it looks like Jinho doesn't know that Yi Kyung University has a work-study system. Cho says any student who works for at least 3 months in a field related to their major can earn 3 academic credits, and if Jinho starts up his own company and works as a manager or president for 6 months, including next semester, he can earn 6 credits. Jinho says that is a pretty nice system, but he asks how it is different from just earning 6 credits with winter courses. Cho looks confused, and Jinho asks if he doesn't know about this, which hits Cho like a shock. Jinho says he can easily get more than 6 credits with summer and winter courses, but Cho, shocked, asks if Jinho is planning to take winter classes. Jinho says that is right, and he probably can't during the summer, but winters are an absolute option for him. Cho says okay, but he feels bad, and when Jinho says he is going back to work, Cho tells him to wait, but Jinho says the more he thinks about it, it feels like a much less efficient way than just taking winter classes. Jinho clearly says he is not doing a startup and leaves, while Cho is left with worry because, at this rate, he is getting a vacation forever. A few days ago, Cho met Chairman H. Wang and said Gang Jinho was a blank slate, so if they wanted him to be a part of Yi Kyung's management, as Chairman H. Wang requested, they needed to make preparations. Cho says he would like to propose that H. Wang follow his will and start from the bottom. H. Wang says it is a fair point because compared to all the children going around like morons, that sounds much like a better plan. H. Wang says Jinho should experience a lot and learn the terror of money when he is still young. H. Wang says he assumes Cho has a plan, but he also asks if he has a plan in case Jinho refuses. Cho tells H. Wang not to worry because he has already